Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the What If Guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Issei reached high class with boosted gear. Now before starting, please give this video a like, and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Volley, you are with the Chaos Brigade. Issei shouted in anger at Volley Lucifer, the host of Divine Dividing and this generation White Dragon Emperor. Indeed I am my rival. He replied calmly from under his balance breaker, but literally everyone could feel his grin. But to be honest, I am disappointed my rival is weak and was duped, he said cryptically. Issei however ignored his words. He had a lot of people to protect, with Rias and the others being among the foremost. Remember Issei, you can only go into balance breaker for a limited amount of time, as Issei reminded. Issei simply nodded at that before making a note to thank him later for the bracelet he gave to him. Although he was pretty calm despite losing an arm. The boosted gear roared. Issei was then covered in his incomplete balance breaker form for the very second time. The first time was at the Razor's wedding to save Rias. You are going down, Volley. Issei roared as he charged at Volley at very high speeds. Come my rival, don't disappoint me, he replied, his tone calm as ever, and it frankly angered Issei, who couldn't understand just how Volley could he be so calm. Issei lunged at Volley with his fist cocked back. Volley however waited until the last second before his fist reacted and contacted with my face. The blow was deflected by Issei's helmet as he continued attacking. Soon however Issei felt a sharp drain on his power as Albion called out. D-Drag called almost immediately as Issei felt his energy return before I decked Volley in the gut. He replied by headbutting Issei, sending him reeling before following up with an uppercut to Issei's chin. His barrage did not stop as he promptly followed up with more attacks. He then kneed Issei in the chest before he decked him in the face, sending Issei flying backwards towards the ground. Issei landed flat on his ass right in front of Rias and the others. He then grit his teeth in frustration before getting up. How weak. You were just an average student before and now you are the Red Dragon Emperor, but you still disappoint me. Volley spoke with clear disdain in his voice. You have point there, Volley. Issei snapped back at his rival. Yeah, I want you to get stronger, but it seems your master isn't suitable. Volley calmly replied. What did you say about Rias? Issei roared as Rias and the others watched on with concern. Maybe I should kill one of your friends, then you will fight better, Volley said calmly as he hovered in the air. He summoned 2 balls of blue energy before he launched them at Asia. Issei reacted immediately and jumped in front of Asia, taking the blow for her. Issei, Rias and Asia shouted out in concern as I was launched backwards several meters. Don't worry Rias, I won't disappoint you, Issei said proudly as he staggered to his feet. A smile of proudness and concern graced her lips, but it was all the motivation I needed. D-Drag called out as Issei roared, let's do this, D-Drag, before charging straight at Volley. Good, you still have some fight, Volley said with amusement in his voice. As he stood waiting to receive my attack, Issei grinned at that he had Volley right where I wanted him. As Issei got close, he struck his left arm out and shouted ASCALON. As he said that the dragon-slaying blade extended from the gauntlet, Issei could practically see Volley's eyes widen as he jumped back, dodging the sword. But Issei didn't let up and pressed his advantage. Volley managed to dodge 3 strikes before Issei got him with the 4th, sending him flying into the ground. However, was still standing, but his balance breaker was down. Volley wore a cocky grin that had several emotions in it, joy and excitement being the most prominent of the bunch. So you are not completely weak, Volley said as he wiped some blood calmly from his mouth, his divine dividing still present on his back. It's still not over though, Volley replied with a grin. What? Issei spoke in astonishment, as Volley could still activate his balance breaker. The fight does not end until one of us is dead or unable to continue fighting. This is how dragons battle, D-Drake chimed in. Volley then charged at Issei, who was caught off guard before a punch to his face knocked him back into his senses. It promptly followed. Issei could feel my power drain and grit his teeth as he tried to survive through Volley's barrage of attacks. Trying to counterattack was useless as he kept pushing before he knocked me backwards with a roundhouse kick to the face. I landed with a solid thud in front of Rias and the others. Issei, Rias screamed with concern as she tried running over to Issei but was stopped by Surzech, who said, Rias, their power has reached the point where they will vaporize anything in the vicinity. But he needs me, she shouted with concern. Issei in response grit his teeth. He knew that he could not fail her now. Don't worry about me, I will be sure to defeat him, Issei told her with determination lacing his voice. His tone made her smile. The trust you put in her is endearing, dear rival, Volley said in a sarcastic tone as he watched the interaction with a malicious look. Don't insult Rias, Issei shouted back as he defended his one true love interest. If only you knew the truth, rival, Volley spoke cryptically as if he was about to reveal a major secret. What truth? What are you talking about? Issei screamed in confusion. The fact that your master has only been using you. She doesn't care about you, she even let you die to get your power, Volley informed Issei while staring at Rias. No, she hasn't been using me. I choose to fight for her, Issei said as he disregarded Volley's words. And what do you get for your fighting? You have been near death, injured, and what do you get? Her word of thank and a pat, Volley said with venom lacing his voice. He couldn't understand. Don't insult her, Issei roared, using his anger to propel him forward. Issei cocked his fist back, but Volley easily dodged the attack and headbutted Issei, destroying his helmet and exposing his face. Issei's eyes gazed back at Volley's serious yellow ones as he held him by the neck of his armor. She let you suffer. She knew Yama was going to kill you and she sat by and waited for you to die. Volley told Issei the truth. Issei paused for a few seconds and started thinking. Unknown to many, Issei was an intelligent person. He himself had a few questions regarding his reincarnation. He however put the concern to his think on later list. He then powered up and broke out of Volley's grasp before the two of them started a battle of power. Aren't you going to question your precious master? Volley taunted. Oh, I will, just not now. I need to focus on right now. Issei answered back as D-Drag boosted his power a few times before he threw Volley back before he suddenly entered a trance-like state. Currently the only thing that he could feel was how perfect Escalon felt in his hand. He could see Volley charging at him. He could vaguely hear the voice of his teammates telling him to dodge, but that was not important. What was important was that he had a blade in his hands. Just as Volley threw his haymaker, Issei lightly turned his head a bit and on pure instinct slashed his sword, which hit Volley's armor and caused it to crack a bit. Everyone was looking on at the scene in shock. Volley was wearing a grin. He was confused by the change in his rival, but he was not one to complain. However, before they could continue, the barrier broke and a teen named Biku appeared before Volley left with him. As he left, he advised Issei to get stronger, as they would most definitely have their battle in the future. As Volley disappeared, he sent Escalon back into the gear, and just as suddenly he left his trance. Not landing on the ground, he thought, D-Drag, what the hell was that? I think that was your ancestors' blood in you beginning to rise out. We will discuss this later. For now, return to your group. There is much that we need to figure out. D-Drag called back as Issei nodded before he returned to the ground where he was monster-hugged by the girls. I can't believe it. She really did let me die. Everything connects, Issei thought in sadness and shock as he waited for Tannen to appear for the second day of his training. What are you going to do, partner? It seems that what Volley said was the truth. Should we run away? Asked D-Drag. No, that'll put a target on my back and I am nowhere near strong enough to protect myself. Not to mention it's only my bond with the Occult Research Club that's affected. I will stay and rise up the ranks, Issei replied back determinedly. As you wish, partner, though I do need to tell you something. I looked at your blood work and DNA and found that you are the descendant of Kenshin, the greatest swordsman the East has ever produced. During the fight with Volley, you unconsciously brought out your latent ability with swords. Now then, that's out of the way, I have a small proposition for you. D-Drag said. Sugoi, I didn't know I had such a great ancestor. I think I will ask Mom and Dad if they have any old heirlooms. And what proposition are we talking about? Asked Issei. I found a way to turn you into a dragon without you having to deal with the excess energy problem. By doing that, your base stats will skyrocket, giving us a chance to reach higher levels of power. D-Drag said. How? Issei asked in shock. He'll use the magic from your evil pieces as the cost for change, meaning it will have no detrimental effect on you. D-Drag answered. Let's do it. I don't want to be a pushover anymore, Issei said before he felt searing pain in his chest and passing out. An hour later, Tannen appeared, and after D-Drag's prompt explanation, he also began channeling his aura into Issei, helping in the dragonification process. Issei woke up with a groan and was immediately assaulted with multiple sounds and scents. The sudden influx of information caused him to develop a headache, which he ignored. It was then that Tannen spoke up and said, it seems you are awake. How do you feel? If you ignore the lingering headache, I feel amazing. Much more powerful. So might filling me on everything. Issei answered before asking the million-dollar question. Why not? Let's start with your composition. You are 60% dragon, 30% devil, and 10% human. Your bones are denser, muscles are stronger and more flexible. Your senses are sharper up to the point that your sensory range is as long as several kilometers. Thanks to the transformation, your brain can process information much more quickly, almost in nanoseconds. Your magic reserves have gone from non-existent to upper-tier high-class beings. Now for your appearance, you have grown a few inches, your hair is longer almost up to your shoulders, and lastly your eyes have changed color from brown to emerald green. During the dragonification, I managed to bring out your ancestors' blood, making you just as talented as he was in the blade arts. Tannen here has just the styles for you to master. D-Drag finished, feeling very smug at the newly attained strength of his host. Amazing. How much time do we have left until I need to go back, and what else do I need to work on? Asked Issei. I have 3 things planned for you. 1 is to help you master your new draconic body, 2 is to get my knights teach you how to use that blade of yours, and finally helping you unlock Balance Breaker. That's a lot of stuff to cover only in 3 months. Are you sure that it will be enough for us to do all of those things? Issei asked in a slightly confused manner. Don't worry about that, partner. Me and Tannen will be creating a time-lapse barrier for you to train in. Basically, 1 week outside will be equal to a month inside. So instead of 3 weeks, you'll be able to train 3 months, which will be more than ample for you to complete the objective set. D-Drag answered. Suji, let's go. Issei cheered as his 3 months of torture began. And that's it for your training. Will you go back alone or should I drop you off back to the estate? Tannen asked. I'll go alone, Asen. Can't be dependent on you for everything, now can I? Issei rhetorically asked. Tannen shook his head in amusement before he flew off towards his territory, leaving Issei, who turned around and flew away towards the Gremory lands. As he flew, Issei eyed his outfit and hair. One was completely torn while the other looked wild and untamed. He decided to honor his ancestor by using the style he used to follow, which included having a battle kimono with his hair tied up in a ponytail. He landed inside the Gremory gates before he started walking towards the courtyard where all of them had been dropped off for their training. He then leaned against a pillar as he waited for the rest of the peerage to appear. A few moments later he felt the presences of both the knights of the group and wordlessly nodded to them in greeting as they came into view. He could tell by their auras alone that they were stronger than they were a month ago. Both Kiba and Zenobia looked at Issei in shock. He was completely different. He was taller, more buff, and most of all his aura just screamed of power. It seems that your training was very interesting, wasn't it, Aiz-kun? Kiba asked in a friendly manner. That it was. Tannen is a real slave driver, Issei lightly commented. Asia soon entered the fray before she blushed at the sight of Issei's torn shirt that displayed a lot of his muscles. Issei raised his eyebrow at her but said nothing. In the end, she was a part of both the groups that had wronged him and was among those who he was impassive towards. Rias soon appeared and tried to hug Issei, but she, along with everyone else present, was shocked when Issei said, "I am not in the mood, Rias." Rias didn't say anything in shock. Soon the group was joined by Akino, after which they went back into the Gremory compound to refresh themselves. Issei was walking down the hall behind a maid who had been tasked to show him to a room where he could refresh himself for the upcoming meeting. Soon they were in front of the room assigned to him. As they stopped, the maid turned around and said, "We are here, Hayao Issei-sama. Do you need anything else? Please call me Aiz, and yes, I could use some battle kimonos and a few ponytails. I would appreciate if you could arrange some of both." Issei replied with a charming smile that made the maid blush red before she quickly nodded and ran off. Issei sighed before he closed his door and proceeded to strip as he entered the bathroom for his shower. Issei groaned blissfully as he entered his hot bath and slid deeper into it, letting the water work its way on the cramps in his body. The effect of the water was too much for Issei and he fell asleep in the tub. A couple of hours later, Issei was shaken awake by a stoic Grafia. "What hit me?" Issei groaned out as he woke up. "That would be me, Issei-sama. You fell asleep in the washroom and it's time for the meeting regarding the results of your training," Grafia instructed. "Give me 15, I will join you guys," Issei said with a sigh, making Grafia raise an eyebrow at him. She knew how big a pervert Issei was. To see him not even reacting to her in the bathroom was a strange sight. In fact, it was one that actually demanded looking into. Nodding in response, Grafia left the room. Issei then sighed before he stood up and left the bathroom and wiped his body. He then stopped in front of the mirror and looked at his body and compared it from just a month ago. He could see he was much more buff and had the body of a swimmer, which was made for both power and speed. His face had lost all of its fat and had a very sharp jawline. His now emerald green eyes had a sharp glint to them that he previously did not have. Smirking at his new improvements, he mentally thanked his dragon before moving back into his room. He then proceeded to change his clothes, wearing a regular shirt and trouser. He then lazily walked towards where the rest of the peerage was waiting. "Yo," he politely greeted the group plus Azazel before taking an empty seat. "Nice of you to join us, Issei. Now let us discuss the results of our month of training. We will start with the king and descend from there," Azazel instructed. "Very well then. As instructed by you, Sensei, I spent the month studying tactics along with looking at as many old raiding games as I could. I have many new ideas I wish to try whenever we get a chance to feature in any upcoming raiding games," Rias proudly answered. "Very good. Now your turn, Akino," Azazel said. "I spent the month increasing my magical reserves and broadening my reserves. I added other elemental magic to my arsenal and now have control over fire, wind, water, ice, and earth." Akino answered, feeling slightly happy. "What about the task that I assigned you?" asked Azazel. "I have practiced but will only use it as a last resort," Akino answered shortly, clearly not in the mood to be questioned further. Azazel frowned at her response but nodded nonetheless before turning his attention to Asia. He then said, "Now Asia, it's your turn. What did you learn during the training trip?" "Hi, I worked on extending the range of my sacred gear and learnt a couple of defensive barrier spells," Asia answered. "How far can you actually send your healing powers?" Azazel asked as he eyed Issei, who was uncharacteristically quiet. Azazel knew that something was wrong. The old Issei would have screamed praises on the results that the girls had displayed. This one was just stoically listening and not even batting an eye. "Hi, up to 10 meters, Asia shyly answered and looked at Issei, who remained impassive. "That's very nice. Now what about you, Gasper?" Azazel asked. Hi SS Sensei, I managed to walk in front of everyone for 10 minutes before the pressure got to me," the dampier stuttered out. "Very good, Gasper. That's an improvement," Azazel said with an approving nod. "You have done very well, Gasper. I am proud of you," Issei said as he smiled at the dampier before patting his head, making the dampier blush at his senpai's praise. "Arigato, senpai," the dampier stuttered out. It was at this point that the whole peerage was on red alert. The way he interacted with Gasper showed that he was purposefully ignoring the girls. "Now your turn, Kiba," Azazel said as he tried to speed up the meeting so that he could pull Issei aside and ask him what was wrong. Azazel had already secretly sent a message to Surzech informing him of the change in Issei's attitude. I worked on my stamina, my defense. Along with it, I worked on getting my basics to the point of perfection. I also managed to get in a few techniques from my master. All in all, I think it was a very nice training endeavor. Kiba answered, feeling proud of the results of his training. Great work. I can already tell that you are at least a level above from 1 month ago. I think so far you have shown the highest amount of improvement. Azazel praised, making the whole peerage smile for their princely knight. The only one with no emotion on his face was Issei, something that surprised the group once again since Issei did call Kiba his brother at one point. Now you Zenobia, Azazel said as he pointed towards the exiled Exchorus-turned-devil. I think it went well. My control over Durandal has gone up by a couple of notches and now I don't need to rely on its aura for everything. Zenobia answered. That's a big improvement. If you added control to your raw power, it's the way to go. Azazel answered. You have definitely improved, Zenobia, I can tell from your aura. It's much more controlled than from 1 month ago. Well done. Issei praised her with a smile, earning raised eyebrows and looks of slight disbelief from the faces of the other girls in the orc. All right, now it's your turn, Kaneko, Azazel hastily said, keen to avoid any uprising. It was fine. The Nekishu answered in monotone, clearly not willing to discuss her training in front of everyone. Oh, okay then. Finally, that leaves you, Issei. How did your training go? Asked Azazel. I'd say it went well. I was able to collect my thoughts and learn a few truths. Along with it, I have activated my balance breaker and can use it for 2 weeks in a row, Issei said to Azazel with a small grin. Amazing. Your progress indeed does stand out the most. All right, that's it for the meeting. All of you can go back to doing what you want to do. Issei, I want you to stay back. There are several things that we need to discuss. Azazel said. What do you want to talk to my dear pawn about? Riaz asked with narrowed eyes, making Issei roll his eyes at her. It's that obvious, Riaz-sama. Azazel-sensei is a sacred gear specialist. He obviously wants to make sure that my balance breaker is fully functional and has no detrimental effect on me, Issei stoically said. Riaz frowned at his tone and the way he called her. It was way too impersonal from the pervert from before. She however nodded, nonetheless keen on finding out the cause of the change in behavior from her pawn. With that, everyone except Issei and Azazel left. When they were gone, Issei turned to Azazel and lazily said, so what do you want to talk about, sensei? I'll be blunt. I want to know, why are you treating most of your teammates in such a cold manner? Azazel asked in his usual carefree tone. I don't really think that the way I behave towards them is of any concern as long as I perform the duties that are required of me, Issei replied with a small shrug of his shoulders. And what about your massive upgrade in power? I know for a fact that even with Tannen's training, getting a time limit of 2 weeks for your balance breaker is near impossible. So how did you do it? Azazel asked, this time with a slightly serious voice. That is one of my trade secrets, one that I don't intend on giving away. I hope you understand, Issei said in the same carefree voice. He may understand, but I want, specifically when you are the part of my sister's peerage, I want you to answer both of the questions asked by Azazel. The voice of Surzech reached Issei's ears. Turning around, he found himself under the scrutinizing gaze of Surzech. He shivered slightly when he felt the pressure being exerted by Surzech. Sighing softly, Issei scratched the back of his head and asked, what do you want to know first? Your power up, if you will, Surzech said as he folded his hands. Fine, then you need to promise not to share it with anyone else, Issei said. That is fair enough, Surzech said with Azazel nodding along. Since I was only 30% devil, I had D-Drag convert 60 of the remaining 70% of my body into that of a dragon's. Because of that change, my base stats all rose from non-existent to upper tier high class. And then with Tannen's training, it only increased. Balance breaker came along in the last week and I stayed in it for as long as possible to extend the time limit I can stay in it. There, that was my trade secret. You happy now? Issei asked with a huff as he finished his explanation. While it is feasible, how did you avoid any mutations? Asked Azazel. Oh, Tannen helped me in training with Draconic Aura. I can regulate my aura on a subconscious level to release my draconic features or to hide them like I have now. Apart from that, there were no complications or mutations since D-Drag used the magic of one pawn piece as the price for the change, and Tannen helped with the whole transformation process, Issei explained, getting nods of understanding from the 2 faction leaders in front of him. Anything else you have to mention in your training trip? I have a right to know as your faction leader, Surzech asked with a smile. I'll tell you, Nai-sama, but you need to promise not to tell Ria-sama about it. I am keeping it as a trump card for myself, Issei said. All right, but you will need to explain why you don't want Riaz to know, Surzech said, getting a nod from Issei. During training, it took about a week for the dragonification process to complete itself. During it, D-Drag discovered that I am the ancestor of Rurouni Kenshin, and he bought out my latent talent in swordsmanship. Tannen then created a time-lapse barrier where 1 week became 1 month. In that barrier, I mastered my draconic abilities in the first month, then moved to mastering Escalon with Tannen Knights for the second, before mastering my balance breaker in the 3rd month. After that, I came back here, Issei said, getting nods from both Surzech and Azazel. Well, we will have to thank Tannen for the great training session he put you through. Now, why don't you want to share all this information with Riaz? She is your master after all, Azazel asked. It's pretty simple. I don't trust her or the other members of Occult Research Club, Issei shortly answered. And why not? You fought quite valiantly for her name before. What changed? Azazel asked as Surzech listened on with an interested look on his face. Because what Vali said was true. She did let me die at the hands of Rainier, so that she could revive me as a loyal piece. Issei said, how do you know that? For all we know, Vali said that to mess with your team dynamics. Surzech asked, tell me, Naisama, is it possible for a high-class devil to not know about the happenings in their territory? Issei asked, no, they do know everything that happens. Surzech slowly answered, not liking where this conversation was going. Then how can Ria-sama claim to not know about the fallen angels in her territory? Added to the fact she had her familiar give me her summoning paper. She knew exactly what the rogue fallen angels were planning and let them do it so that she could have me as a piece. Issei answered, making Surzech bow his head in shame, as he knew what Issei had said was indeed true. He never knew that his sweet little sister would be capable of doing something this heinous. I can see why you don't trust Rias, but what about the others? Asked Azazel. Didrag told me that he had sensed both Kaneko and Kiba following me. That shows that the whole group was in on the plan, which is why I can't trust them anymore. Issei explained. What about Asia? Asked Azazel. I have nothing against her, but since my mind is now several times sharper, I find her annoying. Issei said with a shrug. That's all well and good. What do you plan on doing in the future? Are you a threat to us? Surzech asked in his leader mode. I plan on rising through the ranks and becoming a high-class devil. I will perform all the tasks required of me as a devil of the Gremory family. I will perform requests and fight in raiding games. However, any and all the promises I made about protecting them are off the table. I won't go out of the way to protect them anymore. Also, there won't be any chance of having a romantic relationship with any of the orc girls. Issei said, making both the leaders in front of him nod in understanding. Truth be told, both of them were expecting a lot more. In comparison to their expectations, Issei asked for literally nothing. While they knew that their sister, God Otters, would be saddened at losing their love interest, it was for the greater good. Well, the only thing I can say is that I am deeply sorry, Issei. I never expected my little Riatan to do something so evil. Is there anything I can do to make it up to you? Surzech asked. Well, nothing immediately comes to mind. How about I give you a rain check and then cash in that favor when I need it? Issei said as both the leaders nodded before disappearing into their magic circles. Issei was dressed up in a red battle kimono as he waited for Tannen to arrive and escort both the Citri and Gremory peerages to the venue for the young devils' meeting. Soon he heard multiple footsteps coming towards him. When the footsteps came to a stop, Issei opened his eyes to find the blushing faces of the orc girls. Issei on the other remained stoic and only nodded his head in greetings. Rias frowned at the lack of emotion shown by Issei and made a small yet seductive pose and said, how do I look, eyes? You look beautiful as usual, Rias-sama. Issei answered in a normal voice. Issei don't only compliment but you, it makes the rest of us jealous. Akino said as she moved up to Issei. The rest of you look just as beautiful, senpai. Issei answered as he shook Akino of him and moved to lean against the wall. Issei's eyes then found Gasper, who was dressed up in female party wear. Gasper, you are cross-dressing again? Issei asked with a sigh. Hi, I feel comfortable in clothes like this. The damper shyly said. Whatever you need, grow out of this habit, little bro. Issei said before silence reigned within the group. The girls were awkwardly looking at Issei, who stood with his eyes closed, seemingly aloof to his surroundings. More footsteps invaded the silence, signaling the arrival of the Citri peerage. The first person to speak was Sona, who said, it's good to see you, Rias. Is he your new piece? She asked as she pointed at Issei. It's nice to see you, to Rias, and that's Issei, not a new pawn piece. Rias said with a sigh. Issei had grown to be very attractive, and she was bummed out that he wasn't even showing her a quarter of the usual attention that he normally did. She, however, decided to talk to him and find out the reasons for his attitude when this was done. I see, forgive me. I wasn't able to recognize him because of the massive changes he has shown. Sona said with a nod. Saji then walked up to Issei and said, how did you get like this, Hayao? Tell me. I train and seriously trained at that. Why don't you try to do the same? Issei asked back, making his fellow pawn quiet down. The rest of the group wasn't surprised and just put it off as the usual banter between the two pawns. Say, Hayao, have you made any progress with your king? Saji asked perversely. Nothing noteworthy, you? Asked Issei with mild interest. Nothing. Kaichu is way too strict and it's a very hard process to get closer to her. Saji said with a sigh. I see, well, good luck. Issei said, making his fellow pawn smile. Thanks to you too. Saji said, making Issei sigh as he said. I don't need luck specifically when I am not even chasing after her anymore. Issei said quietly. What do you mean? Saji shouted out, getting curious looks from the others around the duo. However, before anyone could reply, a loud thud was heard signaling the arrival of Tannen. The peerages shrugged before all of them walked out to greet the retired Dragon King. As they walked, Saji continuously glared at Issei, with Issei completely ignoring him. Soon they were greeted by Tannen, who said, greetings, Rias Dono, you are looking lovely as usual. Same for you, Sona Dono, you look beautiful. Thank you for the compliment as well as for escorting us to the meeting venue. Rias said with Sona nodding along. It's of no consequence. We will be flying there. I have a barrier around us so you won't worry about the air messing up your hair or clothes. Tannen said as he pointed to his fellow dragons. Rias and Sona nodded in thanks before mounting the dragons. Issei found himself sitting alone on Tannen's head. He liked it a lot. Watching the view from the top, he said, this is amazing. Indeed it is. This is the guilty pleasure of every dragon out there, watching the skies as they fly around unafraid. Tannen said with a nod. Amazing. Hey D-Drag, is this what it felt like when you were unsealed? Asked Issei. D-Drag said as he bitterly chuckled. Issei could understand his partner's bitterness. He went from ruling the sky to only being able to see the view atop another dragon. It was a humbling experience, to say the least. Issei stayed quiet and left his partner to his thoughts while offering his company to him. A few moments later Issei turned to Tannen and said, Nyasan, why did you become a devil? I know for a fact that you were strong enough to survive against almost any opponent out there. So why did you become a servant? Asked Issei. Tannen stayed quiet for a few moments before he spoke and said, well, like you said, there were no battles that excited me, as I could take on nearly everyone in the wild. I thought the raiding games would offer me ample opportunities to get in good fights. But there was a second reason as well. What was it? Issei asked, completely engrossed in the story. Do you remember about the dragon apple I told you about? Asked Tannen. Yeah, you told me it was very delicious. Issei said, making Tannen nod. Well, there is a special breed of dragons that only lives on dragon apples. Since the fruit was scarce and was only grown in the underworld, dragons were generally hated by both fallen angels and devils, and they would never allow them into the underworld. I became a devil so that when I became a high-class devil I would take that piece of land and exclusively grow the fruit, allowing that breed of dragons to survive. Along with it, I have also been conducting research on other ways to grow that fruit. It's slow, but if we succeed, the future will be assured. I think dragons who are strong should take care of weaker dragons. After all, what's the use of this power if you can't help others? Tannen finished. Hey, you really are a very nice dragon, Asen. Issei said with his voice laced with respect. Ha, you really are one of a kind. I have been called many things, but nice is one of them. In that case, I can say you are a kind red dragon emperor. Tannen said with a laugh. Thanks, Asen. Say, you know what, I will let you experiment on my territory when I become a high-class devil. Issei said with a nod. You will really let me do that? Tannen asked with a little shock. Why, when you said it yourself that dragons with power should help those without it. Not to mention I kinda want to taste those dragon apples now, Issei said as he rubbed the back of his head. You may not be strongest red dragon emperor in history, but you are without any doubt the best one to live. I wish you good luck and success for the future, Tannen said with a laugh as he began to descend to the ground before landing with a small thud. Jumping of the Dragon King's head, Issei gracefully landed on the ground before turning to Tannen and said, thanks for the ride, Asen. Anytime. If you ever need some training, remember to ping me up. Saying that, Tannen returned Rya's thanks before flying away as he flew away to the accommodations made for him. D-Drag commented with a chuckle as they saw Tannen flying away. Issei only nodded his head at the assessment as he fondly smiled after someone he was beginning to see as a grandfather. Alright then everyone, let's go. Remember, we will be meeting other peerages, so be at your best behavior. Issei, please don't do anything perverted that may cause problems for me, Rhea said in an authoritative tone. Whatever you say, Rhea-sama, Issei said with a professional bow, making Rhea's frown. She wasn't used to this type of attitude from her pawn, and honestly she wasn't a big fan of it. The others just nodded in response before Tai group started walking towards the gathering. Issei was walking at the tail end of the group. This was a maneuver from him to avoid having any conversation with the members of the Orc. However, before they could enter the room that housed the high-class young devils, they were stopped as the entrance exploded, stopping the group in their tracks. However, before they could walk inside, a voice spoke up from behind them and said, Geez, that's why I advise the elders not to put everyone together, but no one listens. The voice belonged to a black-haired, purple-haired muscular individual. For some reason, Issei's battle instincts went into hyperdrive as soon as he looked at this individual. Despite him hiding his power, Issei could tell that he was in the upper echelon even among the high-class devils. Heck, Issei was certain that Riser didn't even come close to the level the man in front of him was at. Sarayorg, it is so good to see you again, Rhea said as she went up to hug the man. It's good to see you, Rhea. Is this your peerage? Sarayorg asked as he eyed Issei. Despite Issei suppressing nearly all of his power, Sarayorg could tell that he was stronger than most of the people inside the room. His posture, despite looking relaxed, was one that was battle-ready. Yes, they are. Everyone, this is Sarayorg Bale, my cousin from my mother's side, Rhea proudly said. Good to meet you, everyone. Now let us go in and stop the madness they have cooked before they bring down the entire hall, Sarayorg said as he led the group into the hall. Inside they found the Ager's heir, who was beautiful blonde spectacled girl, and the Glacia Labola's heir, who in every word was a delinquent. Tell me, do you want to die, Zelfador? Because if you want to, I'd be more than happy to kill you, Sikvera said. Why don't you come with me? I'd take good care of your virgin pussy, Zelfador said with a sneer. Before they could continue, Sarayorg stepped up and said, Heiress of the Ager's clan and the problem child of the Glacia Labola's clan, stop this childishness. If you don't, you'll have to deal with me. Sikvera quickly backed down, not wanting to be on the receiving end of the strongest young devil's beatdown. Zelfador, on the other hand, wasn't fazed and said, and why should I listen to you, you failed Bale? He finished with a sneer. Sarayorg didn't respond. Instead, he simmered out of existence before reappearing behind Zelfador and then punching Zelfador, which caused him to rocket off towards Issei. Issei, however, didn't move and swiped his hand in horizontal manner as he snatched Zelfador out of the air from the air and moved him to the side, taking out most of the force on his body. Issei looked at the unconscious high-class devil in his hand before dropping him on the floor. He then turned to a smirking Sariorg and said, "Oi Sariorg Bale-sama, I would watch where you throw the trash, the bin is on the other side." "Sorry, it was an honest mistake, I'll be careful in the future," Sariorg said with a smirk. Sariorg then turned around and said, "Clean up this mess, I won't be able to enjoy my tea with Rias that way." Rias then led the group around as they greeted the group. Several other high-class devils flirted with Rias in the kino and tried to put Issei down, but he did not respond and merely stayed quiet. He knew for a fact that there were only a select few in the room who could face him and his balance breaker, which was why he did not waste any energy into retaliating to their attempts. The rounds continued until all of the young devils were called in for the meeting. Inside the main hall they were greeted by the sight of all four Mao and the other honorable elders of the Devil Council. Once everyone was in the room and everything fell into place, Surzech stood up and said, "Welcome everyone to the annual Young Devil Gathering. Before we begin our usual interactions, I have 3 things that I would like to announce." Surzech then quietened down as he waited for everyone to be attentive. After a few moments he spoke up and said, "The first announcement is about the Young Devil Rating Game Tournament." This announcement immediately caused excited murmuring to break out among the young devils. Surzech then cleared his throat and said, "As you heard, the Mao and elders mutually agreed to create this tournament to not only give you invaluable rating game experience, but will also prepare you in the case you need to be deployed against the Chaos Brigade." "Does that mean we will be sent to the front lines?" asked Sariorg. "No, we do not want you young devils to fight on the front lines. You are the future of our race, and this is our way of preparing you for the future," Surzech said as silence once again reigned throughout the hall. "The second announcement is about the 5 supernovas," Surzech continued. "The 5 supernovas, what's that?" asked Sona. "That is the title made for the 5 young devils with the most promising peerages and potential. They are ones who train their peerages rather than trading pieces if someone falls behind. They are Rias Gremory, Sona Citri, Sariorg Bale, Zelfador Glacia Labolas, and Deodras Thorath. Please step forward," Surzech said as the 5 aforementioned young devils all stepped forward. "Please tell us your dreams and aspirations for the future," Surzech instructed. "I want to become the future rating game champion and have the strongest peerage in the underworld," Rias said, making the elders smile. It was a lofty but nonetheless an admirable goal. "I wish to become a Mao," Sariorg confidently said, immediately garnering frowns from the Elder Devil Council. "Oh, interesting. It's an unusual wish. May I ask, why do you want to become the Mao when you are the heir to the Great King?" asked Surzech. "I believe I'll be able to serve the public better as a Mao," Sariorg said, getting Surzech to nod and offer him a smile. "I want to explore the world and expand the devil's influence into new areas," Zelfdor said, getting approving nods from the elders. "I wish to open a rating game school for low-class devils," Sona loudly and confidently said. Her answer prompted laughter to break out among the elders, who made fun of her dream. Saji, however, intervened and called the elders stuck geezers who didn't want to move on. Thankfully, Seraphil interfered and stopped the elders from sending out any punishment, hence closing the matter. "I wish to open church-like facilities in the underworld," Deodra said with a creepy smile. His answer raised several eyebrows, one of which was Issei's, who decided to keep an eye out for the Asthora there. "And now for our final announcement. In light of Vali Lucifer's appearance, me and the other Mao all decided to have an extensive search to see if any other heirs of the 4 royal clans remained. It is with great happiness that I inform that we found one such heir. She is your age fellow. Allow me to welcome Invigiled Leviathan heiress to the Leviathan clan," Surzech proudly announced. As he finished, the door behind him opened and very beautiful purple-haired, red-eyed girl with a very decent bust shyly walked out and stood next to Surzech. Time seemed to freeze for Issei as he looked at Invigiled. There was something about her that pulled Issei like a magnet to metal. Apart from that, he couldn't help but lightly blush at the sight of her beauty, not to mention the perfection of body curves tingled his perverted side. It was at that moment that Issei decided several things. The first and foremost one was to ensure that the girl in front of him was always safe and happy. "Damn it, what's happening to me?" Issei thought as his heart was still beating at a very fast rate. It had been like that since he had seen Invigiled. Drake chimed in. "How can you suggest that even after all I have been through recently?" Issei asked back. "That was different as you let your heart trust way too much. This time, however, it's your draconic instincts guiding you. Just think of it this way, in a room full of powerful females you only reacted to her. That speaks volumes in itself, does it not?" Drake replied. "Yes, it does." "How right, then I am going to go talk to her." Issei thought back and started to slowly move towards Invigiled. However, as he started walking, he suddenly started feeling incredibly anxious and stopped. "Arg, I don't believe this. I died, came back, fought a high-class devil and won, survived against a Cotter-level fallen angel, threw against the strongest white dragon emperor and survived a months of hellish training under a freaking dragon king, and I am feeling shy to talk to a girl. Come on, it's not even funny. I can literally beat 80% of the young devils here, yet I am scared of talking to a girl." Issei internally ranted, much to Drake's amusement. "Okay, Issei, deep breaths, you've got this. Just go and say hi. It'll all be fine then," he said to himself as he drew in a few deep breaths and then started moving towards Invigiled. As he moved towards her direction, he could see that most of his fellow peerage members were spread around the room and were associating with other low-class devils. His eyes then moved to Invigiled, who was shyly standing alone on a side as everyone else interacted with each other. Issei felt a slight rise in his rage as he connected the dots. Despite having the blood of the original Leviathan, she was still a half-devil and hence was being discriminated by the young devils. Walking up to her, he said hi. Invigiled immediately took a small step backwards as her eyes showed a little fear. Looking at her reaction, Issei immediately raised his hands in a placating manner and said, "I am sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, I was merely greeting you." "I am so sorry. My name is Invigiled Leviathan," Invigiled said with an embarrassed blush. "Think nothing of it. The name's Hayao to Issei, your friendly next-door Red Dragon Emperor," Issei said with a small bow. "You are the Red Dragon Emperor?" Invigiled asked in a loud voice before she realized that several high-class devils looked at her due to outbursts causing her to blush. "That I am," Issei started but couldn't continue as he was interrupted by Rias, who came up and said, Issei, I hope you aren't disturbing Leviathan-sama, are you?" Issei rolled his eyes at her question and did not answer. Invigiled, however, immediately said, "And no, he wasn't disturbing, we were just talking, nothing more. My name is Invigiled Leviathan, by the way, it's nice to meet you." Rias Gremory, the pleasure is all mine. Rias greeted as the two high-class devils shook hands with each other. Both the girls then made general conversation. Soon after, Rias spotted Kaneko and Kiba leave the room and excused herself before following them out. She was expecting Issei to follow her as she knew that he cared for his comrades, however she was surprised beyond measure when she saw that he wasn't following. She then felt very angry and resolved to talk to Issei as soon as she came back with her knight and rook. A few minutes after she left, a soft song had started playing. It was a tune that Issei liked. A few moments later, the courtyard was full of dancing couples. Issei then looked over to Invigiled and raised a hand her and said, "May I have this dance?" "Ay." Invigiled stuttered out with a massive blush on her face. "You know, you really way too cute for your own good." "May I have this dance, my lady?" asked Issei with a small bow and chuckle. Invigiled just took his hand and muttered "Baka." Issei then led her to the dance floor before he placed her hand on his shoulder while taking hold of her other hand. He then placed his free hand on her slender waist before the duo began dancing. Invigiled's blush reached atomic levels as she felt his warm hands on her bare back. Issei, on the other hand, had a serene look on his face while his inside pervert was cheering at the feeling of Invigiled's soft body. "So how am I, Ibaka?" Issei playfully asked the blushing girl as the duo danced in the center of the room, garnering looks of interest. Issei smirked and was glad that someone had opened up to the new princess. He did mentally note to make sure not to let the elders interfere with this new couple. "You called a girl you hardly know about cute, that why you are a baka," she replied with a pout on her blushing face. But it was the truth, you are the most beautifully cute girl I have ever seen," Issei said, making the girl shyly look away. After a few moments of silence, Issei felt Invigiled shift a little and looked at her. Thanks to his dragonification, he was a good head taller than her. Can you tell me why you were so indifferent towards your king?" "From what I was told, the Gremories were actually quiet close to their peerages," Invigiled asked. Issei stayed quiet for a few moments before he twirled Invigiled and said, "Are getting interested in my backstory, Helheim? How about this, you tell me about your life and I'll tell you about mine," Issei said, making Invigiled blush and pout again at the nickname. "My dad was the Leviathan heir and my mom is a strong mage. She trained me in magic and told me everything about my inheritance. When Serafal-sama came to our place, my mom decided that it would have been better if I joined the new Mao side, since the old faction could try and come after me. After I came here, my mom returned to the mage faction. Now it's your turn to spill it," Invigiled said before she was spun around by Issei once again. "Well, let's just say there are a few murky facts that surround my reincarnation as a devil," Issei said before he quietened down. Invigiled herself was curious but did not question further. She had, just like him, omitted a few key facts about herself, so she couldn't blame them. Invigiled then felt a little uneasy as she could practically taste the lust that was coming of some of the other high-class devils that eyed her as she and Issei danced. Issei, the stairs are making me uncomfortable," she said as she slightly hid her face into Issei's chest. Issei, in response, looked over to the guys staring at her and glared at them before his eyes morphed and became slitted. The high-class devils then began to sweat slightly as they could see the visage of a ginormous red celestial dragon from behind Issei. They then turned and walked away, dropping the stairs. Issei then turned to his partner and said, "Is that better, Heim?" Invigiled looked up and around the room and was slightly shocked to see that nearly all of the onlookers were now doing something else. "How did you do that?" Invigiled asked with a tilt of a head. "You know I won't be able to resist myself if you keep on being so cute. As for how I did that, let's just say I intimidated them," Issei said as he put both of Invigiled's hands around his neck while he wrapped both of his hands around her waist. "Why do you know you could have gotten in trouble for that?" asked Invigiled with a little shock as her blush slightly grew at the position in the dance. "Well, you requested it, Heim. I'd bring you the moon if you asked for it," Issei said, making Invigiled's blush grow. She then decided to take a small leap of faith and tiptoed up and gave Issei a soft, chaste kiss on his cheek. It was Issei's turn to blush for a moment, after which he warmly smiled and looked towards Invigiled, who had an atomic blush on her face and was looking everywhere except towards him. "You know, if that's the award I get every time I compliment you, I think you'll do it more oftenly," Issei said with a warm look. However, before Invigil could reply, there was a loud crash and Loki was seen floating in the center of the room as he directly looked over towards Odin. Issei pulled Invigil behind him and stepped back as he ready to scallon. He then pushed Invigil to a safe place and was about to step in to help the mouse, but was stopped when a soft hand held his. Looking back, he saw Invigil looking at him with worry evident in her eyes. He warmly smiled at before kissing her hand and nodding at her. He looked back at Loki, who had just fired a strong magic attack at Odin and the Mau. Issei then jumped before intercepting the attack midair and cut it down with multiple fast-paced slashes from a scallon. His action garnered looks of shock from the young devils around the room, while the Maus and gods showed looks of interest. Very interesting, you were able to cut down my attack with swordsmanship alone. That speaks volumes of your skill. What's your name? Asked Loki. Hayadu Issei. Do it now, Didrag. Issei called out as the boosted gear appeared on his left hand. From the gear, Didrag roared out. As he finished the call, Issei was engulfed in large explosion of red energy and fire. When the explosion died down, Issei was seen floating inside his complete scale mail that was shining with power. Oh, interesting, you have very decent control over the forbidden move. Let's see how you deal with my son then, Loki said as he created a purple magic circle from which the god-slaying wolf Fenrir appeared and roared at Issei. However, before it could attack, a large array of green magic circles appeared around both Loki and Fenrir. Loki looked around in shock before he looked at Ajuka as he disappeared into the green magic circle. How long will that seal hold him? Odin asked as he looked over to Ajuka. Considering Loki's strength, I'd say it gives us around 2 days at least. Ajuka answered with a small frown. Well, that at least gives us more than enough time to plan a response. Surzech said, perhaps I can be of assistance. A voice rang out, which was followed by a bright white light that was soon revealed as Vali's balance breaker. Issei sensed the Maus slightly raise their auras and raised his armored arm as he said, relax, he isn't here to cause trouble, trust me on this one. The Maus relaxed a bit. Issei was several leagues ahead of his old level and could without a doubt handle the White Dragon Emperor. Fancy seeing you here, Vali, already here for a rematch. Issei spoke through his scale mail, though you could literally hear the smirk on his lips. As tempting as that sounds, I am here to discuss a proposition with you, Vali said in a very similar tone to the one Issei used. What proposition are we talking about here? Asked Issei. Me and my team will assist you and any other fighter the Alliance sends to fight Loki. I am curious to see how well Red and White fight when they join forces, Vali said, getting looks of shock from around the room. Aha, you sure know how to spice up a party, Vali. Very well, the Alliance will accept your help and will form a temporary partnership with you, Azazel said as he flew to meet his surrogate son. That's good to hear. Now let us discuss our plan of action, Vali said as he and Issei followed the leaders into the meeting room. Before we start, I would like to ask Odin on how we can stop Fenrir. Killing Loki will take too long and Fenrir will be a pain, Vali said as he leaned against a wall. Fenrir can be controlled if you have something that can break the magical hold that Loki has on him. As for Loki, I can send the Mjolnir for you guys to use and seal him, Odin said, getting nods of acknowledgement from the people around the room. That should work. A member of my team has just the thing to work Fenrir with, and for Loki it seems me and Hayadu Issei will have to pound him in until Mjolnir arrives, Vali said, getting a few nods and chuckles from around the room. Now then, we need to decide who is going to face Loki. So far we have Vali and his team along with me. Who else are you going to be sending? Issei asked. Now that is a tricky part. Loki's attack was unprecedented and not one orchestrated by the Chaos Brigade. Because of that, it will hard to find people who can survive against opponents of that caliber, Surzech said with a frown. Then we would like to volunteer, Riaz said as she and Sona stepped into the room. Riaz argued that she wouldn't sit back since her pawn was involved, while Sona stated she couldn't trust anyone to watch Riaz back in a battle against a foe like Loki. Surzech nodded in acceptance and gave both of them permission to take only their battle-orientated peerage members. After everything was agreed upon with both the young high-class devils, Odin said, I will also send along my bodyguard Roswace. She may be young, a virgin, and someone who has never had a boyfriend, but she is among the strongest Asgard has to offer and won't slow you down. As Odin finished, the young Valkyrie fell onto the ground and started crying as she repeated everything that Odin had just about her, causing everyone in the room to sweat drop. Now then, that is all for this meeting. All of you can go and prepare for tomorrow in any way you want. Vali, you and your team will be required to stay with the Gremory peerage, Azazel said, getting nods of acknowledgement from around the room as one by one everyone left. You've grown stronger, Hayadu Issei, Vali said as he and Issei walked side by side towards the Gremory estate. You can say that I have. The information you gave me was a rather strong motivation to get strong, Issei lightly commented. I thought you would ditch that weak peerage and go rogue after you connected all of the dots yourself, Vali said with a curious look. I did consider it for a while but ultimately decided against it. It was running away after all. I decided it was better to stay here and reach the upper status on my own, Issei said with a shrug. That does make sense. So Hayadu Issei, how did you gain this level of power in just a month after our first scuffle? Vali asked. Tannen created a time-lapse barrier that extended the month's training to 4. Issei shortly answered, not divulging his transformation. I see, that does make sense, Vali said with a nod. So what exactly are you here for? I doubt you would have come just for the sake of helping us in this fight, Issei asked. You know you are smarter than what others give you credit for. And don't worry, Loki has something I need. It will be something that I take from him as you seal him up. Volley cryptically answered. Issei only nodded with narrowed eyes before he dropped Volley off to the room that was assigned for his team. Issei then sighed and was about to walk away when a maid ran up to him and said, Issei-sama, there is someone here for you. Issei nodded before following the maid towards the lounge where his guest awaited him. He soon reached the lounge and was surprised to find Invigiled nervously waiting for him with Lady Gremory. Entering the room, he said, Greetings, Lady Gremory, did you call for me? He finished with a bow. Ah yes, Issei, Invigiled here wanted to speak to you, which is why I summoned you. After entertained Invigiled, I'd like to have a word with you, Lady Gremory said with a narrow smile. Of course, milady, Issei said as Venalina walked away. Issei then turned to Invigiled and rushed towards her and tightly hugged her, elicting an eep from the girl who blushed atomically at the sudden action. He sighed blissfully at the softness and warmth Invigiled provided. It was something that made him never want to let her go. He then broke the hug and warmly smiled at the shy blushing girl in front of him and said, I am sorry, Haim, I shouldn't have left you alone in that hall. No, it's okay. I came to check up on you. I was worried since I didn't see you after the party, Invigiled said as she frantically waved her hands in front of Issei. Issei grabbed both of her hands and calmed her down with a chuckle before saying, Don't worry about me, Haim. I won't die that easily, so don't worry. Invigiled smiled shyly as he softly stroked her hands with his thumbs. She then closed the distance between them and once again hid her growing blush into his chest. Well, Haim, you should get going. I have a battle to prepare for, Issei said as he lightly pushed Invigiled back. What battle? Invigiled asked as she tilted her head to the side. The Gremory and Citri peerages along with the White Dragon Emperor will be taking on Loki tomorrow. I am going to be the vanguard along with the White One tomorrow, Issei said in a casual tone that made Invigiled sputter out high-paced questions. What? How will fight him? Why did you agree to go? What if you get hurt? What will I do if you get hurt? She quick-fired only for Issei to calm her down with a shoulder shake. I won't be fighting him alone. I will have a very strong individual watching my back. There was no one available who was suitable for the task, which was why I took it. I have been injured in the past when I was much weaker. Now I am pretty strong and should be fine. And why are you worried about me, Haim? Issei calmly replied. You are the first friend I have made since I came to the underworld. I don't even have any peerage members to talk to. I didn't want to lose you, she softly said while looking down as held a sad look in her eyes. Issei looked at her and felt bad at the sadness her eyes projected. He softly stroked her cheek, making the girl close her eyes and involuntarily lean into his warm hand. Listen, Haim, I promise I will come back, he said, hoping to satisfy her. But what if you get hurt? She asked, her stance unmoving. And how about an incentive bet of sorts? If I come back, I will take something of yours that you can't give anyone else, Issei said with a small yet mischievous smile. What is that thing? She curiously asked. Your first kiss, Issei answered, making Invigilad's blush return in full force. She once again averted her eyes from him. Do you agree? He softly asked, not wanting to terrify the girl. Only if you make sure to come back in one piece, she muttered quietly with her blush getting redder. Issei nodded with a smile before kissing her on the forehead and saying, All right, Haim, why don't you go and get some rest? I will see you after the fight. Invigilad nodded at that before she teleported away in a magic circle. A rather interesting meeting and incentive, Mr. Hayaudu, then Venalina said as she entered the room with her arms crossed. Indeed it was, Issei answered without turning to Venalina. Am I to believe that you will no longer be courting my daughter? Asked Venalina. That is exactly what you are to believe, Gremory-sama, Issei said as he turned out and stared at Venalina. Venalina wordlessly dropped her arms to the sides and raised her aura to upper-tier high-class devil in an attempt to intimidate Issei, who remained impassive. This inwardly impressed. Even Rias flinched when she raised her power to this level, but Issei did not even look bothered. Why did you stop courting her? You seemed to pretty much fancy her just a month ago, asked Venalina. Life experiences tell you things, Gremory-sama, that is all I will say. Good day, I have a battle to prepare for, and I have already talked this through with Surzech-sama and he has wholeheartedly agreed with my decisions, Issei said before walking out, leaving a confused Venalina to her thoughts. Issei, however, had other things running around in his mind. For now he had made a decision and had decided to immediately cash in the favor that the Maoist owed him. Moving towards Surzech's office, he knocked the door before waiting for a few moments. Grafia opened with a slightly confused look that told him that Surzech wasn't expecting any visitors. Can I speak to Surzech-sama? I have something urgent to discuss with him, Issei said. Give me a few moments as I talk to Lucifer-sama, Grafia said before closing the door, not waiting for a response. A couple of minutes later, Grafia opened the door and motioned for Issei to enter. What can I do for Issei? Surzech asked with a smile. I am sure Invigilad's inclusion into the Young Devil Society wasn't as smooth as you planned. Wasn't it? Asked Issei. Surzech nodded with a sigh and said, You are right. It seems that most purebloods still hold contempt for half-bloods. Not to mention we haven't had any luck in finding any potential peerage members. You were the first person her age who interacted with her since she came to the underworld. Then I guess I will be cashing in on the favor that you mean, Isama, Issei said with a small smirk, elicting looks of surprise from both the senior devils. Okay, Surzech confusedly said, prodding Issei to continue. After the whole fiasco with Loki has been dealt with, I want to be traded into Invigild's peerage. You have already seen a glimpse of my power at the party, so you won't have to worry about her safety. I am her first friend in the underworld, so she will be comfortable in my presence as well. It's a win-win situation for all parties involved, Issei said before quietening down and waiting for Surzech to continue. Wait a minute, Issei-sama, what about Rias? Grafia stoically demanded. What about her? Issei asked in a casually aloof manner. His attitude made even the stoic Grafia lose her cool, and she was about to snarl when Surzech raised his arm to quieten her. All right, Issei, I will get everything ready for your trading. Though you should know Invigild will more or less make you her queen, and you will have a lot more responsibilities. You will have to be her sword, shield, her most trusted companion, and more. Surzech said. I know, and I am prepared for it, Issei stated. But Zech, what about Rias? You can't be considering this, you know how she feels about him. Grafia hissed, this time forgetting her role as the maid and becoming the Lucifer matriarch. He was owed a favor from me, and I will keep my promise. That is final. You may go, Issei. I will handle any of the repercussions that may arise, Surzech said in an authoritative voice, silencing Grafia. Issei nodded and thanks before leaving the room. Once he left, Grafia waited for a few moments before her eyes blazed in fury, and she turned to Surzech, who was impassively adopting a thinking pose. Surzech, freaking Gremory, what in the world are you trying to pull, separating your sister from her love interest? She growled. No need to be concerned, what's done is done. Surzech placated impassively. Not concerned. Not concerned. Do you have any idea how Rias will fare with this? She shouted. I have thought of all the ramifications and will handle them as such, Surzech said with a dismissive wave of his hand. Stop dismissing everything. I already lost a sibling. Why are you doing the same? She angrily asked. For Lucifer's sake, Grafia, she let the poor boy die, Surzech shouted with a snap that finally shut Grafia, who was now looking at Surzech with a shocked look on her face. After a few minutes of tense silence, Grafia schooled her features, bringing back her ice-maid persona, and said exactly one word: elaborate. Surzech sighed, knowing that this discovery won't be let off without an explanation, and then began explaining each and everything that Issei had told him and Azazel. In the end, even Grafia had her head in her hands with a horrified expression on her face. And that was why I owed him the favor. Issei is worth more than Rias, and his happiness and loyalty both are closely linked. We need a heavenly dragon on our side. Not to mention, it leaves me a bad taste in my mouth leaving him in her peerage, specifically after knowing what she did to him, Surzech tiredly said. Does she know? Grafia asked in a low voice. That he knows, and that he'll soon be out of her hands, asked Surzech, to which he only received a nod from his wife and queen. No, she doesn't, and I'd rather deal with one major temper tantrum than many small ones, to which Grafia only nodded in acceptance and understanding, knowing exactly how stubborn Rias could be. So what's the other reason you're agreeing to send Issei into Invigild's peerage? From what I gathered, he was more than willing to work for a high-class position within Rias's peerage, Grafia asked. They love each other. It's love at first sight. I could tell from the look in Issei's eyes. They held the same look that I had when I first met you, completely entranced. Invigild feels the same way given the interaction, but she hasn't realized it. It will give them a good chance to be together and be happy, Surzech answered. Well, I do admit they do make a cute couple. Grafia lightly commented, the tension that was in the room finally being broken. That they do. For now, let us prepare for the upcoming shitstorm that will soon hit us, Surzech tiredly said before yelping a bit as Grafia smacked him on the head. What was that for? Surzech cried out indignantly. For swearing. It is unbecoming for a Mao to swear, Grafia stoically answered, though her eyes shone with mirth. Issei walked back to his room and entered it with a sigh. He contemplated the upcoming battle and knew it was going to be his hardest test yet. For some reason he couldn't help but feel excited, and that was confusing him. What are you thinking about, partner? Diedrag mentally asked. A little change in attitude. I am feeling excited to face Loki. I can feel it in my blood. The excitement and energy is brewing up to the surface. I have never felt this way before. Any idea what this could be? Asked Issei. That's the new dragon blood flowing in your veins. We dragons are a fighting race. We live for the thrill of battle and respect only power. Since you were recently transformed, you'll have a full throttle of the draconic emotions. That also includes an increase in your hormone levels. But don't worry, the intensity will go down with time, Diedrag explained, getting a groan out of Issei, who then merely shook his head before entering his room. He then proceeded to go to the bathroom and then changed into his nightwear. He was about to go to bed when he heard a soft knock on the door. Raising his eyebrows, he moved to the door and slightly opened it to find Asia standing there. Issei raised an eyebrow at her, which caused her to blush before she stuttered out and said, Issei-san, can I sleep with you tonight? No, you may not. It is not right for a boy and girl who have no relationship with each other to sleep together. You can go ask someone else. I am sure they will be more than willing to let you in, Issei said, and was about to close the door when Asia said, But Issei-san, me and Rias one-sama used to sleep with you all the time. She tried to argue. Yes, and that was a mistake. One that I hope to rectify, Issei said before closing the door and promptly locking it. He was not going back to them. That was something he would make sure of. So here is the plan. All of you will attack Loki and hold him off until Monger is delivered. After that, Issei will use it to seal up Loki. Remember, it needs to be Issei, otherwise the power output won't be enough for the sealing to be complete. Azazel said to the Gremory Peerage, Citri Peerage and Team Volley along with Rosways. Along with Azazel, Surzech, Grafia and Invigiled were seeing the large group of. It was then Surzech and Grafia stepped forward and said, "Here is a box of Phoenix Tears. We weren't able to get one for everyone since they are scarce, but these should hopefully get you through till the end." Grafia then proceeded to hand Riaz a box of Phoenix Tears, which made both her and Sona nod thankfully, while Issei and Volley looked on boredly. Before Surzech could teleport them to Loki's general location, Invigiled stepped up to Issei and shyly said, "Take care." Issei smiled back before holding her hands and softly stroking them. He then said, "Don't worry, Heim, I will back by your side before you know it." He then proceeded to kiss her on the forehead before touching his forehead with hers. They broke away a few moments later, after which Invigiled stepped back. Both Issei and Surzech noted the looks of anger and jealousy emanating from the female members of the Gremory Peerage, while Volley just looked at the whole situation with amusement dancing in his eyes. Surzech then proceeded to teleport the group right at Loki's location. Once they arrived there, Riaz turned to furiously look at Issei as if demanding an explanation. Issei completely ignored her before moving to stand with Volley as the duo glanced towards the fluctuating green magical pyramid where Loki was temporarily sealed. "So this is it, huh? In guessing the two of us will take care of the god of mischief while the rest of the group can deal with his children. They can be frightening in their own right," Issei lightly commented. "Agreed," Volley said with a nod. "I shall be facing Lord Loki with you. As a representative of the Norse faction, it is my duty." Rosway sternly cut in. "Well, 3 is better than 2, specifically if we're about to face a god," Issei said with an easy shrug. "That is true, specifically when all 3 of us can pull our own weight. It shall be interesting," Volley said. Riaz and her peerage watched the scene with no little amount of surprise. The 3 in front of them were talking as if they had been friends for years. However, before she could question it, the magic around the pyramid collapsed and Loki floated outside with the custom sneer plastered on his face. "I should have expected Beelzebub to do something underhanded. He is a demon lord after all," Loki muttered to himself before he spotted the group and said. "So despite possessing large amounts of power themselves, the Maoists sit back like cowards and send out kids to their bidding. How shameful. I don't really think you should be talking about shame, Loki Dono. After all, you are the one throwing in the temper tantrum because his daddy didn't do what he wanted," Issei said with a smirk. The remark seemed to anger Loki, but he soon recovered himself and said, "No matter, I shall kill all of you right here right now and shall then plant the seeds for a true Ragnarok. Loki-sama, please stop this madness. I am sure Odin-sama will forgive you if surrender right now." Rosways pleaded and tried to reason with Loki. "Don't get me wrong, I am not doing this for me. I am here cleaning up my father's mess. Him allying with lower species is an insult to our great faction," Loki replied. "Well, there goes our attempt at diplomacy. Not that I was here for that anyway," Volley said with a shrug. "Well, since all of you are here, let the party begin. I hope you are ready to face my children," said Loki. With that, he clicked his fingers and Fenrir appeared out of a magic circle and growled at the group. Loki then pointed his arms to each of his sides and fired 2 purple-colored beams to either side of Fenrir. Both beams had then spread to become magic circles. From each magic circle came out 2 smaller wolves that distinctly looked like Loki. They were Loki's children, Hattie and Skull. Raising both of his hands once more, Loki brought them together before firing a beam right behind the trio of mystic wolves. The beam spread into a very big magic from which Midgard's armor, the Midgard serpent, had been summoned. "So a mid-tier god, 3 god-slaying wolves and a dragon king, what a nice party to intrude," Issei commented as he brought out a scallon and the boosted gear. "I dare say I agree with you," Volley said as he released the divine dividing and his magic. Rosway said nothing but started channeling her magic in preparation. "Geez, they are already Team 7. Riaz mumbled before turning to group and saying, "Sona, Akino, Tsubaki and I will be taking care of Midgard's armor. In that case, leave Hattie for me and the monkey Naya." Kuroka purred as Biku smirked. "Me and Lefay will take care of Fenrir. After all, we have just the tools to face him," Arthur said as Lefay cheerfully waved to the others in greeting. "That leaves the 5 of us with Skull," Kiba said as he pointed towards Zenovia, Irina, Kaneko, Saji and himself. And with that, the groups dispersed and started facing off against their chosen woes. "Let's get it done," Zenovia shouted before she fired a large wave of holy aura at Skull, which the wolf met head-on and was pushing it back until Irina called out, "Excalibur blessing, bless thy attack." The blessing increased the power of the holy aura and Skull was pushed back completely, making the mystic wolf crash into the mountain behind him. Saji took advantage of this as he ran forward and shouted absorption line. A pale purple whip left Saji's sacred gear before it wrapped itself around. The purple tendril then glowed black as it started absorbing the magical energy from Skull, making him howl in discomfort. Before Skull could break free of the tendril, he was suddenly hit by several large boulders that were thrown by Kaneko. "Bad doggy," Kaneko muttered stoically as the boulders crashed into Skull. Kiba then dashed forward and stabbed his sword into the ground before shouting sword birth. Several swords then spiked out of the ground directly under Skull. All 25 swords stabbed the wolf, making it howl in agony as its vitals were compromised. However, Skull was completely bought out of his misery when Irina and Zenobia combined the special abilities of their blades and cut down Skull's head with a crisscross motion. All five of them nodded in acceptance before turning to look at how the surrounding battles were taking place, ready to enter any of the outstanding battles in case they needed to help their allies. Hattie growled as he spotted the two yokai in front of him and gave a threatening bark as a warning. However, the warning was given little to no attention as both Kuroka and Biku were not intimidated in the least. Look, Kuroka, the mutt is trying to be cute," Biku said with a smirk. "He does look cute, but sadly I am not into mutts-naya," Kuroka said with a shrug and a dismissive wave of her hand. "Oh, and what type of guys are you generally into?" Biku asked with a flirtatious smile. "Whatever the type I'm into, the list definitely does not include monkeys," Kuroka said as she brushed his attempts at flirting away and focused back on Hattie, who was now pressed on the ground and was more than ready to pounce on the two high-tier yokai. A few moments later, Hattie pounced at the duo, who jumped away. Biku teached an annoyance before pointing his staff at Hattie and saying, "Nio boy, extend." His adamantine staff extended before it solidly hit Hattie on the skull. The hit caused the wolf to crash face first into the ground, causing him to momentarily be stuck. Kuroka took advantage of the mystic wolf's current plight before circling around from behind and firing concentrated bursts of both demonic magic and senjutsu. Both Kuroka and Biku, however, didn't let up on their assault and used the momentary downing of Hattie to their complete advantage. Both of them charged their strongest senjutsu bursts right on their fists and staff respectively before they hit Hattie on all of his vital spots simultaneously. The combined hits from two high-tier S-rank yokai completely frazzled Hattie's life force. Hattie's life force was now leaving him at a very fast rate, and very soon his life left his body. Both Kuroka and Biku looked at the dead wolf with disinterest before the duo started looking around. After all, several fights were still taking place. Fenrir reared back on his own hind legs before rushing towards Arthur and Lefay. Both of them were in constant movement as they dodged the gigantic wolf's paws and fangs. Arthur dodged each and every bite and swipe with an impassive look on his face. He wasn't going on the offensive as he knew that Fenrir was a real god-class being unlike his kids and hence could not be killed. He, however, was charging the magic in his Excalibur ruler so that when he did strike it would break down Loki's control on the mystic wolf and calm it down enough to insert a compulsion of control to join Volley's team. Lefay was floating a little distance away as she watched her brother keep Fenrir busy. She, however, was watching her brother intently, waiting for his subtle command to keep Fenrir restrained. She had come prepared as the purpose of the current mission was to get Fenrir. It was a few minutes later that Arthur was done charging and then subtly nodded his head towards his sister. Getting the signal, Lefay landed on the ground before she started chanting. "When all hope is lost, when all hope is gone, undo this lock, open up your heart, and send me forth on a moonlit walk. Release the restraint applied by the old. Unleash the hold sealed away in time. ADMANTI chains." As soon as Lefay finished, goldish black chains erupted from the ground and wrapped themselves around Fenrir before pulling him squat against the floor. His jaws and limbs were restrained and pulled together by the chains. Arthur then jumped in front of Fenrir before raising Excalibur ruler, before he felt for the center point of Loki's magical control on Fenrir. Locating it near the skull, he pushed his sword in its ethereal state right through the controlling magic, causing it to disrupt and scatter away. As soon as he had applied the compulsion into Fenrir's mind, Arthur removed the blade from the wolf's head. It was just in time, as well as Fenrir had started to shrink. He continued shrinking until he was at the size of a large husky. The small form of Fenrir looked at Lefay before he pranced over to her and barked at her, his tail wagging all the way. Lefay giggled as she petted the large dog while Arthur just shook his head at the absurdity of the whole thing. Only his sister could get a god-killing beast to act like a normal house dog. His eyes then hardened as he focused on the two dragon emperors and the Valkyrie from Valhalla facing off against the god of mischief Loki. The two kings and their queens then faced off against the Midgard serpent, who initiated the battle by firing a strong stream of fire towards the four young female devils. However, before the fire could actually reach them, Tsubaki flew in front of it before saying "Mirror Alice." As she said that, a mirror appeared right in front of her. As soon as the fire impacted the mirror, both the mirror and the fire disappeared. However, as soon as the mirror disappeared, Midgardsamr took double the brunt of force that his attack held and was slightly pushed back. That was Sona's sacred gear, Mirror Alice. It rebounds any attack thrown at it with twice as much force. Sona said to Rias, "That gear is nice and would certainly place my power-based peerage in a great disadvantage." Rias admitted, "Speaking of your peerage, what's going on with you and Hayato-kun?" Sona asked Rias as all four of them dodged another one of Midgardsamr's breath attacks. "I don't really know Sona. Ever since he returned from his training from Tannen, he has been distant and very aloof. In fact, he even turned away Asia when she asked to sleep with him," Rias said with a sigh as she created a magical shield in front of the four of them, protecting them from another bout of fire as the other three readied their own spells to attack. The other three did take advantage of the shield as Midgardsamr was momentarily left defenseless. Sona took this opportunity and created a giant serpent made of water that then tightly wrapped itself around Midgardsamr. Tsubaki then released a black mist that spread around Midgardsamr, though it did not seem to have any effect on the copy of the original Midgard serpent. Akino then released a large torrent of lightning, which was supplemented by Sona's water serpent. Tsubaki then clicked her fingers and the mist exploded, causing the copy of Midgard's armor to fall onto the floor with a thunk. Rias then flared her power once more and released large torrent of her power of destruction before she promptly disintegrated the whole body of the fake Dragon King. Well, that's that. Let's join the others and see how far have they gotten, Sona said as she removed her glasses before randomly cleaning them. A scallon, Issei called. D-Drake called out as the boosted gear and a scallon appeared in Issei's left hand. Albion called out and in a flash of white light volley was in his scale mail. Had the balance breaker right from the get-go, volley, Issei said as D-Drake was boosting Issei's power. I am surprised that you did not enter balance breaker. It seems you are not taking this fight as seriously as you should. Volley chimed back. Boys, break it up, we have a fight to fight. Rossways cut in as she started floating. Well, let's go then, Issei murmured as Rossways channeled her magic and created a large number of magic circles before firing long-range attacks. The sheer number of magic circles and the force behind the attacks made both Issei and Volley look on in awe. They knew she'd be powerful, but this was higher than the average expectation. Loki, however, was in a class of his own as he merely flicked away all of the attacks. However, Volley took advantage of the situation before launching himself at Loki and attacking him in close combat. Loki then dodged a haymaker from Volley before he sucker punched him and sent him flying into Rossways, making both of them crash into the floor. Loki then saw that his summoned creatures had been beaten. Teaching in annoyance, he released his magical energy and fired at all of the players at the same time. However, before his attack could hit the group, a giant golden shield erected itself around them. Issei calmly stepped forward with a scallon glowing with the shield's color. Issei then said, Heighten no Mitsurgi, secret art 10,000 deaths. Simultaneously to that call, D-Drake called out. Issei then gave his sword a mighty swing and at once the shield exploded outwards and it cancelled out Loki's magical assault. Everyone was surprised by the move Issei had pulled off. The only ones who were able to recognize the move were Loki and Arthur, who were looking nothing short of stunned. The Gremory and Citri peerages were openly gaping at the mixture of skill and power. They were brought out of their musings and self-induced shock when D-Drake roared in a flash of red light. Issei stood donned in his scale mail ready for battle. Well then, let's get started, shall we? Issei said as both he and Volley launched themselves at Loki, beginning the final confrontation of sorts. D-Drake called out, announcing the scale mail. Let's begin, shall we? Issei said, after which both Volley and Issei launched themselves at Loki, their balance breakers shining with pure power in their respective auras. Issei slashed a scallon at Loki, who dodged the slash but had to use his hands in order to block Volley's punch that was targeted to his midsection. He however didn't get much reprieve as Rossways used this exact moment to launch a strong magical attack at Loki from behind. The attack connected, making the god of mischief grunt a little. Loki's momentary lack of control was what Issei and Volley needed, as Volley connected a vicious haymaker to Loki's stomach before getting in a vicious hook and sending Loki flying towards Issei. As Loki was approaching Issei, D-Drake called out. A reddish-black aura formed itself around Issei before it concentrated itself on a scallon. As soon as the aura was in place, Issei swung his sword at Loki and said, Take this, dominating divine slash. A red wave of energy left a scallon and hit Loki head-on, sending him crashing into the ground with a loud explosion. All three fighters remained floating in the air, looking at the smoke expectantly. Soon a surge of wind blew the smoke away, revealing the smirking form of Loki looking at the trio. There was hardly any scratch on his person. If one looked closely, they would spot an amused glint in his eyes. How fun, the three of you actually managed to land an attack each on me. I guess I will have to slightly take this seriously, Loki said before he raised his power and disappeared in a burst of speed before he appeared in the center of Volley, Issei and Rossways before giving a small shout and sending a strong wave of magic outside, sending the trio crashing into the ground. Loki then said, I am tired of waiting, I shall bring Ragnarok upon this world on my own. As soon as he finished, he began to collect his magic and was about to release it into the interdimensional space. Loki-sama, you can't, that will disrupt the balance found in the interdimensional space. Rossways screamed at him, but Loki just laughed in response before releasing a very large torrent of magical energy into the dimensional space. D-Drake roared out, Volley, give me a hand here, Issei said before raising a scallon as D-Drake started chanting out, Boost, boost. You got it, Volley replied before his blue ethereal divine dividing wings flared up and readied for the attack. Rossways in response flew right behind the duo and cast her strongest shields in front of the two dragon emperors. It was then that magical attack from Loki rained down upon them, making Albion call out. Waves of absorbers lifted the wings and started working on the upcoming magical waves. However, the effect was minimal thanks to the colossal amount of magic that Loki had released. Issei, on the other, using the extra joist from his boost, spun a scallon in the shape of a circle before calling out Shield of Triumph. A goldish-red shield was then erected in front of the whole group that was being supplemented by Rossways' shields. However, even their combined efforts fell short as the attack soon broke through and hit the whole group, resulting in a very large explosion. When the smoke cleared, Issei was seen standing in front of the others, his sword in hand. His balance breaker was full of cracks and fell apart, leaving him in his base form. The upper part of his kimono was now in complete tatters and was torn, leaving one of his shoulders bare. Behind him were Team Volley, the Gremory Peerage and the Citri Peerage. All of them were mildly injured with nothing serious or life-threatening, as Issei and Volley had succeeded in weeding out the brunt of the attack. The rest of the group were pretty shocked to see Issei still standing despite taking in an attack like that. A little rumble from the side sought his attention. Turning towards it, he saw Volley, whose jacket and shirt were damaged beyond repair, come out of a rubble of rocks with an unconscious Rosswace in his hands. One thing that confused Issei was the look of anger in Volley's eyes. "She saved my life by coming in front of me." Volley answered Issei's unasked question. "I see. I guess it means we are going to have to go a level further if we are to beat him," Issei said as he cracked his neck to get rid of a few craps. "I never thought I'd say this, but for once I am going to ignore my personal vendetta and will fight for someone else," Volley said as he gently placed Rosswace next to the group. Issei then removed his damaged kimono and threw it away. Volley followed suit and removed his jacket and shirt and disposed of them. It was at this moment that both the boosted gear and the divine dividing shone in respective lights of red and white, which temporarily left the duo and the rest of the group blind. Even Loki found the sight interesting as he looked on from afar. When the light died down, Volley noticed that his divine dividing now had a total of 10 feathers instead of the previous 8, while Issei noticed that his gauntlet now grew up to this elbow and had more spikes and a second gem embedded in it. "What in world just happened?" Issei exclaimed in a shocked expression, with Volley looking at his gear with a similar curious expression. They got their answers when both D-Drag and Albion called out. "What the hell, Albion? I thought that the gear's powers were sealed up to the third liberation and we couldn't access the rest of the abilities." Volley shouted at his dragon. "I didn't tell you because only one person in the history of the sacred gears ever reached this level and the level beyond this one. I did not want you to chase over some pipe dream," Albion replied. Volley merely nodded in his head and didn't reply. It was obvious that he still was bummed out because of Albion's secrecy. "Who was this user?" Albion mentioned D-Drag. Issei asked out loud, garnering Volley's curiosity as well. "That would have been my strongest host, Belzert. He was the only one in history to unleash the true potential of the boosted gear without using Juggernaut Drive." "Now enough talk, take care of Loki. I can already sense the mystic lightning hammer approaching us," D-Drag said. Both Issei and Volley nodded before they stared at Loki and began powering up. Two very strong auras were beginning to be seen. A reddish black aura around Issei and a whitish blue aura around Volley. The auras then exploded outwards, making the two invisible as two calls were heard out. When the auras cleared, both the red and white scale mails were seen. However, they were slightly different. Issei's looked more streamlined and had several more jets and gems embedded into it, while Volley's had a larger number of wings and looked to be slightly more armored. The two of them were once again covered in their respective auras before they launched themselves at Loki, who smirked before releasing his purplish aura and meeting the two dragon emperors head-on. The three of them resembled three waves of red, white, and purple light clashing in the sky, making up some very pretty light shows. Loki then dashed back, creating some distance between himself and the two dragon emperors before firing a strong torrent of magical energy at the two. Volley was in front of Issei in a flash as Albion called out. A blue shield was seen in front of Volley and it sent the magical attack right back at Loki, who was surprised by the new development but didn't say anything and raised his own shield that stopped the attack. However, he was not expecting what happened next. As soon as Volley was done, D-Drag called out. In a flash of speed, Issei was in front of Loki's shield with his sword reared upwards and ready for a hit. D-Drag said just as Issei swung a scalon downward, making the shield shatter and his sword directly hitting Loki, sending him crashing into the floor. It was then Malnger had entered the area via a magical circle. Issei then turned to Volley and said, "Hold him for a few moments. I am the only one with enough power to use Malnger." Volley nodded and the two of them went their separate ways. Issei grabbed hold of Malnger and began flying towards where Volley was fighting Loki. D-Drag then began boosting. Boost, 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 boost. Issei grit his teeth as he felt the stress and pain build up in his body. Despite being a lot stronger, he was at his limit because of the long and taxing fight he had been fighting. Not to mention the attack he had taken head-on to protect the two peerages. "Volley, duck now," Issei called out, and Volley immediately dashed downwards, getting out of the way. Out of nowhere, a purple line appeared from Saji's hand and wrapped itself around Loki, keeping him from dodging. As soon as he was gone, D-Drag called out. This in turn caused Malnger to grow to a colossal size. With a loud war cry, Issei swung Malnger at the now bound Loki, making contact. "Curse you, Red Dragon Emperor, White Dragon Emperor. I will one day have my vengeance," Loki screamed as he was encircled in a magical circle before being transported away. Issei sighed in relief before he released Malnger and floated back to the ground. As soon as he touched the ground, his balance breaker disintegrated and he sent Saji and Volley thankful smiles. Saji smiled back in return, whereas Volley just smirked and nodded. Volley then turned to the rest of his team and said, "Team, let's move out." As soon as he was done, LeFay created a transport circle and all the members of Team Volley left with a downsized Fenrir following them. Issei sighed tiredly before sitting on his bum. It had been a very exhausting afternoon for him. A few moments later, Flonix's tears were distributed among the more injured people of the group, which included Issei, Roswace, Saji, Kiba. Once it was done, Riaz and Sona both created their own magical circles and took their servants back to their family estates. Once there, everyone was congratulated by Surzech for a job well done after he heard the official report before sending everyone to bed. Once in his room, Issei made sure to lock his door before taking a shower and laying on his bed. The last thought that crossed his mind was about a certain purple-haired beauty. Issei was calmly walking towards Surzech's office in order to discuss and sort out the final arrangements for his transfer to Invigold's peerage. However, he was soon interrupted by the one person he was hoping would continue to leave him alone. Issei, wait up, Riaz called out as she jogged up to Issei, who bit back a groan and put on his most neutral face in front of her. Riaz-sama, he intoned respectively. Riaz frowned at his words. She desperately wanted to know what was up with her pawn. Where are you going? I was going to meet with Surzech-sama relating my sacred gear upgrades. He lied easily. I see. Will it take long? I want to talk to you, she asked. It shouldn't take too long, Riaz-sama, Issei said. Very well. Please join me in the courtyard when you're done, Riaz said. Issei merely nodded before the two of them went their separate ways. Issei was soon in front of Surzech's office and knocked on the door. He was ushered in by Grafia, who informed him that Ivigold was waiting in the room as well. She smirked when she saw the young Red Dragon Emperor walk faster than he usually did as he entered the room. He was cut off as he entered when a purple-haired blur smashed into him, making him stumble slightly. Smiling warmly, he wrapped his hands around the girl in front of him and returned her hug. Surzech smiled at the scene and chose not to interrupt them, since he knew the last few days had been nothing more than stressful. Issei lightly broke the hug before lightly pushing her away. He then kissed her on the forehead, making the girl blush as he warmly smiled and said, I told you I'd come right back, didn't I, Heim? Yes, you did, Invigold answered and turned her face to the side as her blush grew as she remembered what had been promised. Surzech, however, then cleared his throat, effectively ending the moment. He then spoke in an official voice and said, Invigold, me and the other mouse, along with quite a few clan heads, have decided that Issei will be transferred into your peerage as your queen. Will you accept him? Ivigold visibly brightened at that and nodded, after which Surzech turned to Issei and in the same tone asked, You, Issei, do you want to be transferred from your current peerage into Invigold's? I do, Issei answered. Very well, then please follow me. I shall inform Riaz of this development and we can then have the ritual to complete your transfer, Surzech said as he motioned for Grafia to lead them out. As Surzech walked by, Issei whispered only loud enough for Surzech to hear that was a very well-made situation. The only reaction Surzech gave was a light upward twitch from his lips. Soon the group of four were in the courtyard where Riaz and the rest of the Gremory peerage awaited them. Oni-sama, what brings you over here? Oh, and Leviathan Dono, it's great to see you again, Riaz said politely, though if one looked on close you could see the slight irritation in her eyes as she saw Issei standing close to Invigold. Ah, Riaz, I just came to inform of you of the council's new decision. Since Invigold is new to our world and has yet to form her own peerage, the council and us Maoists have made a unanimous decision to transfer Issei into her peerage. Surzech spoke in an official capacity. What, why? Why not someone else? Riaz demanded in a loud voice. Two reasons actually. One, Issei is very strong and will be more than able to protect Invigold, and two, some of the clan heads, after looking at him and the young devil gathering, feel that your peerage is way too overpowered with him and want to balance it out. Surzech calmly explained. But that's not right. Issei is my beloved pawn, you know that, she said, desperately glancing at Issei, asking him, begging him to refute Surzech's statements. I am sorry, Riaz, but the decision has already been made, and Issei himself has agreed to the transfer. So please hurry it up, we shall talk more about the matter later, Surzech said in a stern voice as he released a tiny bit of his power, making Riaz and everyone else tense up a bit. Riaz reluctantly nodded before she pulled her magic and 8 pawn pieces left Issei's chest. Invigold then stepped forward and began the converting ritual, sending forward a queen piece that just before entering Issei mutated itself, making everyone except Issei and Invigold shocked. Well, it's done. Issei, you'll have to go with Invigold back to her territory. I shall have your things delivered there. Also, both of you will need to get ready for QO as well, since I have recently enrolled Invigold as a transfer student there, Surzech said, making Issei nod. Invigold then created her own transport circle, taking Issei and herself to the Leviathan territory that was under her jurisdiction. It was separate from the one that the old Maoist had and was quite close to the Citri and Phoenix and Baal lands. As soon as they entered one of the castle's living rooms, Issei grabbed Invigold by the hand and pulled her into his chest with both of his hands on her waist. Invigold blushed upon the contact but did not make any move to push him away. Say, Heim, do you remember the bet we made 2 days ago? Issei asked. Hi. She shyly stuttered out. Do you want me to kiss you? He asked softly. He had already decided that he wasn't going to pressurize Invigold into anything. She made him feel things that he didn't know that he could feel. He knew it in his heart that this was the girl for him and dearly hoped that he was the boy for her. Invigold muttered out a very low affirmative before she hid her face in his chest. Smiling warmly, Issei gently lifted up her chin with his fingers, his emerald green eyes bearing into her violet ones. Both of them seemingly got lost in their respective eyes as their faces gently moved towards each other. Then there it was, the moment their lips touched. Nothing could define the feelings the young couple felt. It felt as if something dull and monotonous was suddenly full of lifelike color. It felt as if sparks were suddenly flying around. After what felt like days, both of them broke away. Issei couldn't help but to keep a goofy grin of his face while Invigiled snuggled in deeper into his chest so as to hide her now tomato-like face. All was well. "Are your bags packed, hon?" Issei asked as he watched Invigiled leave her room and enter the lounge of the large Leviathan mansion. Invigiled blushed at the nickname before she pouted and said, "Moo, don't call me that, baka." Issei inwardly smirked before adopting an innocent expression and asking in a just as innocent voice, "Call you what, Heim?" "That," she said as she glared at Issei with a blush on her face. "What, Heim?" he said as a smirk threatened to make its way onto his face. "Moo, I hate you, baka," she said before turning away with a huff. She was about to walk away when a pair of strong arms wrapped themselves around her. "Come on now, Heim, don't be like that. I already told you that I call you that because you are my princess," he said as he pulled her against his chest. Invigiled blush grew upon the contact, but she didn't say anything. After a few minutes of silence, Issei said, "Are your bags ready, Heim?" Issei felt her nod and smiled to himself. He kissed her on the top of the head in a loving manner before taking her hand in his and said, "Well then, let us go home. According to Surzech, we will be staying back at the renovated Hayatu mansion." "Hi, by the way, what will we say if your parents ask us for an explanation?" Invigiled asked as she turned around, her head tilted to the side in a rather cute manner. This time it was Issei who blushed, and he looked away sheepishly before saying, "About that, Surzech said that I had to use the girlfriend card. The official story is that I met you at the camp and we both fell for each other and became boy and girlfriend." "Oh," was the only thing Invigiled could say as she looked down and buried her face in her hands to hide her blush. After she didn't answer, Issei said, "Heim, if you don't like that idea, we can change it," he said to her as he pushed her back and stared into her eyes. No, it's not that. I don't mind being introduced as your girlfriend," she said, her arms wildly flailing around. Issei chuckled lightly before he grabbed Het flailingly hands and softly rubbed them with his thumb. "So Heim, do you want to make it official? Will you go out with me?" he asked as his emerald orbs gazed right into her violet ones. Hi, Invigiled stuttered out as she furiously blushed. Issei, on the other hand, had a million-gigawatt smile on his face. He then raised Invigiled's face by the chin and lowered down his head. He placed a gentle and chaste kiss on her lips. Just like the last time, the kiss was a time-stilling. A few moments later they broke away and stared into each other's eyes. It only took a single look into each other's eyes and they were once again leaning into each other, their lips once again locked on each other. This time, however, Issei's hands wrapped themselves around Invigiled's waist while Invigiled snaked her arms around his neck. The kiss then grew into a makeout session that lasted for about 10 minutes, after which they broke away. Both of them had flushed faces and were slightly panting to get their breathing back under control. Issei leaned in and touched Invigiled's forehead with his and said, "That was amazing, Heim." Invigiled herself was not able to answer as her brain had been temporarily turned into mush. Issei grinned at the smile she wore on her face before he grabbed her hand and led her away for one final luggage check, after which they would be going back to the human world. Surzech was seen sitting in his chair. His face had a stony expression etched on it and it betrayed no emotion. On his side stood his wife, queen, maid, and most trusted companion, Grafia. She too had a stoic expression on her face that showed aloofness to anyone who didn't know her. In front of the duo was a very angry and partially teary-eyed Rias who wore all of her emotions onto her sleeve. "Why did you do it? You know how I feel about him. You could have easily given her someone else for her protection. Even if Issei asked to be transferred, you should have forced him to stay with me." Rias ranted at her older brother and sister-in-law. "And why would I do that? Rias, he knows that you let him die. You could have easily disposed of the fallen in your territory, or you could have warned Issei. Do you think he would have refused your help? As for why, we were lucky that he chose to stay with us instead of running. I gave him a favor from me and he cashed it when he asked to be sent to Invigiled's peerage. Being honest, I would do the same things again and again if it meant keeping someone like Issei from running away." Surzech answered calmly, his leader persona in full display. "But what about me? My happiness? I am sure if we talked we would be able to reach some common ground to build up from," Rias argued. "Listen, Rias, Issei being the Red Dragon Emperor is a very valuable figure for us devils. While it was great that you, even if the method you used was crude and dirty, managed to get him into our faction, your actions could have easily led to him leaving. Now, to ensure his stay, I had to make sure he stays happy. And currently his happiness and worth is much greater than your own. That's all. Now, before you go, I will order you not to involve Issei's parents with any manipulations. You are also not to face off with Invigiled during her stay in the human world. Believe me, I will know if you did any of the aforementioned things and you won't like the consequences. Now leave," he said in a tone that left no room for questions or negotiations. Rias gave him one last teary glare before she stood up and stomped out of the room. As she left, she slammed the door in her wake, showing of the huge amount of anger, despair, and disappointment she felt right now. As soon as the door was shut, Surzech's shoulders slouched down and he leaned back into his chair, releasing a tired sigh. It was really hard being a leader of a whole specie. He then rubbed his forehead to rid himself of the headache that was threatening to split his head in two. He then felt a pair of arms start massaging his shoulders, slowly working on and removing the tension that seemed to have collected up in his shoulders due to the recent events. He groaned in relief as his wife worked her hands. "Just like that," he muttered, making Grafia smirk. She just loved the way she had the strongest devil to have ever lived wrapped around her finger. Well, at least the worst has passed, now it's up to them to work out the kink and make things work, Grafia soothingly said, helping her husband relax. Surzec merely nodded his head, too tired to actually say anything. Riaz was stomping away, growling angrily. She couldn't believe what had just happened. Not only had she lost her love interest, but her brother wasn't doing anything about it. It seemed as if the whole world was against her at this point. She growled again, promising herself to find a way to get Issei back. She may have been forbidden from confronting Invigiled, but that didn't mean that she couldn't use her looks along with her peerage to win Issei back. Smirking devilishly, she went back to where the rest of her peerage was waiting, a plan already forming in her brain. Entering the lounge, she was greeted by the rest of her peerage. She immediately informed the rest of them of the conversation that she had with Surzec. Once she was done, silence had cascaded upon the group, which was soon broken when Aquino asked, "So what are we going to do about this, Riaz?" She finished with a sadistic smile as she imagined a few tortures that she could inflict on the ones who pushed Issei away. "We can't do anything. Oni-sama specifically forbid me from confronting Leviathan," she said with an annoyed tone of voice. "So what will we do, Bachu?" Asia asked curiously. "Well, I have two plans to get Issei back to us. One is to challenge him to a fight and beat him. The second is to seduce him," Riaz said. "I am not sure that seduction will work, Bachu. He hardly showed any reaction to us ever since he came back from training trip," Asia sadly noted, making everyone quiet down as they knew what she was saying was true. The silence was then broken by Kiba, who had a light smirk on his face. Turning to Riaz, he said, "Bachu, I may have a solution." "Well, let's hear it then, Kiba. What do you have in mind?" Riaz asked curiously, with the rest of the peerage looking at Kiba awaiting his answer. "I think me and Zenobia should challenge Issei to a sword battle. We can put in the condition that should he win, he will have to return to your peerage," Kiba said with a grin. "That could work. All right, everyone, let us return to the human world. After all, we have a match to prepare for," Riaz said as Aquino nodded before standing up and preparing a transportation circle to take them back to the Hayaudu residence. Issei and Invigiled had just transported from the Leviathan territory into the Hayaudu household. Issei had placed all of Invigiled's things in the room next to his. The said rooms were also interconnected with a door that allowed easier access to each of the residents if there was ever a case of emergency. After that was done, he grabbed her hand before lightly nodding towards her with eyes quirked upwards in a questioning gesture. Invigiled in response, however, breathed in a deep breath before she lightly nodded her head. She was now dressed up in a lilac-colored full-sleeve shirt that had flowers embroidered on it. Along with it, she wore a pair of blue jeans and sneakers. Her hair were made into a high pony. Despite the casual look, she looked absolutely ravishing, and Issei had a very hard time from keeping his eyes off her. Issei, on the other hand, was dressed in a black skin-tight full-sleeved shirt that showed of all of his muscles, and a pair of blue jeans. Taking her hand, he led her to where his parents were before calling out, "Ohayo to Senka-chan. Ah, Issei, you are back. Where are the rest of the girls, and who is this young lady with you?" Issei's father, Kenshi, asked. "I came back ahead of Prez, and the others is for her. To Senka-san, please meet my Kanojo Invigiled Senju. I met her in camp. We got close together and started dating a few days ago. I was surprised when she told me that she was transferring to Kyoto, so I offered her to stay here," Issei explained. "Oh, that's amazing. Even after your transformation, I still say she's way too pretty for you," Issei's mother, Kaname, said. "How is it that you do it? Despite being a pervert, you have so many girls coming after you. It's unfair," Kenshi ground out. "Also, dearie, I hope he hasn't been a pervert. We know that he is a real beast." "That is what he is," Kaname said with a nod. Issei's eyes began twitching horribly as he was quickly beginning to lose all of his composure, something he had not done ever since his training. "He didn't do anything perverted, did he?" Kenshi said again, and this time Issei lost it. "Will you stop talking about me as if I'm not here already? Cease, this is why I don't bring home any of my other friends," Issei said with a huff as he crossed his arms over his chest and turned away with a pout forming on his lips. Invigiled couldn't help but giggle at the dynamic shared by the family. She even blushed a bit seeing Issei pout. It was a very cute expression in her very humble opinion. The family of three turned to the giggling girl, who then composed herself and said, "It's nice to meet Mr. and Mrs. Hayaudu. Issei only had good things to say about you. And you do not have anything to worry about. He wasn't perverted in the least and always treated me with respect. He was the perfect gentleman. In fact, our first interaction was when he asked me for a dance at the opening party at the camp," Invigiled said, much to the shock of the older Hayaudus. It was soon after that Kaname grabbed Invigiled's hand and led her to the kitchen so that she could have a little girl talk with her son's girlfriend. Issei only watched the scene with a small smile, his mind conjuring an image of green-eyed and purple-haired kids running around. His father caught the look in his eyes before he grew slightly serious and asked, "I see you have that look in your eyes. Are you sure about it? It feels right too, San. I don't know what to do. Being with her makes me happy and feel at peace. So far we've just taken a chance to see how things go. But I really want to have a serious relationship with her, maybe even marry her one day," he answered back, not taking his eyes off Invigiled. Issei's father only nodded at that before patting him on the shoulder. It was his way of giving his blessings. Issei then turned to his father and asked, "Hey Dad, do we have any family heirlooms, like a sword for example?" Kenshi adopted a thoughtful look as he rubbed his chin with his fingers before his eyes lit up and he said, "Yes, there is one." "Why do you want it?" I developed an interest in kendo recently and want to practice it. So what better way than to get one of our family heirlooms for that purpose? Issei said with a shrug, making his father nod. That's a good reason as any. Let me get it for you. I do not have any idea about what it is called, but I was told it was quite the blade back in the day, Kenshi said as he walked towards and disappeared into the basement, leaving Issei alone in the room. As he waited for his father to return, Issei felt the presence of the Occult Research Club behind him. Slowly turning around, he raised his eyebrow at the group and said, "What can I help you with?" "How may I help you, Riaz and the orc?" Issei asked as he folded his hands on his chest and blankly looked at the group. Riaz was slightly unnerved when she saw the blank look on the normally expressive pervert. Shaking her head, she said, "I am here to issue a challenge," she said as she folded her arms under her chest, pushing it upwards. "And what challenge would that be?" Issei boredly asked as he leaned back on the wall. Riaz motioned Kiba and Zenobia forward and said, "A swordsman battle between you and my knights. If you win, you can stay in Invigild's peerage. If you lose, you come back to my peerage." "Now why would I entertain your request, Riaz? I am not your pawn anymore. Not to mention the fact, do you really think your knights hold even a candle to my talent and skills? I faced a god and managed to push him back twice using my blade work alone. What makes you think that your knights are even worth my time?" Issei asked as he eyed his nails boredly before looking back at the group. Kiba wore a slightly hurt look while Zenobia did not seem to be too bothered with the statement. However, before anyone could speak, Kenshi re-entered the room. It seemed as if he had a sword, more specifically a katana, in his hands. Even though the sword looked old and slightly rusty, Issei could sense an undercurrent of power emanating from within it. Not only that, there was a subtle whisper coming from the sword itself. It seemed to calling for Issei to wield it. Drake muttered inside of Issei's mind. "You know this sword?" Issei curiously asked back. "Yes, I do. It was the weapon that gave my second strongest host the most problems whenever she faced its wielder. He was like you, a direct descendant of Kenshin, but his skill in using this blade were much higher than Kenshin. His name was Urahara Kisuk." Drake answered. "Urahara Kisuk-ka," Issei answered before he zoned out of this conversation and paid attention to his surroundings once again. "Thanks for the fine two-sen," Issei said with a smile as he took the sword from Kenshi. The feeling of power grew once Issei took the sword into his own hands. It also vibrated a little as if tell that a conversation was due. Issei turned to the Occult Research Club members and smirked as his father walked away before saying, "Fine, I will entertain a spar. But it will take place in 1 week. I want to get used to my new sword until then." "Very well. We shall meet in the training grounds in 1 week," Riaz said before she turned away and led the members of the Occult Research Club away. Issei then turned around and entered the kitchen before saying, "Hey Ka-chan, I am taking Haim here to her room. She needs to see it after all." "All right then. It was a pleasure to meet you, Invigil-chan," Kaname said as she gave Invigil a small bow. "The pleasure was all mine, Kaname-sen," Invigil said as she returned the bow, after which she left with Issei and followed him to her room. "Here we are, Haim. This will be your room. Mine is directly next to it. So if you ever need anything, just knock. Also, if you ever need to go shopping for decorations, let me know. I will show you the prominent stores around here," Issei told her with a smile. "I'd like that." "And Issei," Invigil said as a small blush made its way onto her face. Her heart rate was speeding up at what she about to do, and she was inwardly praying that her courage stay with her until the end. "What is it, Haim?" Issei asked as he turned to her with his eyebrow raised. He didn't have to wait for an answer as two warm and soft lips touched his own. The kiss was small and chaste but carried a lot of weight to it. "Thanks for everything," Invigil said as she was looking away, a blush fixed on her face. Issei himself was frozen in his spot and wasn't able to react. It was the first time she had initiated a form of affection, and he kinda liked it. Invigil then went into her room, leaving a dazed Issei outside. He was brought out of his stupor when he heard the door closing shut. Softly smiling to himself, he went back inside his room. However, as soon as he sat on the bed, he felt something pull him into his mindscape. Entering, he saw that instead of the normal empty void-like plane, it now held a city. "I see you are finally here," a soft voice said from a distance. "Who are you?" Issei questioned as he turned to the voice. The only thing he could make out was the figure of a girl in the distance. "I have been trying to reach out to you ever since you were born. That kind of potential hasn't been seen ever since I was with Kenshin and then Kisuk," the soft feminine voice said. For some reason, Issei couldn't remember the name Drake had told him. It seemed to be evading him. "So what now?" "I am here. What do you wish for me to do?" asked Issei. "Tell me, Issei, what would you do if someone close to you, like your parents or your girlfriend Invigiled, were in danger?" The voice asked out. "I'd do anything in my power to ensure their survival," Issei answered back in a strong voice. "Even if it meant sacrificing your emotions?" The voice asked. "Yes," Issei answered without hesitation. "Even if it costs you your limbs and leaves you crippled?" The voice prompted once more. "Without question," Issei answered once again, not a shred of hesitation in his voice. "And what if you were forced to forfeit your life in the process?" The voice asked. "If it saves my precious person, then without a doubt," Issei answered. It was then that the figure disappeared and the city began to shine. "Very well, you have passed my test," the feminine voice said from behind Issei as two arms wrapped themselves around Issei's neck. He almost shuddered when he felt a warm breath touch his ear. "Call out my name, master." "My name is," the voice said as the city suddenly disappeared and Issei opened his eyes back in the real world with a name on his tongue. "Awaken Benayam." he called out as his sword shone out, and soon the rusty old blade was replaced by a shiny new one. It was a crimson-colored blade with a scarlet handle was in his hand. Issei could only look at it in awe. It was among the most magnificent things he had ever seen. Beautiful, Issei muttered looking at it. Oh, master, you are making me blush. The same voice said in his mind, albeit in a much more clearer version. Is that you, Benayem? Issei asked. That's her all right. Good job, partner. Now we have the perfect weapon to go along with our balance breaker. Dietrich said. The old lizard said it, master. Now then, since you have awakened me, it is time for training. I shall teach you all of Kisuk's techniques since you are already well versed in Kenshin's style. Benayem said. Yosh, let us begin. And Benayem, you aren't a weapon to me. Just like Dietrich, you are my partner and companion. Never think anything otherwise. Issei said. Thank you, master. Benayem softly replied. Now then, it's time for training. Issei said as he made his way to the mansion's training area, one which was personally made for him by Azazel. Glancing down at the sword, he knew that by the end of the week both Kiba and Zenobia would be no match for him. Issei was standing opposite of both Kiba and Zenobia in the mansion's training ground. Both of them had their swords out and were in the opening stances of both their sword styles. Issei, on the other hand, was lazily standing with Benayem and its base form loosely held in his arms. Aren't you going to get into stance, Issei-kun? Kiba asked in a rather stiff tone. He found Issei's complete lack of interest slightly disrespecting, and despite his normally calm personality, he wanted nothing more than to beat Issei into the ground and make him respect his skills. Mama, for opponents like you this stance is more than enough, he said with a lazy shrug of his shoulders, making Kiba bristle at the implied insult. However, before Kiba could reply, Zenobia spoke up and asked, aren't you going to use a scalon? Nah, this sword is better, Issei said as he lazily waved Benayem at the two Gremory knights. Zenobia narrowed her eyes at that and in a dangerous undertone asked, are you insulting a holy sword given to you by Lord Michael? Not in the least. A scalon is a great blade in its own right. I feel more at home with Benayem here, Issei said with a shrug. Enough talk. Let us begin. Kiba interjected before he launched himself at Issei using his top speed. He then slashed his sword at Issei, who leaned back, letting the sword move to the ground before he swung Benayem at Kiba, forcing the blonde to leave his sword and jump back. The entire move was fast-paced, and it made all the members of the Occult Research Club to look on in shock, considering the fact that Issei was not only kept up with Kiba's pace but also outdid him in technique. Looking at the shock-stricken faces that the orc members had, Issei couldn't help but chuckle before he said, now come along, I haven't got whole day. And please make it a little interesting for me. That was a juvenile move. Kiba looks towards Zenobia and both of them nod at each other before disappearing and appearing in front of Issei, attacking him. Issei, however, merely dodged all off Zenobia's heavy strikes while deflecting Kiba's fast-paced and precise strikes with his own. After a few minutes of the same routine, he grew tired of it before he whispered flash step, and disappeared in a red flash before appearing 10 meters away from the two swordsmen. If that's the limit, then I have to say I am rather let down. I know both of you can do much better, so get your game on, Issei said as he pointed Benayem towards his two opponents. You asked for it, Zenobia said before she collected holy magic into Durandal before firing it at Issei, while Kiba released torrents of fire and ice from his sword berth at Issei. Issei grinned before he pointed his sword at the incoming attack and said, awaken Benayem. As soon as he said that, the old-looking sword turned into the shiny regal red one. Issei then swiped it at the upcoming attack, completely disintegrating it. However, he was soon forced to jump when several holy demonic swords erupted from the ground. His opponents didn't let up as he was forced to block a swipe from Zenobia. However, he surprised her by pushing her back with strength alone. Using flash step to get away, he said, while I enjoyed this little excursion, it is time to end this little farce. Make BNIHIME, he said before swiping his sword at the duo, causing a large torrent of red-colored energy to fly towards them before hitting them head-on, causing a small explosion. Kiba, Zenobia, Rias shouted out in worry. When the smoke cleared out, the prone forms of both Kiba and Zenobia were found on the ground unconscious and bruised. Seeing that the fight was over, Issei said, sleep Benayem, causing his sword to go back to its sleep state. He was about to turn and leave when Rias shouted out, how could you do something like that? Weren't they your friends? And it was a fight, was it not? If you wanted them away from harm, you shouldn't have placed this challenge. Now then, since I won, I want you to uphold your end and to stay away from me. If you bother me again, I will be forced to tell Surzech about this. And for the record, no, they are not my friends. Kiba was involved in the events that led to my death, and I do not know Zenobia at all. Anyways, the fight in itself was boring. I was sure I'd have to use my balance breaker, but I guess it was a mixture of my wishful thinking and overestimating them. Now in the end, I don't even care, Issei said before he left the room, leaving the teary group that was the Occult Research Club. Issei, after the spar, was seen lazily walking towards his room. Upon entering it, he decided to take a shower to freshen up. When he was done, he walked out of his room refreshed and clean before he went up to Invigild's room and knocked on the door. A few minutes later, Invigild opened the door and was now in a rather casual dress, a simple t-shirt and a pair of trousers. Even in the simple home where she looked simply divine. Invigild blushed when she saw Issei looking at her before she softly spoke on, oh Issei, is there something you want? This time it was Issei who blushed a bit before he gave an embarrassed chuckle as he scratched the back of his head. Once he got control over his emotions again, he warmly smiled at Invigiled, causing the girl's cheeks to redden a bit more, before asking, Nihime, I want to ask you a very important question. What question would that be? She asked as he tilted her head to the side, and Issei had to consciously restrain himself from outright making out with her right then and there. Would you like to go on a date with me? He asked with a small blush adorning his cheeks. A date, she thought before her face lit up in a blush that was accompanied by a small but happy smile. Hi, I would like that, she answered in a low voice before looking at the ground. Great, I will pick you up tomorrow at 2 p.m. Is that acceptable? Issei asked with a big and happy smile. His smile was contagious, and Invigiled found her lips twitching upwards into a smile of her own. She then nodded her approval for the time before she retreated back into her room, leaving a happy Issei outside, who was already busy in making his plans for the date. Issei was excited. Okay, that was an understatement. Excitement alone was not enough to describe the way he was feeling right now. His emotions were currently entangled in what was an internal warfare. Elation, excitement, happiness, love danced around with worry, hesitation, sadness, and fear, creating a rather impressive yet bewildering myriad of emotions. He felt the first half because of the hope he felt for his relationship with Invigiled, while the second and traitorous part was due to the many betrayals he had suffered in his previous relationships. His emotional warfare finally reached the point where Drake decided to cut in and say, "But what if everything happens again and I end up in an even bigger mess?" Issei asked back. Drake calmly replied, knowing that his host wasn't likely to have any logical thoughts at this moment. Huh, what do you mean, Drake? Issei asked confusedly. What I meant to say was 1. You are not the weak human you were the first time around and are now an individual who faced a god and lived to tell the tale. 2. You aren't being influenced by your perverted hormones like last time and are actually following your instincts. These facts alone should calm you down. You don't need to worry though, even if something goes wrong you'll be able to come out on top. You are my partner after all, Drake said with a little boasting. The old lizard is right, master. The purple-haired girl does not have any untoward intentions towards you. If she did I would felt it. Binayam supplemented. Thanks you guys, I think I should get ready then, Issei said, feeling much more confident as he stood up and made way to his closet. Oh my Mao, I have a date with Issei. A date? But I have never been on a date before. What if I screw it up? He has always been so nice to me. What do I do? Invigiled chanted in her mind, almost having a panic attack. Suddenly she felt a light bulb light up in her head and ran towards her cabinet before she pulled out an enchanted mirror. Connect me to Mom. The surface of the mirror soon became cloudy until the face of a red-eyed, purple-haired older version of Invigiled appeared on the other side. Invigiled, dear, is that you? Yeah, Mom, it's me. I know we haven't talked much due to our new roles and all, but I really need a little advice from you. She all but pleaded to her mother, who looked at her for a few moments before a smile lit up on her face as she asked, So who's the lucky guy? What do you mean? Invigiled stuttered out as she felt her cheeks heaten up. Tut tut, young lady. I can see it all in your eyes. Who is the young man who has ensnared my little Invigiled's heart? Alina Leviathan Nee Goldstone said with a small smile on her face. She wasn't going to dissuade her daughter from going on this date, but she would be having words with the said boy. After all, she had to make sure it wasn't a horn dog who was just looking to use her little Invigiled. He's the Red Dragon Emperor and my new queen piece, Invigiled answered as she felt her cheeks start to redden. Oh, and how did you meet him and when did he become your queen? As far as I know, he was the pawn of the Gremory family, Alina asked curiously with a raised eyebrow. Well, you see, Invigiled said as she launched into an explanation on how she had met Issei, telling her about her formal introduction into the society, getting a less than warm welcome, Issei asking her for a dance, making the others turn their lustful gazes away from her, then protecting her when Loki attacked, him kissing her on the forehead and promising her to come back, how Cersei transferred him into her peerage, how he introduced her to his parents before asking her on a date. He seems to be a nice and well-mannered boy, Alina said after a few moments of silence. He is, Invigiled said in a simple voice. Very well, then let me get you ready, Alina said as she helped Invigiled browse through several dresses as she prepared herself for the date. Issei nervously stood in front of Invigiled's bedroom as he contemplated on how to proceed. He was dressed in a black shirt and a blue jeans and was adorning a brown jacket on top of it all. Taking in a deep breath and ignoring his tenant's sniggers, he knocked on her door and waited. A few moments later the door was open and Issei suddenly found himself lost for breath. There, standing in front of him in a silver kimono, was Invigiled. Her long purple hair were made into an elegant bun that was held together by a small red ribbon. There was also a slight trace of makeup on her face that overall exuded her beauty. He was brought out of his stupor when Invigiled shyly spoke and said, So how do I look? You look beautiful, breathtakingly so. I was momentarily lost for words, Issei softly said as he wrapped one of his arms around her waist and pulled her closer into him. Invigiled flushed at his words and the sudden closeness they now shared. After a few minutes of silently staring at each other, Issei removed his hand from her waist before he grabbed one of her hands and said, Well, let us get going. I hope you like what I have planned for us. Saying that, the duo left the house and first made way to the local cinema. Once inside, he led her towards the counter and let her choose the movie she wanted to watch. He was surprised when she had chosen the latest inundation of Godzilla that had come in the form of the King of Monsters. He however nonetheless was happy with her choice since he was a massive fan of the series and was even more pleased to find that she too was a keen follower of said series. The movie lasted for a couple of hours, after which Issei led her to a restaurant where they enjoyed a rather simple lunch with various food items that Invigilde had never seen before given her Western upbringing. She had only wore the kimono on the suggestion of her mother, who argued that Issei would have liked it due to his Japanese upbringing. And liked it he did. The whole of the lunch was spent with Issei softly smiling at Invigilde as she tried the various foodsteps. The childlike innocence and wonder on her face made her even more beautiful, and he found it hard to look away from her. If anything, his belief in his partner's reassurances were shining even brighter at her sight. He was brought out of musings when Invigilde said, "Issei, is something wrong? You have been dazing us for a while now and we need to leave." Coughing a little to hide his embarrassment, Issei nodded before standing up and leaving. By then it was already evening and they were now ready for the final part of the date, which happened to be a festival. Issei grabbed Invigilde's hand and led her around the festival, playing several games and winning certain awards. He even showed her some of the small rituals that couples perform to ensure the safety of their relationships. The whole event continued until it was midnight when Issei led her to the highest point on the festival ground, one that would give them the best view of the fireworks that were due to appear in a few minutes. By then Invigilde was tired and was letting Issei lead her around. When they stopped, she turned to Issei and said, "Thank you for today, Issei. I loved it. Anything for you, my Heim. Thank you for coming with me," he replied as he wrapped both of his arms around her slender waist and pulled her closer to him. He then leaned down and captured her lips just as the fireworks went off. The kiss was a soft one that conveyed his feelings for her. He was positively surprised to find her asleep when he broke the kiss. Shaking his head in a fond amusement, he lifted her up in a princess carry before carrying her back home. He could have just teleported back home, but for some reason he wanted to take the longer route back. Looking down at Invigilde's sleeping form, he knew that she was all the reason he needed to walk back instead of teleporting. It had been several days since the date, and life seemed to have fell into a steady step, something Issei couldn't be more happy about. His days usually went about school, homework with his Heim, training with his Heim, after which was another sessions of random time spending with his Heim. Both of them had grown closer apart, and now Invigilde herself occasionally initiated the physical aspect of their relationship. However, she still retained a rather shy exterior, something that made Issei love her even more than normal. However, today was not a normal day. Invigilde's mother had recently found some respite with her duties for the Alliance and had used the time given to spend it with her daughter, which is why Invigilde was currently with her mother while Issei was training alone. Currently he was practicing using Benayam and his balance breaker at the same time, along with practicing a few spells that Benayam had been teaching him. The spells belonged to a lost magical art called Kaido and was divided into two main categories: the ways of destruction Hado and the ways of binding Bakudo. With a roar, Issei sent an arc of energy into the wall, completely destroying it, after which he released his balance breaker form and sent Benayam back to her base mode before kneeling on the ground. That was several minutes longer than the last time. "Let's keep up. Your new fighting style is coming along nicely, and by the time it will be complete it will be among the most fearsome ones out there," Diedrage proudly said. "You should be proud of your advancements, master. Combining your own power-based style with Kenshin's close-range technical style and Urahara's mid-range magical one together is a near impossible task, but I know if there's anyone who can do it, it's you," Benayam said through her mental link. "Thanks, you too. I think that is enough for the day," Issei mentally thought. He was brought out of his musings when the sound of clapping reached his ears. Turning around, he saw Surzech standing there with an amused expression on his face. "Ah, Surzech-sama, how may I serve you?" Issei said as he offered Surzech a wobbly bow. "None of that now, Aiz-kun. I am here in the capacity of an older brother rather than the leader of an entire race," Surzech jovially replied with a wave of his hand. "So how can I help you, Nai-sama?" Issei asked with a grin as he straightened up. "I just wanted to get away from the office for a while. It has been quite hectic recently due to the raiding game tournament and the Chaos Brigade. The elders think that the tournament is perfectly safe and does not need any additional security," Surzech carefully said with a shrug, hoping that Issei would find the hints he was leaving behind. Fortunately for him, after honing his skills in the blade arts and tutoring with both Benayam and Diedrage along with his transformation to a dragon, Issei had become a rather intelligent person. Hence why he slowly nodded and with equal care said him that is rather careless of them. If the Chaos Brigade had an insider with them, they could attack one of these games and cause considerable damage. Surzech's eyes suddenly twinkled when he saw that Issei had caught on. "I told them that, but they did not listen. I am particularly afraid for tomorrow's game. It is between the siblings of two of the Super Devils, specifically when no one can be trusted enough. Well, then I guess there can be no action taken. Nai-sama, I wondering if you could give me a small suggestion on a certain thought I had," Issei said with a smirk. "Oh, and what idea did you need the suggestion about?" Surzech asked, the twinkle in his eyes growing. "I was thinking of going to all these games. As a good queen, I need to help my king prepare for her future games. And you know what they say, good information is half victory," Issei said, a wide grin now etched on his face. The twinkle in Surzech's eyes was almost blinding as he said, "That is a wonderful idea, Aiz-kun. I see you are taking your duty as the queen of the Leviathan very seriously. I hope you'll join me in the guest area. There will be several other leaders there as well. Sweet. Is there anything else? Issei asked curiously. Just one. Where is Invigiled? I thought she'd have been here with you. Surzech replied with a questioning look on his face. Oh, that. You know how Azazel-sensei recently sent her mother on small vacation, right? So she went over to spend a few days with her mother before both of them need to start on their work again. Issei said with a shrug. That does make sense. Oh well, I look forward to seeing you at the rating game tomorrow. You can come with Azazel. He will come pick you an hour before the game begins. Surzech said, to which Issei just nodded in response. They shook hands, after which Surzech turned and left the room, returning to his office. As soon as he left, the smile on Issei's face was gone and a bloodthirsty expression was now on his face. It seems we will have a test subjects to test our new powers. Ah yes, master, you will finally be able to use me in a real battle situation. I can't wait to taste blood again. It has been so many years since my steel has tasted an opponent's blood. Benayem purred maliciously. Not to mention we will be able to send a proper statement to the underworld. Your previous image of a super pervert is not one that I like. Drake added. Don't worry, a new image of the Dragon of Domination will soon be seen. Issei confidently said as a reddish-black aura surrounded him, causing the air around him to become heavier. He was brought out of his musings when a communication circle appeared near his ear. Cutting of his aura, he raised an eyebrow at the circle before accepting the call. Hi Issei. Invigiled chirped from the other side. Issei noticed that she seemed to be in much better spirits when she was with her mother. Her voice made him forget about the inevitable battle that he was going to participate tomorrow. He grinned at the effect she had on him. Oh hey, Ohime-chan. How are you doing? Is your mother well? When are you coming back? Issei asked in quick succession. I am fine. Mom is okay, just tired. And I'll be back when the new term kicks in. Anyway, that isn't why I called you. Mom asked me to invite you over for dinner tomorrow. Think you can make it? She asked wonderingly. I am really sorry, Ohime-chan. Issei said, and he meant it. But I have some really important work to do tomorrow. How about I come around this weekend? Issei asked back. Oh, that works then. What are you busy in then? She asked conversationally. I have to go watch the rating game with Azazel-sensei tomorrow. He needed a little more data on the boosted gear and he decided to take me to the game. Something about killing several birds with one stone. Issei nonchalantly said. Oh, I see. Then I guess I'll be seeing you at the weekend. Take care, eyes. She cheerfully said. Ohime-chan. Bye, Issei said before he cut the connection and went to take a shower. Issei was sitting along with Odin, Azazel, and a few other high-profile members of the Alliance as they waited for the rating game to begin. Currently he was sitting at the table idly sipping in his drink as Odin and Azazel were busy regaling on Odin's visit to one of the strip clubs owned by the Fallen Angels. From the vivid descriptions that Odin put forward, Issei felt that his old perverted self would have died for a chance to visit the establishment, but alas, his new version wasn't all that interested. It was then Issei noticed that Riaz and her peerage had been transported into the arena for their game. It's showtime, he thought as he silently started to power up. Are we in the right place? There doesn't seem to be any sign that a rating game is going to take place here. Akino noted confusedly as the peerage eyed the area surrounding them. You are right. Something is definitely wrong here, Riaz said as a frown made its way to her face. However, before she could receive a plausible explanation, Asia suddenly screamed in agony. Turning around quickly, the whole peerage saw that she was currently being held upside down in a magical cage that had been casted by Deodra Astaroth. Deodra, what is the meaning of this? Let my bishop go, Riaz shouted furiously at the evilly smiling fellow young devil. You should have traded Asia with me when I gave you the chance. Now all of you will die at the hands of the original Maoists, Deodra said with a mad laugh as an army of the old Mao faction appeared from a large number of magic circles. If you want your precious bishop, then come to that castle over there in 1 hour. I will play a game for her. That is if you successfully make it there, Deodra said as he turned around and disappeared in a green magic circle. As soon as he disappeared, the old Mao faction army charged, keen on killing the sister of the current Lord Lucifer. Riaz and her peerage on the other hand just readied themselves, hoping beyond hope to just pull of a miracle. Issei subtly activated Benayem and unleashed the boosted gear. Nodding towards Odin and Azazel, he took to the air and waited for the opportune moment to enter the fray. He soon found said moment when the traitor Astoreth had disappeared in a magic circle and the old Mao faction charged towards his former friends. Charging his power, causing his blade and eyes to shine up, he shouted in a booming voice, Nick Benihime. Riaz and her peerage were surprised to see a crimson-colored arc-like magic attack come out of the sky, before it cut down a few surprised soldiers of the opposing army. Looking up, they saw a figure encased in reddish-black mist. The figure had dragon-like wings, green glowing eyes along with a scarlet glinting blade simmering with barely restrained bloodlust. Looking directly at Riaz, Issei said, Go rescue your bishop, I will handle things here. Riaz didn't need telling twice and promptly turned around and ran toward the aforementioned castle, her peerage hot on her heels. Once they were gone, Issei turned to the remainder of the old Mao faction's army and with an evil said, I am going to give one chance to pack your bags and run. Don't look back because you won't see anything. Want to know why? One of the braver members of the army nodded in response, making Issei's grin turn feral as he said, because you will be dead. As soon as he finished, he unleashed all of his killing intent in the area. This, coupled with Benayem's bloodlust, caused nearly every soldier in front of him, What followed was a few seconds of tense silence, after which the whole army charged at him with a loud battle cry. Grinning, Issei slashed Benaim with a shout of "Nake Benaim," releasing several scarlet arcs that took down a large number of soldiers. The soldiers, however, weren't deterred by this and were soon in front of Issei. With a war cry, one of the soldiers pounced at Issei, only to be cut in half. Not waiting around, Issei said "Shunpo." In a flash, he was in the middle of the surprise chargers and began cutting them down. Some of the soldiers who remained behind all created magic circles before firing large torrents of magic at Issei. Instead of dodging it, Issei raised Benaim in a defensive maneuver and said "Shield Benaim." A red shield erected itself in front of Issei. It stood firm, but Issei was pushed back as the attack continued on its path. When it stopped, Issei dropped the shield before pointing his sword at his attackers and saying "Kirasake Benaim." Immediately, high-speed, broken glass-shaped shards of crimson magical energy left his sword and slashed the low-class devils in front of him to many pieces. From behind him, a couple of devils sneaked up in attempts to end him, only for him to disappear in a shunpo before reappearing behind them and cutting them down. He then looked at the now relatively thinned army of the old Mao faction. He idly noted that the wings Azazel and Odin had taken were even more thinned. While it had to be expected, both of them were pretty high up in the food chain. Getting his attention back to the remainders of his section of the army, he raised a hand and began to chant. "O Lord, mask of blood and flesh, all creation, flutter wings, you who bears the name of man, inferno and pandemonium, the sea barrier surges, march on to the south. SHKKHO. He finished, releasing a strong crimson ball of magical energy at the remaining members of the army. The low-class devils raised their shields to block the attack, but were not successful as the attack blasted through their shield and rammed into them, causing an explosion to take place. When the smoke cleared, the only thing left were embers of ashes of the remains of the soldiers that used to be in front of him. As he finished, Azazel flew up to him. After taking in his bloody appearance along with the ashes of his opponents, Azazel let out a whistle and said, "That is quiet, a lot of blood." Issei in response turned to him and let out an unrepentant shrug and said, "None of it was mine. Damn, you're a scary kid. And to think you used to be a useless pervert just a few months ago," Azazel said as he chortled at the disgruntled look Issei wore as he remembered when he was just another pervert. "Well, I am thankful to Vali, Drake, Tananasan and Benaim for their help. Otherwise I would still be a useless pervert," Issei said with a shrug. "I can understand how Drake, Tannen and your sword spirit might have helped. What did Vali do?" Azazel asked curiously. "Open my eyes," Issei simply replied before silence fell in between the two. A few moments later, Issei said, "I'm going to deal with the traitor." "What are you going to do?" He finished with a curious expression. "I'm going to go to Surzech and help him wind everything up," Azazel answered with a shrug. Issei then nodded before he flew off towards the castle that was currently holding a raiding game between Deodra and Rias. "Let Asia go, Deodra," Rias shouted as she and her peerage entered the throne room where Deodra was sitting, with Asia crucified on a structure behind him. Now, my dear Rias, do you really think you can beat me? Not only am I much smarter than you, but after the blessing from Ophis I am much stronger than you. There is nothing that you can do to save yourself and your peerage. You will all die today," Deodra said as he opened his eyes, his hazel eyes glinting maniacally. "Now that is a fine speech," a voice said, and all of the inhabitants of the room turned to the source, only to find Issei there casually leaning against the window pane with Benaim on his lap. Deodra narrowed his eyes at Issei. He hadn't sensed his presence. "How did you get in here, you filthy half-breed? Through the window, and to think you call yourself smart. Do you even have a brain? And here I thought you were different given how intelligent Beelzebub Sama is," Issei sarcastically said from his position. "You bastard, die," Deodra shouted as he released a large amount of magic towards Issei, causing a small explosion to occur. Take that, you bastard, that's the power of the ones blessed by Ophis," Deodra said with maniacal laugh. "It's not that impressive," Issei said from behind of Deodra, causing every devil in the room to widen their eyes in surprise. Touching his back before Deodra could react, Issei said, "Hado #1 show." Immediately Deodra was blasted away, causing him to crash into a wall before being buried under its debris. He then turned to the structure holding Asia and then stabbed Benaim into it before saying, "Kirasake Benaim." The sword then began releasing small shards of magic into the structure at the very fast speed, slowly but surely overpowering it. Deodra by now had managed to come out of the debris and had, after looking at what Issei was doing, begun to laugh as he shouted, "It doesn't matter what you try, that crucifix was made by the high-tier Longinus Annihilation Maker. There is no way a second-class weapon like yours will even scratch it, let alone destroy it." Issei spared him a bored glance before looking back the structure and saying, "If you think that, then you are even stupider than you look." As he said that, the structure holding Asia collapsed, causing the blonde-haired nun to go onto her knees panting. Grabbing Benaim, he turned to a now fear-stricken Deodra and stared at him. For a few moments Issei's face held a blank look, but then a bloodthirsty smile broke out on his face as both he and Benaim began emitting a strong aura of killing intent and bloodlust. The effect was enhanced as a reddish-black aura surrounded him while his emerald eyes began glowing. "Don't see come," was all Deodra was able to stutter out, under Issei's bloodlust, when Issei disappeared before reappearing in front of Deodra and swinging Benaim at him. Deodra screamed in pain as he felt the cut, but Issei wasn't done. disappearing in speeds that even Kiba with his night abilities would have been hard-pressed to match. Issei constantly moved, cutting into Deodora repeatedly all around his body. Finally, Issei stopped facing away from Deodora as he slashed his sword to clean it of the blood as he whispered the name of the move Heighten no Mitsurugi, 1000 Kato no Yurishi. As soon as he finished, Deodora collapsed on the floor, his whole body bleeding heavily, painting the floor red. Rias and her peerage watched with a mixture of fear and awe as Issei had just killed a high-class devil, brother of a Mao, as if it were nothing. Issei, do you know what you have just done? You just killed the heir to one of the 72 pillars. Do you even know what that entails for you? Rias asked cautiously, not knowing how to deal with this new and bloodthirsty Red Dragon Emperor. Oh, don't worry, he's not dead. I didn't cut any of his vital organs, and his devil healing will ensure that he survives. For all intents and purposes, he is only unconscious. Issei answered with a casual shrug, all of his previous bloodlust gone. However, Rias could answer. Issei's senses picked up something else, and his head snapped towards the air above the throne. Rias, while confused at his action. Sure enough, a green magic circle appeared and a handsome, regally dressed man appeared from within. Issei could easily tell that this man was several leagues ahead of Deodora. Oh, and who might you be? Issei asked as he tilted his head to the right. I am one of the leaders of the old Mao faction, the heir to the original Mao Beelzebub and your executioner for today, Shalba Beelzebub. Shalba arrogantly announced. How interesting. Do it, Diedrag, Issei said with a drawl. Diedrag roared out, and in a flash of red light Issei was now seen clad in his scale mail. With power and bloodlust rolling of him in spades, Issei stretched his wings and flew up to Shalba, openly challenging him. Your army and accomplice were rather weak opponents. I hope you'll be enough to sate Benayem's bloodlust, Issei said as he pointed the glowing scarlet blade towards the old Mao. Shalba bristled at the disrespect and snarled out, I'll teach you your place, you filthy dragon. Saying that, he raised his hand toward Issei, causing a golden pillar to appear around Issei. Issei immediately retaliated, not giving Shalba a chance to complete the spell as Diedrag called out. Boost, 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 boost. Explosion. Using the new energy, Issei created a large fireball and shot it at Shalba, who had to cut his spell in order to dodge the fireball. He wasn't given much respite as Issei, using a flash step, was soon in front of Shalba and said Heighten no Mitsurugi, Jayaku Zanshu. He finished swinging Benayem from down to up with a reverse grip. Since it was the blunt part of the blade in question, Shalba was sent flying through the wall and outside. The hit was strong enough to break a few bones, something that Shalba noticed with a slight grimace. He then turned his attention back to Issei, who was floating in front of him. Shalba knew that he couldn't gloat and Issei could harm him given the nature of his abilities. While he was magically at least a couple of levels higher than Issei, the versatility of Issei's abilities and the effectiveness of his tools more than made up for that gap. Chanceling in his magical energy, Shalba realized large amounts of magic that soon took shape of Holocaust. He then directed the Holocaust towards Issei, with the bugs then surrounding him in an orb-like shape. Issei immediately retaliated by setting himself on fire, hence thereby burning the insects. He however did not have time to react as Shalba was in front of him and had in a point-blank range fired a strong demonic magical strike at Issei, sending him crashing into the floor. He then fired 5 quick orbs of magic at Issei, causing an explosion to occur. However, he did not have any time to check if his attack was successful as a white armored hand impaled him from behind. Coughing out blood, Shalba coughed and turned out only to see the smirking face of Volley. Volley, Lucifer, why did you betray your fellow old Maoist? Shalba asked with a pained cough. There was nothing personal, but the only one allowed to kill my rival is me, he said as he swiped his hand, causing Shalba to fly off into the distance. Shalba wasn't given a chance to land and recover as Issei sped out of the smoke and cut Shalba in half with a clean cut. Turning to Volley, Issei removed his helmet magically and with a deadpan said, You do know that I had everything under control, right? I do, but sitting out of the action isn't something I like to do, Volley answered with a smirk. Anyways, why are you here, Volley? And more to the fact, how did you get here without anyone sensing you? Issei asked with a sigh and a small glare. That was because I had off-eyes bring me here, Volley said as he pointed upwards. Following his finger, Issei saw a small black-haired girl floating in the air. And why did you get her to bring you here? Issei asked as he sweated lightly. Being in the presence of the strongest being in the world wasn't something that he liked. Because I wanted to see him, Volley said as he looked behind of Issei. Following in Volley's line of sight, Issei soon found himself looking at a sight that took his breath away. Up in the sky was the biggest European dragon he had ever seen. It was a mage-stick red celestial dragon whose defining feature was definitely its 4 gigantic wings and a horn on its snout. Great Red, he is my goal, the one I want to beat and surpass. My dream is to beat him and officially take the title of the White Dragon God of Supremacy, Volley said as he broke Issei out of his stupor. That's a mighty goal, Issei replied back with a smile. It is because of that I must make a point clear. We will have our destined battle in the future, but until then there are a lot of other people I want to fight, so our rivalry won't be my primary concern, Volley said. Don't worry about it, there are several things I want to achieve as well. Until then I'll leave you to prepare for your eventual loss by my hand, Issei said with a smirk. We'll see about that one we. Anyways, later Hayaudu, Volley said as he turned around and vanished in a silver magic circle. One day, Great Red, I shall defeat you and take my silence back, Off-Eyes muttered before she disappeared in a wisp of black smoke. Once everything was done, Issei sighed and deactivated both his balance breaker and the boosted gear. Floating down to the ground, he scratched his head and shot a little grimace towards all the blood on his person. He was brought out of his musings when Azazel and Surzech both landed next to him with fairly relaxed looks. "So I guess everything went according to plan, huh?" Issei asked. "It went better than the actual plan. As of now, the Chaos Brigade are down by 2 of their factions." Azazel answered lazily. "2 factions? How, what do you mean?" Issei asked back in a slightly confused tone. "It's simple really. With the fall of Cockabeel, we were able to beat the fallen angel contingent of the Chaos Brigade, and after today's failed invasion, the old Mao faction is dead. All 3 of their leaders have been slain, and it's only a matter of time before our armies ransack the remaining of their forces." Surzech answered with a smile. "I see, that makes sense, but we only got the Leviathan and Beelzebub, aren't there 2 more houses?" Issei asked curiously. "I got Cursory Asmodeus today. You managed to defeat Shalba Beelzebub while Azazel killed Kataria Leviathan 2 months ago. The Lucifer clan is currently under Rizvam Lucifer, but he hasn't been active in centuries, so we currently face no threat from them," Surzech said, though there was a small frown on his face at the mention of Rizvam Lucifer. "Is this Rizvam character related to Vali in any way?" Issei asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. At that question, both Surzech and Azazel had looks of disgruntlement and sorrow. Rizvam is Vali's grandfather, and all in all not a very good person. Vali had a very difficult childhood due to Rizvam, and that is putting it as mildly as spreading chocolate over your bread," Azazel said with a frown. "Issei-kun, I want you to promise me that you will run as fast as you can if you ever encounter Rizvam, regardless of the situation. He is not someone to take lightly," Surzech said seriously, his eyes no longer twinkling. "Let's just say that he makes the beliefs of humans regarding devils look sane, and he has a massive amount of magical energy and power. In fact, he is just behind me in terms of power and just slightly ahead of Ajuka. He, like us, is a super devil, and it's only my and Ajuka's presence that keeps him at bay," Surzech said with a grim smile. He certainly would not be seeking out this Rizvam character anytime soon. Before he could speak, Azazel spoke up and said, "You should get going. We'll handle the cleanup. Oh, and before you go, I have it on good authority that your girlfriend is waiting for you." Not waiting for a single moment, Issei disappeared into a red magic circle and made it back into his room, leaving behind both Azazel and Surzech, both of whom were now chuckling at the scene. Once inside his room, Issei made way to the bathroom and took a quick shower to freshen up. Once he was ready, he left the room and went downstairs to find Invigiled talking to Roswace. "Heimchan im Beck," Issei announced, causing the perplet to perk and turn to him. As soon as she saw him, she jumped up and wrapped him in a warm hug, which was promptly returned. "Not that I am not happy to see you, but what are doing back so soon? I thought you'd want to spend as much time as possible with your mom," Issei asked with a tilt of his head. "Well, you see, Azazel-sama sent Roswace-chan to me. Since Odin-sama left without her, we just hammered out the details, and now she has agreed to join my peerage as a bishop. It took a mutated piece for me to resurrect her," Invigiled brightly replied. "Hey, that is awesome. She is a very powerful warrior," Issei said as he smiled at Roswace, giving her a welcoming nod. "I am happy to be here as well. The conditions of living in the underworld are much better than in Valhalla, not to mention the pay here rocks," Roswace said with a small chuckle. "Well, I'm glad that you like it. Say, Roswace-san, are you going to join the school as well?" Invigiled asked curiously. "I will have to talk to Azazel-sama for that, but I'll most probably join in the capacity of a teacher," Roswace said with a shrug. "Oh well, I'm pretty happy now," Invigiled said with a smile as she began talking to Issei, telling him all about the time she had spent with her mother. It had been a couple of days with Issei, enjoying a nice family dinner with his parents along with Invigiled and her mother. The situation in the underworld was now calm, and the old Mao faction had been completely exterminated. Currently, we find our protagonist lazily sitting on his chair by the window waiting for the class to begin. He wondered when Invigiled would join the school. He knew that she was homeschooled and rather shy, which was why she hadn't joined. He, however, quickly pushed those thoughts to the back of his brain as the door opened and his homeroom teacher entered the class. "All right, class, I have 2 announcements to make. We will be having a transfer student joining us, and there will be a change in your homeroom. I have been transferred to another class, so a new sensei has been assigned to yours. So without further ado, let me first call in the transfer student," the teacher announced. The door opened and Invigiled stepped in with a shy look on her face and said, "Oh no, my name is Invigiled Leviston. I recently moved to Japan with my mother. Please take care of me," she said in perfect Japanese. "Ooh, a foreigner, and she can speak perfect Japanese. How amazing." The girls in the class tittered excitedly. The perverted duo were about to make a perverted comment but were stopped when Issei punched the 2 of them on the head and said, "Shut it, you are already making her uncomfortable with your mere presence. Don't add to that effect with your words." Sitting back in his seat, he ignored the looks of shock that his classmates had when he hadn't made any perverted comments himself. Though he hadn't done anything perverted in nature since he returned a month ago after dealing with Loki, it was still hard for his classmates to accept the change. "Thank you for the help, Hayato. Leviston-san, please sit next to Hayato. He'll show you around during the break or after school," the teacher said in a slightly dazed voice. Issei nodded in response as he smirked inwardly. Magic was truly a wonderful thing. Issei then motioned Invigiled towards the seat next to him and smiled at her as she sat down. A look in her eyes told him that she wasn't very happy with the fact that he had used magic on a regular human being, and she was going to have words with him about that soon. "And now for your new homeroom teacher, please give her a big hand," the teacher said as he pointed towards the door as Roswace entered the room. Once again gasps of shock went around the room but were quickly silenced when the introductions were done. Once done, the old homeroom teacher bid the class farewell and left the room. Roswace then turned to the class and said, "The first thing on our propaganda is the upcoming class trip to Kyoto. The principal and the rest of the senseis have decided that this year will be a 2-week-long trip instead of the normal 4-day one. We will be staying in one of the top-tier resorts while having several guides who will show us around the city. We will be visiting several historical sites along with generally touring the state. Any questions?" "Just one, sensei. Do we need to stay in our uniforms or are we allowed to dress up according to our choice?" Issei asked as he lazily raised his arms and gave an equally lazy wave. "You can wear clothes of your own choosing, Hayadu-san. Though you will need to check in with the teacher assigned with your class. It wouldn't do to have any of our students to get lost in a city as big as Kyoto, wouldn't it?" Roswace said with a slightly humorous tone near the end, getting a small round of chuckles as a result. "Thanks, sensei," Issei said with a light smile as he calmly leaned back into his chair. Roswace only nodded in response and looked over to class silently, asking if anyone else had any more questions to ask. "Ano-sensei, when will the trip take place?" Asia asked politely. She was wearing a forlorn expression on her face as she tentatively eyed Issei. "The trip will take place a week from now." "Anyone else?" Roswace said as she fleetingly glanced around the class. When no further questions were asked, Roswace started the classes of the day and time went on without a hitch. It was during lunchtime that Issei stood up and looked towards Invigiled before saying, "Say, Levistan-san, let go. I can show you around the cafeteria and the student council room. We can continue the rest of the tour after school." Invigiled nodded and stood up, following Issei out of the room, both of them ignoring the mutterings of their classmates. Issei knew that by tomorrow more than a few ridiculous rumors would be flying about how he would have attacked the new defenseless transfer student. So it was a few minutes later that the duo grabbed their lunches before heading to the roof. Once on the roof, Issei subtly clicked his fingers, erecting a small barrier around the roof that would keep any of the ordinary folk away from the place, giving the duo a bit of privacy before they had to go back to class. Once he was done, he turned around to look at Invigiled, a small smirk playing on his lips when he saw that she had her hands on her hips and was tapping her feet on the ground in a show of impatience. "What's wrong, Haim-chan? You look irritated for some reason," he asked innocently, the smirk still playing on his lips. "You know well what I am irritated about, Issei Hayadu, so don't you dare play this game with me," Invigiled said back with a glare. Still smirking, Issei moved and wrapped his arms around Invigiled waist and pulled her closer to him before he lowered his head and whispered, "What game?" "You know, the one where you explain why you used magic on that human to influence his decisions," she replied with a slight stutter as her cheeks reddened due to his closeness. "Oh, I don't think it was anything bad. It did give me the chance to spend more time with you, Haim-chan. When you think of it like that, I'd probably do it again," Issei finished thoughtfully as he pecked Invigiled on her nose. Invigiled pouted at that before she huffed and said, "Moo, why can't I stay mad at you? You are way too charming for your own good." "That's where you are wrong, Haim-chan. I am only this charming when you are around. This side is only for you and for anyone you deem worthy of sharing me with," Issei said with an unrepentant grin. "What do you mean, anyone I deem worthy of sharing you with?" Invigiled asked with a small tilt of her head. She knew that harems were a norm in the supernatural world and Issei had every right to chase after any girl he wanted. So she was slightly confused that he wanted her approval on who could be or could not be added to the group. In response, Issei then shifted her hair to the left side, clearing up the right side of her neck. He then leaned down and softly began kissing her neck, making Invigiled moan as her face went beet red. From in between the kisses on her neck, he said, "Because I already lost myself before and this time I have you. I trust your choices much more than I my own." Invigiled didn't reply, but her heart warmed at his words. Issei then disentangled himself from Invigiled, after which both of them sat down and started eating lunch. As they ate, Issei inquisitively stared into the distance before he spoke up and said, "You know, Haim-chan, we really need to make a club of our own." "Club?" Invigiled asked with a tilt of her head with a question mark floating on top of her head. "You know, the Citri Peerage makes up the student council, while the Occult Research Club belongs with the Gremory Peerage. We could set up a club of our own with us and any of our future peerage members. Roswace-san can be our advisor, so it all fits." Issei elaborated seriously. That is a very good idea. I am all for making the club. We have to go to the headmaster for getting our club permission, right?" Invigiled asked. "Normally that is what we would do, but since this devil territory and 2 high-class devils have full-fledged peerages here, we will have to ask any one of them to process the paperwork for our club. I think we should ask Citri-sama for it. She seems used to this kind of thing," Issei said in a teacher-like voice as he explained the situation to Invigiled. Okay, then we can go talk to Sona right after school ends, Invigiled said with an emphatic nod of her head. Oh, I didn't know that you were on first-name terms with Citri-sama, Issei asked curiously. Oh yeah, we met up after your fight with Loki. She was nice to get to, much better than Gremory, Invigiled said with a smile. Oh, that is good, Issei said with a smile as both of them continued eating while making small talk on a few unrelated and unimportant topics. The rest of the day went by without any problems, and after school the Leviathan peerage found themselves walking towards the student council room. Once there, Invigiled knocked on the door and then waited. The door was opened a few moments later by Tsubaki, who was surprised to find Invigiled and the others there. Hi Baki-chan, can we come in? I would like to talk to Sona-chan. Of course, Leviathan-sama, Tsubaki said stoically, though Issei had to mentally restrain himself to stop from sniggering as he noticed how Tsubaki's eyebrow twitched at the mention of her nickname. Entering the room, they were led to a back door that had a few sofas. Sitting on one of the couches, they waited for Tsubaki to bring Sona in. The wait was a short one as Sona entered the room with Tsubaki in tow just a few minutes later. Oh hey, Invigiled, what can I do for you? Sona said as she nodded towards the Leviathan peerage. Oh hey, Sona-chan, I was wondering if you would help us make a club of our own, for my peerage, Invigiled said with a smile. That can be arranged. Do you have any specific idea or theme on how you want your club to go by? Sona asked as she pulled out a small notebook with a pen. Make it a music band by the name of Adarashi Hoko Sona-sama, Issei interjected into the conversation. Are you sure about the Hayatu-san? Invigiled. Sona asked. Yes, we are sure, that is what we want. It will obviously take a little time for us to get the setup and other peerage members, but we will be fully functional by the end of the year, Issei said with Invigiled and Rosswace nodding along, showing their agreement with the idea. Okay then, before you can even begin recruiting new members you will need a club, or in this case a band advisor along with a manager. You normally wouldn't need a manager, but since this is a band and not a club, so you will need a manager, Sona said as she looked among the group of the three. While I will be the band advisor, since I am a member of the staff, it is natural that the responsibility be given to me, Rosswace spoke up, getting a nod from Sona. And I will be the manager. I am not really one for performing, so the least I can do is be the manager for the band, Invigiled shyly said. Okay then, that should be everything. I will handle the necessary paperwork and some of the other minor issues like club room and instruments. The band should be up and running by the time you guys return from the trip to Kyoto. Is that all? Sona asked. Yes, that is. I will see you later, Sona-chan, Invigiled said as she stood up and shook Sona's hand before leaving the room. Issei idly stared out of the bus window as the second years of Kyoto Academy traveled for their annual trip to Kyoto. Invigiled was seated next to him with her head resting on his shoulder as she softly snored. Most of the boys and the girls in the bus glared at Issei. The boys because he had a girl whose beauty not only matched the great ladies of Kyoto but also surpassed it, leaning into him. The girls were glaring at him because they felt that he was acting like a pervert by not pushing Invigiled away from him. Issei, however, did not care about what they thought of him. He knew that in the grand scale of things all of them were no bigger than ants. Sighing in slight boredom, he took out his phone before connecting the earphones, and as he started playing his musical playlist. As he stared out the window, he couldn't help but feel that the upcoming trip would be a little troublesome. He didn't know how to describe it, but the air had a certain heaviness to that he did not like. There was a slight tension that seemed to grow as they neared Kyoto. He knew that somehow, one way or another, he would once again find himself stuck right in the middle of yet another conspiracy. But he kinda liked this feeling. It gave him a thrill that he loved. The journey then continued in the same pace, and the group of second years from Kyoto Academy finally reached Kyoto a number of hours later. As soon as they arrived, Issei gently cajoled the sleeping Invigiled awake before the duo walked out of the bus. Once outside, Issei closed his eyes and let his senses spread out into their surroundings. He liked to be aware of any dangers that might have been lurking. When he found nothing of any significance, he opened his eyes and idly followed the rest of his year mates to where their teachers were waiting. Once the whole year was together, Azazel spoke up and said, "All right everyone, we will be checking into our resort soon. The school was kind enough to get 2 sets of rooms for each class. Your homeroom teachers will be the ones you report to, and they further will report. For no, we want all of you to settle into your rooms before meeting us out in a couple of hours." When everyone nodded in assent, the large group broke up according to their classes and were then led by their teachers towards their rooms. Issei idly followed Rosswace with the rest of his classmates. The tension in the air was suddenly palpable. He tensed his body and readied himself for any and everything. Both Didrag and Benayam accepted this with small nods and began channeling a small bit of power to ensure that Issei could get into battle gear without much toughness. Once everyone was in their resort rooms, Issei excused himself from the rest of the boys in his class and walked out, intent on talking with Azazel. Something about this place didn't match up to a simple school trip. Finding Azazel sitting alone in the lobby, he made way towards him and said, "Oi-sensei, I need to have a word with you." Azazel looked up with a lazy smile and nodded before the duo walked towards an empty corner. Once there, Azazel set up a few privacy wards before turning to Issei and saying, "So what did you want to talk about? Sport? Is everything okay here? I just feel as if we've walked into a temporary war zone." Issei asked with a deadpan. So you noticed, Ka. We don't really know what's going on here, but I have already sent word to both Gabriel and Serafal they will be here in a couple of days to talk with the Yakai higher-ups. Until then it will best to stay on your guard and be ready for everything. Azazel replied somberly. Noted, thanks Sensei. I will keep an eye out and let you guys know if I can find out what is wrong, Issei said with a nod. Azazel smiled at that before shooing Issei away. He then glanced at his watch and found that the group still had an hour before they had to leave for sightseeing. Sighing to himself, he went to the bar to grab a small drink. With the girls of Class 2A, Invigiled was slowly but surely getting annoyed by her classmates. All of them were continuously hovering around her in order to protect from the beast that was Issei Hayaru. Her Issei was no beast. He was very protective of her and was the perfect boyfriend to her. These bitches knew nothing. Tuning them out, she politely excused herself and moved away. She was about to move away when Asia and Irina stopped her. Can I help you? Invigiled politely asked the two girls. We have a favor to ask of you, Asia asked in a low voice. Nodding in response, Invigiled followed the duo to an empty spot and said, Okay, talk then, she said. Would it be possible for you to arrange a meeting with Issei for us? Irina asked. What about? Invigiled asked in a slightly defensive manner. Nothing serious. He was my childhood friend and our reunion wasn't an ideal one. I just wanted to thank him for what he did while fighting Cockabeel and then his role during the peace conference, Irina said honestly, making Invigiled nod at her in an approving manner. She turned her head towards Asia and quirked an eyebrow in her direction, asking her to present her reasons. I want to thank him for saving me from Deodra and I want to ask him a personal question. It's nothing harmful or anything, just a small bit of curiosity that needs to be fulfilled, Asia shyly said in a low tone. Very well, I'll talk to him and get him to talk to the two of you, but that is as far as I'll go. I won't, however, influence any of the decisions that he makes as a result of the conversations. Are we agreed on that ground? Invigiled asked, getting nods in response. With the conversation over, Invigiled and the rest of the girls left the room to meet up with the rest of their year mates for the upcoming sightseeing trip. Outside, Invigiled and the rest of the girls of Class 2B met up with the boys who were already waiting at the lobby with the teachers. What surprised Invigiled was that Issei was holding a conversation with Kiba. What confused her was that she couldn't tell if the conversation in question was serious or a casual one, since both boys had blank faces with a relaxed body language. Alrighty then, since everyone is here, you'll be sorted into groups that will be supervised by an assigned teacher. Here are the groups, Azazel the acting head teacher said as he began to read out the formed groups with their teachers. Issei, however, was unsurprised that his group mainly consisted of the supernatural second years, with Rosswace being the assigned teacher. And just like it, the group broke up and went their separate ways. The supernatural second years themselves were a divided group, with Issei and Invigiled walking ahead of the group, their arms linked together. Say Issei, Invigiled called, getting a hum from Issei, prompting her to go on. What were you talking to Kiba about? Invigiled asked. He wanted to apologize to me, Issei answered with a one-armed shrug. What for? Invigiled asked inquisitively. For his role in my reincarnation. I in response told him that while I don't really blame him for what happened, we most likely won't ever be friends. Sure, we will be friendly acquaintances, but full-fledged friends, that won't happen, Issei answered with a lazy shrug. I see. Can you do me a favor? Invigiled asked with a bit of reluctance and nervousness. She knew that her boyfriend didn't like the occult research club, and this thing had quite the potential to make him annoyed and broody. What favor? Issei asked, his sharp eyes picking up her distress before becoming slightly narrowed. Marina and Asia wanted to talk to you, and I promised that I would arrange a meeting for you guys to talk things out. Invigiled carefully placed out and watched his reaction. Issei slowly removed his hand from hers and turned to her, a blank expression on his face. After a few moments of silence, he asked, So when do I need to meet with them, my king? He asked aloofly, his voice not betraying the rage he felt. Maybe after or during the trip. If they come to you, please just hear them out, she said, inwardly berating herself as she noticed the change in Issei's body language. Of course, my king, Issei said as he slightly slowed his walk and was now walking behind Invigiled, acting as a rather aloof and uncaring queen. A contrast to his caring and relaxed state of a few minutes ago. Invigiled frowned at the action but was not able to say anything as a barrier went around the group. Immediately Issei was in front of her with Benayim in its base from drawn. Whoever is there, come out, he said in a commanding tone, putting a bit of Dedrag's influence into his voice. In response to his call, a girl of about 10 years of age appeared out of the tree line. She was a kitsune and had 4 golden foxtails. Surrounding her, some other lower-level kitsunes who seemed to be her soldiers. Who are you, and why have you set up this barrier to attack us? Issei asked as the other members of his group all powered up. My name is Kanu, the second daughter of Yasaka. As for why I am attacking you, you bastards kidnapped my mother, Kanu shouted before she ordered her soldiers to attack. Issei inwardly grinned. He had a challenge here as he couldn't go all out. The light kitsune girl was confused and had attacked based on emotion alone. He knew he couldn't kill his attackers, that it would affect the neutrality that the alliance shared with the Shinto faction. That handicap made it all easier. Raising his sword, he charged at the attacking kitsune, confident that Invigiled could take care of herself. He then parried 2 incoming blows with Benayim before punching 2 of the kitsune soldiers into the trees. He was then forced to make a dodge when several blue fireballs flew towards him. However, the dodge was unnecessary as a water dragon flew across and took the hits. He looked at Invigil with a small grin before nodding at her and using Flash Step to cover the distance he had in between the Kitsune soldiers before slashing hard at them with the blunt side and sending them flying into walls unconscious. He then turned to look at the young Kitsune girl who was now standing in a defensive position with only 5 or 6 Kitsune guards around her. He inwardly smirked before thinking, let's see how well does she react to this. He then lifted BGMI above his head before saying Akiro BGMI. He then brought the crimson blade down in a slashing motion as he shouted Nake BNIHIME. As soon as he finished, a red arc of magical energy flew out of the sword and traveled towards Kanu and her soldiers. All of the Kitsune's eyes widened significantly before they created a shield in front of them. After a brief struggle, Issei's attack broke down their shields and hit the soldiers who were in front of Kanu, saving her from the damage. Kanu was forced to cover her eyes as the collision had caused a small explosion. When the force from the explosion dies down, she immediately turns to see her soldiers only to find a crimson blade pointing in between her eyes. Gulping, she looked up to find herself staring into the cold emerald eyes of Issei. Sheathing his sword, he said, now that you are sufficiently calm, can you tell us why you attacked an envoy from the Christian and Norse alliance? Kanu paled slightly before she asked, wait, you aren't the ones who kidnapped my mother? No kid, we aren't. Now will tell me what happened, he asked as he bent down to her eye level as Invigil and the others came. Some people attacked our home a few days ago. They kidnapped my mother. The only thing I know is that they needed to use her to summon something, Kanu said as she lightly teared up. Seeing her tears, Invigil pulled her into a warm hug and began to rock her back and forth. That is a problem, Issei muttered before turning to Roswace and saying, Rose, please send word to Azazel-sensei and tell him to get here. After that we will go to Kyoto Palace and talk to the acting head on the next course of action. Does that mean you will help me? Kanu asked as she looked up at Issei and Invigil with teary eyes. I don't know what the leaders decide, but you can be assured that I will help you find your mother, Issei said, interrupting Kiba. Invigil nodded along her agreement with Issei, who is currently handling the ley lines. Kanu-sama. Roswace asked the million-dollar question. What ley lines? Kiba asked, with Irina, Asia and Zenobia also looking on in interest. There is a very large network of magical ley lines under Kyoto. It is traditional for the nine-tailed Kitsune to be the one who is connected to those lines and to act as the ultimate protector for the region. My mother Yasaka is currently the only nine-tailed Kitsune there. After her kidnapping and disconnection, the ley lines are already beginning to fluctuate. My sister has temporarily managed to bond with them, but she can't keep it up for much longer, Kanu explained. Any ideas, guys? Issei asked Didrag and BGMI. I have no idea, Master. This is beyond my area of expertise, was BGMI's answer. I have an idea that could work. You could boost up enough energy and transfer it to the girl's physical stamina and magical reserves. That will reduce the pressure the ley lines have over her. I am sure she will like that, even if it's just a temporary measure, Didrag said, getting a nod in response from Issei. That is troubling. Very well, let's go to Kyoto Palace and meet up with your sister. I have a plan that should help her for a short period of time, Issei said, getting a thankful nod and hug from Kanu. Kanu then grabbed both his and Invigil's hands and led them to Kyoto Palace, with the rest following behind. So that's Kyoto Palace, the headquarters of the Shinto and Yakai faction, Issei said as he ran his eyes over the magnificent building in front of him. Yup, follow me, I will introduce you to my Annie-san, Kanu said as she began leading the small group inside the mansion. As Issei had expected, the interior of the castle reminded him of the old Japanese samurai era. It was filled to the brim with patriots and had a large number of potted plants and sliding doors. Finally, the group reached an office. Kanu then knocked on the door and after receiving a come and let everyone in. Sitting at the desk was a teenage girl of about Issei's and Invigil's age. She had blonde hair, with 2 fox ears on her head. Along with it she had 5 fox tails. Issei had to admit that she was a very attractive girl and was someone who easily compared with Invigil when it came to beauty. Kanu-chan, welcome back. Who are these friends of yours? She blankly asked once she saw the group, her hand twitching slightly as if readying herself to fight. Annie-san, these guys are from Christian and Norse pantheons and they offered to help us find mother, Kanu excitedly told her sister. I see. Well, in that case, thank you for the help. My name is Narumi and I am currently the stand-in leader for the Yakai faction, the blonde Kitsune said, introducing herself. The Kyo group bowed as Roswace, being the teacher, introduced them. We are from the Christian and Norse Alliance. My name is Roswace, the Bishop of Invigil Leviathan-sama, who is the perplet over there. The blonde boy is Kiba Yudo. He is Ria's Gremory-sama's knight. The blue-haired girl is also Ria-sama's knight and is Sinovia Court. The chestnut-haired girl is Irina Shido, the ace of Michiel-sama, while the blonde girl is Asia Argento, the Bishop of Ria's Gremory. And finally, the brunette boy over there is Issei Hayatu, the Red Dragon Emperor. Naruma's eyes widened a fraction when she heard Issei's introduction, but her reaction stopped right there. I see. It is nice to meet all of you, but how exactly will you help? You could start by telling us what exactly happened and we will go from there, Issei said as he crossed his arms and leaned against the door. Very well, that is fair. It all started almost a couple of weeks ago when Kanu here was kidnapped by a sacred gear user. Consequently, it was the same time my mother was in a meeting. After the news of her kidnapping broke, my mother went to get her, but we only got my sister back. My mother is still missing. Narumi said stoically. Soka, and your mother still handles the ley lines around this area? Roswace asked. Yes, I can still feel her connection with the ley lines, though I don't know where she is. Narumi answered. Say, Narumi-san, where is the point which has the highest concentration of ley lines over in this area? Issei asked interestedly. By the old Kitsune no Kurama's shrine. That place is the center of the Kyoto ley line system and has the strongest concentration. Narumi asked, wondering where Issei was going with his line of questioning. Then there's a good chance that the ones who kidnapped your mother will be at that area, Issei said pointedly. Narumi's eyes widened at that and she promptly jumped on her feet and was about to run out the room only to be grabbed by Issei. Calm down. Going there without a proper plan will only cause damage to you and your mother. Calm down, he finished, firmly, making her stop for a moment before looking a bit sheepish. After her nod, Issei said, we need Azazel-sensei here. If we are going into a hostile rescue operation, we need someone with Azazel-sensei's experience. Well said, kid, and it seems that I am right on time. Everyone turned at the new voice only to find Azazel standing at the door. When did you get here, sensei? Issei asked with a raised eyebrow. Just about when you stopped the older Kitsune princess from running headfirst into a trap, came Azazel's lazy reply. Fair enough, so what do we do, sensei? Issei asked. We go to the temple in a frontal attack. The enemy already has what they need and know that they hold us by the proverbial ball, so any sneak attack would be pointless. We go in hard and strong and try and take out the maximum amount of enemies. Is that agreeable? Azazel asked, directing the question towards Narumi. Indeed it is, Governor General. Even though I am currently in charge of the Kyoto region, I would like for you to lead this operation. As much as it pains me to say, I am not experienced enough to pull off a rescue of this magnitude, Narumi said with a small bow. No problem, and I accept the responsibility, Azazel said before he looked around and said, suit up, we are leaving in an hour. Nodding, the group left. Issei himself disappeared in a flash step, still miffed from what Invigiled had asked him to do. He was smarter and more mature than most people thanks to his training, but that didn't mean he still didn't have a few prejudices. York was one of them. He would go back and do what was asked of him, but he would passive-aggressively let her know that he wasn't exactly pleased with the request. Invigiled herself sighed lightly and vowed to talk with Issei as soon as she got the chance, but for now then had a rescue operation to go on. An hour later, everyone was ready. Kiba and Asia were still in their Kyo Academy uniforms. Zenobia and Irina were in their old swordsman wear. Roswace was clad in her old Valkyrie armor, while Invigiled was dressed up in a mage outfit. Last but not the least was Issei, who was clad in a red and gray battle kimono with Benaim draped to his side, his wild hair open and flowing, giving him a rather feral look. It was a look that Narumi didn't get tired of, as was seen by the way she was stealing glances at him. Now then, since everyone is here, let us go. We will first meet up with Sona and her peerage around a couple of miles away from the temple. We will reevaluate the roles when we get there. Is everyone agreed? Azazel said once everyone was accounted for. Once everyone agreed with that, the group as a whole departed towards their destination. However, as they walked, Issei turned to Azazel and said, you know, sensei, I would very much like to face the leader of this operation. I don't think that will be wise, kiddo. We may face a multitude of opponents with similar power levels. We will decide the opponents when we get there according to the skill sets that we find. Azazel calmly replied, his tone leaving place for no argument. Issei nodded in response, knowing full well that he had slightly overstepped his boundaries. Not to mention the answer given to him was a completely logical one. After a short travel of 15 minutes, the group led by Azazel soon arrived upon the familiar sight of Sona and her peerage. Sensei, Sona greeted with a nod. She and Tsubaki were the only third years on the trip, and that was because of them being the top 2 seats of the student council who had come to help the teachers manage everything. Sona-chan, what's the situation? Did you find anything? Azazel asked. Your hunch was correct, sensei. They are here and seem to be quite prepared. They have someone standing just a few miles from here ready to guard, Sona reported dutifully. I see, Azazel said with a frown as he tried to think out a plan that would suit the current situation best. After several minutes he said, Sona-chan, I want you and your peerage barring Saji to set up a barrier and maintain it around the whole area. Saji, being a battle type, will accompany us forward. In place of him, Invigiled, being the magical type, will help you in maintaining the barrier, Azazel said, and the groups rearranged themselves. Just as the groups were about to go their own ways, Invigiled grabbed a bit of Issei's sleeve and was about to speak, only for Issei to gently grab her hand and remove it from his sleeve. Looking at her violet orbs, he said, we will talk later, Haim-chan, go give it your all. Invigiled nodded resolutely. The use of the affectionate nickname seemed to have calmed her enough for this. And with that, Sona and Invigiled set up the barrier while the rest began to walk into what would now be a complete war zone. After a few minutes of walking, the group finally encountered the first obstacle. Standing just a short distance away from them were a young Chinese teen dressed in old Chinese feudal style. Said teen was holding onto a spear that made Issei feel queasy. A young boy of age 10 with a blank expression on his face, and finally a brown-haired spectacled teen dressed in a red mage outfit. Greetings, Governor General and the young and upcoming devils. My name is Cao Cao, the leader of the hero faction, and as you may have deduced, the one responsible for the kidnapping of the leader of Kyoto. The one now known as Cao Cao said with a flourish. Hero faction. Faction to what and with what purpose? Azazel asked calmly. We are a part of the Chaos Brigade. A part, as you may have guessed by the name, is made entirely out of humans. Our aim is eradicate all other supernatural life on the planet. Earth is for the humans. Other species such as yourself are unneeded. Cao Cao said, finishing with a smile. Oi, isn't that a bit pretentious of you? More to the fact, how do you plan on beating all of the supernatural forces out there? All they would have to do is to wait out your lifespans and then continue as nothing happened. Azazel said back with lazy drawl. More to the fact, why did you kidnap Yasaka-sama? Issei cut in before Cao Cao could respond to Azazel. Well, since all of you are here and nearly all of my preparations are complete, it shouldn't really matter if you know or not. We plan to use her as a sacrifice to summon Great Red here. Now I think we have dallied her enough. Jorg, Leo, I will leave the rest to you, Cao Cao said. But of course, Jorg said as his eyes glowed purple, and then in a few seconds the whole area was encased in a purple mist. The mist sort of formed a barrier around the area. However, everyone could tell that it wasn't an ordinary barrier. This was something very, very advanced. As Issei wondered on what it could be, Azazel softly spoke the answer. Dimension Lost Ka. Who would have thought that we would have seen it here of all places? Azazel said, causing Jorg to smirk. If you think that is surprising, think again. Leo, it's on you, Jorg said to the young boy. The boy nodded blankly, after which he was covered in a black aura. Soon after, several golems erupted from the ground, each having glowing purple eyes. The golems walked forward in a menacing manner, their intention clear. Have Annihilation Maker as well. Are there any other surprises that you have for us? Azazel asked sarcastically. Just one more, but you'll probably get them later. Leo, keep them busy, Jorg said before he turned around and walked away. As soon as he walked away, the golems all attacked our group of heroes, with all of them tensing and ready for the imminent battle. Issei, however, was not about to wait. Stepping forward, he whispered a chant: Reime no Basha, Itaguruma no Kanjiki, Hikari mo Koro Matsunai Wakatsu. After which he shouted the move name Bakuda number 61 Rikujikoro. Immediately a large number of rods made of red energy appeared in the air, after which they flew towards the golems before they surrounded the golems, 6 rods to each golem, locking the golems in place. Issei then ghosted past the golems with his hand on his sword as he called the move. 1000 Kato Nai Yorushi. He finished swiping Benayam at the golems, destroying all of them in the process. He then turned on his bloodlust to full force and focused it on Leo, freezing the young boy in his place. Surrounded by a blood-red mist with his emerald eyes shining maliciously, Issei slowly stalked towards Leo, who was now frozen in fear to move. Just as Issei was in front of him, he chopped Leo on the neck, making him fall unconscious. Turning to the rest of the shocked group, he said, "Let us continue." Breaking out of their stupor, the group soon followed with little change. As they walked, however, Azazel said, "That was a handy spell you used there." "It sure was. It's one of my stronger binding spells. I thought it would have been best to get each obstacle down efficiently, since we don't know the level of the upcoming ones. By the way, Sensei, what are Dimension Lost and Annihilation Maker?" Issei replied. "That's good. Now for your question. As you know, there are 13 Longinus gears in existence. The one you have in Vali's gear come in the category of medium-level gears. There are 4 low-tier gears that are below yours, but inversely there are also 4 gears that are stronger than yours. Among them are Dimension Lost and Annihilation Maker. Dimension Lost actually creates a separate reality away from the world. While we were lucky that this boy doesn't have the balance breaker, otherwise we would be dealing with several ultimate-class monsters with unreal regenerative powers," Azazel explained. Issei quietened for a bit when he heard the specs about the other gears, after which he asked, "What about the other 2 gears in the top tier?" "Well, one of them is currently with the Alliance in the form of Zenith Tempest with Dulio. The gear gives him the ability to control the natural elements and cause storms. At full functionality, he could very well drown the whole world into an endless storm. While the other one, and the strongest of the bunch, is the true Longinus, a gear that is said to hold the will of the God of the Bible himself. A spear that was used to kill Jesus Christ himself," Azazel explained. "And the gear that we will be facing in a few minutes, isn't that right?" Issei asked sardonically. "You guessed correctly," Azazel said with a nod as he looked ahead, slightly worried about his students. The group continued on, moving forward, surprisingly not confronted by any of the hero faction members. "They seem oddly confident," Issei said as the group trudged along forward. "Well, we currently are in their turf in this dimension, so yeah, they kinda have the right to be confident about this," Narumi quipped with a smile. "But of course," Issei intoned with a warm nod, getting a grin from Narumi, who was slowly wheestling her way closer to the Dragon Emperor. Invigiled watched on with a little anger but did not say anything, not until she had the chance to talk to Issei about this privately. Noticing her looks, Azazel let out a small chuckle and looked towards Invigiled and said, "So is there any trouble in paradise?" "I don't know what you mean, Uncle Zell," she replied petulantly, unknowingly going back to the name she used to address him with when she was a kid. "So what's wrong then? And don't say nothing, you only call me Uncle Zell when you are troubled, so spill," Azazel said softly. "I am angry at myself actually. He trusted me and told me everything that happened to him in the past and how his old friends saw him and treated him, not just the fact about his reincarnation but the whole complete deal. Despite that, I sort of made a promise with the church trio to at least get Issei to talk to them," Invigiled said morosely as she drew in a breath. "And now after you asked him as your king, he didn't take it all that well and must have gone all reserved at you." And since you haven't seen that side of him before, it's beginning to not only freak you out but also frighten you. Azazel finished for her, making her give out a meek nod in response. Well, for one, I don't think he is angry at you, rather he is just a bit upset and disappointed. Second, no relationship in the world is without its very own ups and downs. It's how you handle those highs and lows that counts. For now, however, I suggest that you put this to the back of your head. You will have plenty of time to yourself to actually get the misunderstanding between you two sorted. Not to mention, you may actually get a harem sister out of the whole debacle. Azazel kindly said to her, partially bringing her out of her funk, as she knew what he was saying was true. However, any further chances of conversation were cut off when they happened upon the area of the temple. It was then that they noticed a group of 5 people standing in front of them, 2 of them being Cao Cao and Jorg, while the others were 3 unknowns. One of the 3 was a tall white-haired teen with glowing red eyes. He stood straight and had a posture that commanded respect, while his face had an easygoing smile. This teen was Siegfried of the Demon Hand, someone who was capable of using 5 demonic swords on his own at the same time. He was also the descendant of the original Siegfried, who was a famed hero for managing to kill the Golden Monarch dragon Fafnir. The second was a very large man in his late 22nd. He stood at around 7 feet tall and had a muscled physique that put bodybuilders to shame. He had blonde shoulder-length hair and had a battle-hungry look on his face. This was Hercules, the descendant of his original namesake. The last one was a young woman who looked to be in her early 22nd. She had gray eyes and blonde hair. She was wearing a female knight armor and had a rapier attached to her hip. She was Jeanne d'Arc, the descendant of the original one. So this is the actual party, this will be fun, Issei said with a grin forming on his face. Hey, it seems that both of the dragon emperors are in essence quite similar. Both love a good battle, Cao Cao said to himself amusedly to himself before he looked up and motioned for Jorg to begin. You are just in time to see something grand, Cao Cao said with a flourish, his speech targeted towards our protagonists. As he said that, Jorg disappointed in a magic circle before he reappeared moments later with holding Yasaka, his hand holding her hair in a tight grip. What surprised everyone was the blank look in her eyes, Dietrich said, getting Issei to nod, after which he relayed the information to the others. Narumi growled out in anger when she saw that, but made no move to drop the formation. There was no room for mistakes in this situation. Jorg then pushed Yasaka into the altar before he raised his hand, causing a great number of varying magic circles to appear inside. Issei was astonished to see the different varieties of magic being used all at the same time. All of the magic circles converged to form a large one. Yasaka, standing in the middle of said magical circle, suddenly flared up. Her eyes turned from the usual orange to a dark pupilless red as she gave out a roar of bestial rage. Her body also began to morph. Her human features were all regressing, while the form of the 9-tailed monster fox were coming. Soon the gigantic form of a golden 9-tailed roared out a challenge to our heroes, with the magic circle now glowing brightly. I guess we know who cast the magic on Yasaka, Issei thought as he summoned Benayim into his hand. So you want to tell us your grand plan before we fight and get this shit underway? Azazel asked as he pulled out his downfall dragon spear. I am glad you asked. In simple terms, Yasaka Dono here has been selected to be used as a sacrifice to attract Great Red over here. While alone, she isn't much of a sacrifice for someone like Great Red, but when you add the thickest set of ley lines in with her, that is a temptation that even Great Red won't ignore. Cao Cao answered with a smile. And what would you exactly do when the big guy finally does show up? I am sure someone of your intellect wouldn't be foolish enough to think you would be able to trap someone like Great Red, even if it is just for a few seconds. Also, a little introduction of your fellows would be welcome, Issei drawled questioningly. We don't. Offai's sensing abilities are nothing short of godlike. The moment Great Red is here, she will be here, and she will be more than enough to keep Great Red occupied. And as for my friends, they are Siegfried, Hercules, and Jeanne d'Arc, Cao Cao said with a shrug. Well, that does make sense. It's time to begin then, I suppose. Saji, Kiba, Zenobia, Irina, go take care of Yasaka and make sure she doesn't attack us. Narumi, you will take on the one called Jeanne d'Arc. Invigil-chan, Rosways-chan take on Hercules. Issei, you go on and take care of Siegfried while I will handle Cao Cao, Azazel instructed authoritatively. The others nodded before shuffling past each other and towards their opponents. And then after a few moments the battle began in earnest. So I get to face you, Azazel Dono. I am really honored, Cao Cao said as he thrust his spear forward, releasing a wave of white-colored magic towards Azazel. In response, Azazel lazily raised his still-dormant downfall dragon spear and coated it with a bit of his magic before deflecting the attack away. You will have to do better than that, young one. Show me just how good that spear really is, Azazel said as he extended the downfall dragon spear, causing it to lengthen to the size of a regular spear. Oh, but of course this was after all only me saying hello, Cao Cao, after which he charged at Azazel and thrust his spear out towards him. Azazel did not stay stationary this time around and himself charged forward, meeting Cao Cao midway, and then began a dance of 2 spear masters trying to gut each other. Azazel was more than impressed with Cao Cao keeping up with him, since he was only human, but chalked it up as a boost from the true Longinus. Cao Cao, on the other hand, was relishing the challenge. He knew that Azazel currently was nowhere near using his full power in his base form, let alone using his artificial sacred gear, and this made him appreciate his self-put insurmountable task. He however knew he couldn't keep up for very long and would now need to speed matters and somehow get Azazel out of the picture. While he wasn't capable of killing him, he could send him out of the lost dimension. This was a backup he and Jorg had worked out when they learnt that Azazel was among those involved in the attack party. Cao Cao then upped his speed for just a moment before thrust his spear and releasing a large blast of energy, one that was much stronger than before, towards Azazel, who could not deflect or dodge this time round since it was fired at a point-blank range. This blast caused Azazel to fly back. However, before he could touch the boundary, Cao Cao raised a finger and gave a small chant before firing a small orb behind Azazel. As soon as the orbit morphed into a small portal that carried Azazel out of the lost realm and closed itself before Azazel had a chance in coming back. With his current job done, Cao Cao gave a small sigh of relief before he turned to watch the results of his subordinates' battles. Hercules gave out a maniacal grin as he prepared to battle the two young devils in front of him. He was excited to test out not only his sacred gear but also his natural immunity to magical attacks against two magic users of their caliber. However, he did decide to make the opening attack. Bring both of his fists together, he pointed them at the two girls and released two explosions towards the two girls, who jumped aside to dodge it. Be careful, Invigiled-chan. This guy looks as if he has a very good defense. Do not waste a single moment in your attack. Roswace warned her seriously. Invigiled just nodded in response. It was then that both the girls went on the offensive, with Invigiled creating two giant serpents made of ice and fired them at Hercules, while Roswace created some 30 magical circles each with a different spell and fired them at their opponent. Hercules, however, in response merely grinned. He crossed his arms in front of chest like a shield, but otherwise made no change in his posture as he let the incoming attacks hit him at full force. Naturally, a small explosion took place when contact was there, but there was no other reaction. Do you think that we got him? Invigiled asked inquisitively. No, I don't think we did. The way he blocked looked as if he's sure he would come out okay. Nonetheless, I would like to think that our attacks did him some damage at least. Roswace answered, not taking her eyes off the smoking crater in front of her. And sure enough, a few moments, a completely unharmed Hercules emerged from within the crater. His unscathed condition caused both Invigiled and Roswace to widen their eyes in shock. What? How? It's not possible. Roswace stuttered out in shock. Cao Cao may have told you that I am the descendant of Hercules, and I am sure that you know my ancestor was famous for the completion of his trials. What you don't know is that my ancestor actually ate the flesh of the Nemean lion, giving him the same strength and veritable immunity to all sorts of blunt and magical attacks. You will have to do much better than that if you wish to come out victorious today, Hercules said with a big smile. Now, if you do not mind, I will be going on the offensive. Hercules finished his smile, turning sinister. And just like that, he jumped towards Invigiled and Roswace, all the while firing small but quite numerous missiles at the duo. Invigiled and Roswace both flew backwards, all the while dodging the missiles. However, the missiles did follow them, with the occasional one managing to hit them. The girls did keep up their attacks as well, but it was for naught in front of Hercules' immense immunity to magical attacks. Soon the girls felt their magical cores drain and weren't able to dodge the last of the missiles attacking them. Losing consciousness fast, the duo were not able to dodge as Hercules reared back his fist and punched both the girls, causing them to crash to the ground unconscious. With his work done, Hercules grabbed both the girls and started walking back to where Cao Cao was waiting. Narumi stood glaring at Jean. Her orange-colored eyes were slowly turning to their blood-red version. Despite this, Jean stood opposite her with a teasing smile on her face. Are you feeling angry? Then come to your once and she will fix you right up, Jean teasingly said as she unsheathed her rapier. Narumi growled angrily before taking a calming breath. She then brought out all 5 of her tails and coated her fists with her senjutsu. And then, after taking a stance, charged at Jean. Jean was slightly taken aback by the speed of Narumi's moment, but was able to cleanly dodge. Her face did become slightly serious when she saw how the ground crattered at Narumi's punch. Ara, such force, one-san will have to get serious and punish you, she said before charging at Narumi and started attacking her with sharp fencing-like thrusts. Narumi had to make several close dodges to avoid the accurate thrusts coming from Jean. All of them were targeted towards her vital spots. Narumi jumped back before rearing her fist back, causing a blue-colored flame to appear on her hand. She then thrust her hand forward and called out Heiken. A large fist of fire flew towards Jean, who jumped back before slicing it in half. She then decided to take things to the next level while calling out Blade Blacksmith, Balance Breaker, Stake Victim Dragon. As soon as she finished, a large amount 9F silvery swords erupted from the ground and then started rising into the air. At around 10 meters in height, the collection of swords broke down and a large silvery dragon was seen standing in its place. The dragon roared out and Narumi felt waves upon waves of magic hit as she felt the dragon's power. This is one of my favorite moves. Do you like it? Even if you don't, you get to play with it, Jean said as she launched the dragon towards Narumi. Cursing, Narumi jumped backwards to avoid the attack before turning around and running. As she ran, she also evaded all of the projectile attacks coming towards her. In a flash, she turned around and sucked in a deep breath before releasing at once in the form of a blue Kitsune fireball. She called, spewing a good amount of fire from her mouth. The attack didn't stop there as she continued spewing multiple fireballs of the same size at the dragon with quick success. The quick contact of the fireballs caused the explosion to ensue. Narumi landed on the floor panting, slightly winded due to the fight. Normally she had more endurance, but due to her mother's kidnapping and having to control the ley lines had taken a toll on her, leaving her with much less stamina than she would normally have. However, she did not have enough time to recover as the silver dragon burst through the wall of smoke, its jaws just above Narumi. Just as its jaws were about to bite her in half, Narumi crossed her arms and called out Enkai. A large pillar of fire erupted from Narumi and flew upwards into the dragon, causing the silver dragon to explode, causing a large wall of smoke to appear. Jean knew that her dragon was defeated but did not know if Narumi was still there or not. The explosion had happened quite close to her. She, however, was brought out of her musings when several green fireflies flew out of nowhere and towards her. It was only Jean's enhanced battle senses that allowed her to avoid the brunt of the fiery explosion that took place. Gritting her teeth, she looked over to the last spot Narumi had been into, finding thinning smoke. The smoke soon cleared, revealing a panting Narumi. Her hair were now open and in complete disarray. Her battle kimono had several tears in it, while she had a number of bruises on her body due to the close exposure to the previous explosion, which she had taken head-on in point-blank range. Looking at her damaged armor and her opponent's battered and beaten state, she decided to finally end things here. Taking a step back, she charged at Narumi at high supernatural-esque speeds and hit Narumi with her rapier several times before sending her flying into a wall unconscious. Finally done with her task, she grabbed Narumi and lifted her up to her shoulder and then walked back to the rest of the group. Kiba, Zenobia Arena, Saji vs. Controlled Yasaka. This is one messed up situation. How did a normal school vacation turn into this? Kiba said as he pointed towards the gigantic form of Yasaka. True enough, but I won't really change anything for it. The experience makes us all stronger, Saji said in a sage-like voice as he released Vitra in his partially sealed state. The Serpentine Dragon King looking at his host with a slight look of surprise and respect. It seemed that his host was finally accepting the dragon's mentality. While I will be Vanguard today, can I trust you to take care of things from behind the scenes? Saji asked the trio of swords practitioners. After receiving nods and seeing them all ready their swords, he turned back to the front and shouted Vitra promotion. In flash of purplish black light, the partially sealed form of Vitra grew exponentially to match the size of the cubi in front of him. Spotting the full-sized Dragon King in front of her, Yasaka roared at him threateningly as her tails failed around, making her look bigger. Vitra responded with a roar of his own, along with the release of several of his own tentacles. Without a warning, both of the colossal beasts fired their breath attacks at each other, Vitra spewing dark purple flames while Yasaka sent out bright blue ones. As the flames fought for dominance, the three sword players went around the sides to help tip the scales in favor of the sealed Dragon King. The trio tried a straightforward attack, with each of them using their opening abilities of choice. Irina used Excalibur rapidly to increase her speed and unleash a rapid torrent of attacks. Kiba used his sacred gear to create a few elemental swords and fired them, while Zenobia opted to use Excalibur Destruction to inflict a few heavy strikes on Yasaka's body from the side. Yasaka wasn't someone who was said to match the might of someone like Surzech without reason, and it showed as all three of the attacks had no effect on the Cubi, who simply swiped a tail each at the three young attackers, sending all three of them crashing into the ground. In the clash with Vitra himself, Yasaka was soon coming out with the upper hand as both giants clashed in a show of brute strength. This was not unexpected, since Vitra had two handicaps that he was chained with. One was the limited amount of power available to him, since Saji's body was not currently strong enough to handle the entirety of his power, and two, he couldn't use any permanently harming moves against Yasaka. However, salvation came for the group when lights for the ritual shone and a green dragon gate appeared in the sky. "What now?" Kiba muttered as he stared at the sky, thinking it was another enemy. From the sky, a colossal emerald-colored Asian dragon appeared and roared before it flew towards Yasaka and Vitra and began assisting his fellow Dragon King in fighting and restraining the Cubi. "Who is that, and what is he doing here?" Zenobia muttered out loud. "That is one of the 5 great Dragon Kings, the Jade Dragon Yulong. He and I came here after feeling Yasaka Heim's power," a voice said from behind the trio. All of them quickly turned to find a figure sitting atop a rock. Sun Wukong has the figure of a primary school child, covered in golden fur, wearing a monk's cassock, a wrinkled, creased face, and black skin. He is also seen carrying a staff-like weapon, smoking a pipe, wearing shades with a cyber design, and also donning prayer beads on his forehead. "Who exactly are you, and why did you call Yasaka Heim?" Irina asked curiously, not lowering her guard. "I am Su Wukong, the victorious fighting Buddha and all-round free geezer. Yasaka is the Yokai princess, so it's natural that we call her Heim," Su Wukong said, and he would have continued had it not been for a stray fireball to come and hit the group. Su Wukong swiped his staff to clear the air and found out all 3 of young sword players to be on the ground unconscious. "They have quite a way to go," he muttered to himself before jumping up and saying, "Yulong and the wielder of Vitra, keep her in place. I will bring her out of the trance she is in." He said, "Sure, but after this is over you owe a vacation, you old geezer." Yulong replied as he and Vitra tightly wrapped the long serpentine bodies around Yasaka, who failed in the hold but was unable to move. Su Wukong then landed on her muzzle before he swung his staff around in circles and brought it down in a mighty swipe, hitting Yasaka right on the skull. The giant beast swayed a little before falling down in a heap, slowly shrinking until Yasaka remained in her human form. Turning to Yulong and Sajisu, Wukong said, "Take her somewhere safe and guard her. After the situation is over, we will go on the promised vacation." "Yakai," Yulong said before he grabbed Yasaka in his hand and flew away into the distance with Saji in his Vitra promotion form following behind. With that done, Su Wukong turned to look at the main battlefield and found the Red Dragon Emperor and his balance breaker about to face off against numerous opponents. He knew that the young women on the floor must have been friends with him, since the rage that the young Dragon Emperor was radiating could be felt even from where he was standing. He decided to jump in and make sure that neither side left with any loss of life. "You know, I have been wanting to fight you for quite a while now," Siegfried said to Issei with a smile on his face. He currently had no sword in his hands. And why is that?" Issei asked with a slight tilt of his head. Siegfried gave out an incredulous snort and said, "Do you even pay attention to the waves your actions cause?" Not exactly," Issei said with a shrug of his head. "Buggering hell. Well, after you managed to cut down Loki's attack using swordplay alone, the supernatural swordsmen from around the globe did naturally get interested in you. Not to mention, in your very next appearance, you not only took several 1,000 devils, but also killed the descendant to an original Mao." The interest skyrocketed. "Now, when I knew that you were here, it was fate that we would fight. Now I will start slow so as to not be disappointed," Siegfried said in a matter-of-fact tone as he unsheathed an ordinary-looking light blade. Issei frowned a bit at the implied lack of respect but shrugged it off. Looking at Siegfried, he said, Sure, but before you want me to become serious, why don't you make my blade turn red?" Confidence, eh? I like it," Siegfried said as he charged at Issei in speeds that far eclipsed what Issei had seen Kiba used, though he was still able to cleanly block the move. In a flash, however, he cleanly countered the move by pushing Siegfried's sword to the side and using the momentum of his sword swung around before thrusting the still base-formed Benayim towards Siegfried's chest. Siegfried was momentarily shocked, not expecting a simple greeting of an attack to be turned around so smoothly. It was only the activation of his Sacred Gear's extra arm that came around to his front that allowed his catch the upcoming strike and then jump away. "Interesting, very interesting. You may be even more than what I had originally thought you to be, Issei Hayao," Siegfried said with a small smile on his face. "I try," Issei replied with a shrug. He, however, was slightly confused when Siegfried placed the light sword back in its storage space. His confusion soon melted off his face when he saw his opponent unveil 3 different swords, one for each of his hands. "So you are finally bringing out the demonic swords, eh? Would you mind telling me which one is which?" Issei asked. "Not at all. These are Balung, Nothung, and Daneslave," Siegfried said, raising each of the aforementioned swords as he did so. Once he was done, he once again attacked Issei, thrusting Nothung at him, while also bringing Daneslave near Issei's feet. Issei blocked the thrust from Nothung, and had to jump into the air so as to avoid the many sharply pointed ice pillars that erupted from the ground. He didn't have a chance to recover as Siegfried immediately pointed Balung at the airborne Issei, causing a large torrent of whirlwinds to leave through the pointed end of the sword. Issei immediately retaliated, knowing that he couldn't keep playing, and the fight now needed to be taken up a notch, subconsciously marking Siegfried as a worthy opponent. Bring Benayim. In a slashing motion, he called out Akiro Benayim, Nake Benayim. As soon as he finished, a large red arc of magic left Benayim and sliced through the wind, traveling towards Siegfried, who immediately raised Nothung and slashed it against Issei's attack. After a brief struggle, Issei's attack dissipated, leaving both of them thinking over their next attacks. Issei slowly descended to the floor, staring at Siegfried with a blank look that was met with an equally blank stare. The impromptu stare down was put to an end when Issei's faces broke into a rather bloodthirsty smile, while he was soon covered in an aura of bloodlust and oppression. Siegfried bit back a slight shudder at the sight of the aura in front of him. He was sure now that Issei Hayao was not someone who he could take lightly. Soon his own face fell into a smirk. It had been a long time since he felt his blood boil like this. Of course, he had met fighters infinitely stronger, along with also those who were mightily weaker than him, but it was the first time he was facing someone who looked to be on his skill level. The only other person who could do it was his self-proclaimed rival Arthur Pendragon of Team Volley. Without a word, the two of them once again charged at each other. They had equal amounts of skills and techniques, but the advantages both had came from different things. Siegfried had the advantage of being able to use numerous blades at once, while Issei, due to his draconic body, was not only stronger, faster, and more flexible, but also had instincts to go along with that. And soon Issei was gaining the upper hand in the contest, as his moments were not only becoming faster, but also more and more erratic. And soon he was able to land a few fleeting strikes at Siegfried, not anything conclusive or life-threatening, but enough to show that he was currently the one leading the competition. With a heave, Siegfried blocked one of Issei's slashes before spinning around in 360 degrees while pointing blades at Issei, who jumped back to avoid the 2 pointed ends of the demonic swords. "You know, I didn't think that I'd have to go this far in this fight. You really did manage to hurt me, even if it is just a few scratches," Siegfried lightly said as he examined his miniature injuries. "Don't sell yourself short. It may not look like it, but I am giving it quite a bit effort in avoiding your attacks. They are absolutely lethal to me," Issei replied with a shrug, and true enough, a light sheen of sweat could be seen on his body that indicated the effort he put into the fight. Well, I hope you won't mind if I take things to the next level then, Siegfried asked. Not at all, please do so, Issei said as he tilted his head, slightly curious on how Siegfried would level up for the next part of their fight. He got his answer soon enough when Siegfried said balance breaker, Choa's Aegisura Ravage. As he finished, 3 more metallic arms popped out of his back, giving him a total of 6 arms. Issei idly noted that all of Siegfried's base stats went up by 8 times. This certainly did make things more interesting. Along with that, he saw Siegfried draw 3 more swords. One of them was an ordinary demonic sword on the same level as the original 3 Siegfried used. The second was the light sword that Siegfried had used in the beginning of the fight, while the last one sent chills down Issei's spine just by being in close proximity with it. What the hell is that thing to make me feel like this? Issei mentally asked his companions. Because that sword is a literal bane for dragons, the strongest demonic sword in existence, along with being the second thing in the list of the most injurious to dragons things. The Sword of the Sun Gram. The only other weapons said to match it at its full power are the divine gifts of Kyoto, Caliburn, the strongest holy sword, and other godly weapons. Despite its power, it is dangerous to use, and uncontrolled use results in its wielder's death. Also, I want you to avoid getting hit with that. Despite the boy not even having a semblance of control over its full power, he has enough to make even a small cut excruciatingly painful. D-Drake informed him. I see, Issei said with a frown before he turned to Siegfried, who was looking at him with a cocky expression on his face. Well, don't tell me you're starting to chicken out just when I got a little serious, Siegfried taunted. No, I was frowning at your intent, since you bought out the strongest dragon-slaying sword there is. In that case, I guess I'll go all out as well. D-Drake, do it in, Issei said as he bought out the boosted gear. D-Drake's voice rang out, signaling the dawning of the smooth, streamlined red draconic armor. A skeleton, Issei said as he held his left hand out to the side. D-Drake called out as the holy sword manifested itself inside his hand. And just like that, without any preamble, Issei charged at Siegfried, who met his charge midway. Siegfried, thanks to the boost given to him by his sacred gear, was now able to keep up with Issei physically and was viciously attacking him. Issei, on the other hand, was more than content to play defensive and was focused on keeping Graham away from him. Benaim was more than happy to face up with the monster sword and was keeping all of the attacks away. While with the skeleton, Issei countered the other attacks, all the while slipping in a rare counter. After several minutes of bouting, Issei decided to end the fight. He knew that Siegfried could keep up for longer, but he had to use a one-time move to end the deal. Flying into the air, D-Drake started calling out, "Boost, boost, boost, explosion." At once, Issei's power skyrocketed, far surpassing Siegfried's in all aspects. Issei then disappeared in a flash of red and appeared behind Siegfried, who didn't even have a chance to dodge as 2 swords cut him in the back, making a large figure of X. Siegfried roared out in pain as blood spewed out of his back. However, Issei wasn't done as he began flashing around and reappearing around Siegfried, cutting him up in random places, with Siegfried helplessly taking in the punishment. Just as he was about to fall unconscious, his mind bitterly placed yet another swordsman who was above him in power and ability. But he knew one thing: should Arthur Pendragon and Issei Hayao meet and have a blade battle, the winner would undoubtedly be Arthur as of the current power levels. And with that last thought, he fell unconscious just as Issei appeared behind him, sword in slashing motion, as he called out his move's name: Heighten no Mitsurugi, 100 Kato no Yurishi. Turning around, he turned his gaze upon the rest of the group, and his eyes caught sight of something that sent a chill through his blood. Seeing them unconscious had set his rage on fire. He wanted to lash out and kill the transgressors responsible for harming people he was close to. Yes, it is a 3-on-1 situation, but not one you will be leaving in one piece. That I assure you, Issei coldly said as he was encased in a reddish-black aura. Benaim was calling out to them even more. His feelings were empowering her normal aura, increasing the bloodlust TWSS feeling. His intensified aura made the 2 members of the hero faction wary. While it was true that they had beaten their own opponents emphatically, but apart from Azazel, all of them had been the worst matched pairs, making victories slightly easier. The data on Issei Hayao showed that while he was a technical fighter, he had not trouble having to fight with range, and as the holder of the boosted gear had more than enough power. The only person unaffected by his pressure was Cao Cao, who knew that he could still face Issei without his balance breaker. Looking at his companions, he knew that despite their wide array of skills, they would not come out without any significant harm. He was about to pull back, since in his mind the whole situation was already a failure. Great Red hadn't showed up, Leo was captured, and Siegfried will most likely be out of commission for a few months. Just as he was about to make the call for Jord to teleport everyone away, Issei attacked, going after Hercules first. The giant man was caught off guard due to Issei's pace and wasn't able to get a good block in as a metallic fist smashed him into the ground, causing the ground to crack up a bit. However, he didn't have a chance to do much more to them as Jean unsheathed her rapier and charged at Issei, thrusting her sword in violent and unorthodox fencing style. Issei, however, quickly adjusted and was easily able to parry her attacks. What he didn't expect was for Hercules to join in the attack this quick. He wasn't able to adjust to the double team quick enough, and it was seen when he wasn't able to avoid Hercules' fist and the consequent explosion to his face that sent him flying into the rubble. Both Jean and Hercules didn't stop as both of them entered their balance breaker states. Hercules fired several explosions from a distance while Jean's dragon fired a breath attack simultaneously. When the dust and smoke from the resulting explosion had cleared, it revealed Issei relatively unharmed behind a red barrier that was coming out of his sword. As he stood up, he dispelled the barrier, showing that his helmet was destroyed and he had a heavily bleeding cut on the side of his head. Raising a hand to the cut, he touched the cut and then looked at the blood before he stared at his opponents. A bloodly smile broke into his face as he licked the blood of his face and fixed his balance breaker armor and renewed his attack. He first flash-stepped towards the silver dragon, and to the shock of everyone entered its mouth. From inside the dragon, D-Drag's voice could be heard clearly. As D-Drag finished, a red aura surrounded the dragon before a call was heard from Issei. K-Issei, he shouted as the dragon exploded and a giant hurricane-shaped funnel of fire escaped it. The explosion and the combined effect of her balance breaker's destruction caused Jean to scream in pain as she was thrust backwards. She, however, did not have a chance at respite as Issei flew out of the fire and gave her an X-shaped cut before kicking her to the side. He then jumped to the side as Hercules once again went on the offensive. He was once again able to get a drop on Issei, and Issei found himself blasted face first into a building with his back getting the full brunt of the explosion at a very close range. Before Hercules could continue his attack, Cao Cao stepped forward, a cold look on his face. Hercules, I will take things from here. You go and get Jean and Siegfried. Go and wait for me in Jorg. The mission was both a success and a failure, Cao Cao instructed in a no-nonsense tone. Hercules looked like he wanted to argue, but looking at the cold look in Cao Cao's eyes, he stopped himself and bit his tongue before promptly walking away to pick up his fallen comrades. As soon as he was gone, Cao Cao thrust the true Longinus towards the rubble which held Issei. Exhausted due to having to fight 4 strong opponents, Issei wasn't able to dodge in time and took the whole brunt of the hit, causing an explosion that caused his balance breaker to disintegrate and also send Benayem back to its base state. When the smoke cleared, a partial conscious Issei was seen leaning against a wall, his head hanging backwards. His clothes were damaged and his body was littered with an assortment of bries, cuts, burns, and lacerations. Looking at the broken visage of his opponent, Cao Cao nodded to himself and turned to walk away to where Jorg and Hercules were waiting. Hercules had both Jean and Siegfried on his shoulders. Just as he reached them, the sound of the stone tumbling down was heard. Hearing his teammates' gasps, Cao Cao turned around and felt his eyes widen a fraction at the sight before him. Despite all of his injuries and regardless of the pain he must have been feeling, Issei Hayao was on his feet and tumbling towards the group. His sword was loosely held in his right hand. His wild hair loose from the usual ponytail and covered one of his emerald green eyes, while he panted, struggling to walk. From where he was watching, Su Wukong nodded to himself. He had found his ideal apprentice. Someone with this much heart and talent was not to be ignored. He knew he couldn't teach the lad Senjutsu or even any other related art, but he had just the thing that would help the lad break through from his current plateau. Issei then shuddered as he brought Benayem up in front of him, holding it in a 2-armed stance. Akiro Benayem, he rasped, forcing Benayem to reactivate. He then focused all of his remaining magical on Benayem's tip, making a small red orb to appear on it. Giving one last battle cry, he swiped his sword inside a long slash, sending the orb flying towards Cao Cao. However, in his injured state, he couldn't control his motion and fell face first unconscious. The orb caught Cao Cao in the eye, making his left eye explode in a massive gore. For the first time in his life so far, Cao Cao felt himself lose his composure as he snarled in rage and readied the true Longinus to end the troublesome existence that was Issei Hayao once and for all. However, he did not get a chance as Su Wukong landed in front of Issei, his staff extended. Without any preamble, he said, "None of that now, boyo. You and your friends don't want to fight me now, do you?" Cao Cao was an intelligent commander and fighter, and while he knew he was growing stronger as time went by, he was still not ready to face the juggernauts of the supernatural world. So he nodded reluctantly and gestured for Jorg to teleport them away. As he did so, Jorg deactivated his balance breaker, bringing everyone back to the undamaged real dimension. As soon as the mist disappeared, Azazel and the Citri peerage raced towards the group. Azazel recognized Su Wukong almost immediately and asked for what happened as the others began healing the injured using the Phoenix Tears. Su Wukong then informed Azazel of what happened and where Yasaka was. He, however, then caped up his statement by saying, "You know, I would really like for the Gaki to become my apprentice." He finished, looking over to where Issei was now being administered the tears. The rest of the unconscious Alliance members were all up and about now. "And why is that?" Azazel asked back with a raised eyebrow, inwardly shocked that someone like Su Wukong would even deem a non-Yakai worthy enough to become his apprentice. The Gaki has heart and a mountain of talent to back himself up. He doesn't run from adversity, and that in itself is a winner for me, since my own descendant decided to run away rather than face up to his responsibilities. Su Wukong finished with a sigh and a shake of his head. "Very well, I will ask the higher-ups of the Devil faction and then get back to you." He tried to say, but was cut off by a shrill scream coming from the side. In a flash, Azazel was next to the still unconscious Issei and Asia, who was trying to heal him while inveigled. Roswace and Narumi looked on worriedly. "What's wrong?" he asked urgently. "He is not healing, Sensei. Even the Phoenix Tears didn't work much on him. I can feel his senses dimming," Asia said frantically. "Shit, Sona, I need you to give me access to the Citri territory. I need to get him to the hospital pronto." Azazel said as he lifted Issei up in his arms. Sona nodded urgently and gave Azazel a summoning paper which he promptly activated and disappeared into. Sona then created a small communication circle and sent messages to both Serafal and Surzech telling them what had happened. Invigiled felt her legs give as she slid down on the floor, Narumi, Kanu and Roswace all close to her having similar thoughts. Su Wukong sighed before he straightened out his back and said, "Okay everyone, we are moving back to the manor. Yasaka should be there. I will be able to heal her injuries and free her of the spell she is under. Let's go." Everyone immediately complied, happy for someone other than them to take charge. After a few minutes of walking, Invigiled spoke up and meekly asked why didn't the Phoenix tears and Asia's healing help Issei? Because he was both physically and magically exhausted. He had literally not even a sliver of magic in him when he fell unconscious. Twilight healing and Phoenix tears used by non-Phoenix clan members depend on your innate magic to help you fix any injuries. Since he had literally no magic in him, not even a drop of it, both of those things didn't help him. It's a good thing that Azazel took him to the hospital. The lad will probably be good as new soon. Su Wukong answered in a teacher voice. The group nodded in acceptance, though all of them inwardly felt guilty. Issei not only had to fight of his own opponent but also all of theirs since they failed to bring them down. As a result, despite taking out a few of them, he was mortally injured and would be spending quite a bit of time at the hospital. Invigiled herself was feeling more than the others. She was very emotionally close to Issei and felt that if she had trained harder, maybe he wouldn't be in this predicament. In her self-depreciating state, she decided that she was a danger to Issei's health and would keep a distance from him to keep him safe. Issei groaned and opened his eyes and found himself in empty black plain. As he looked around, he spotted a speck of flame that was growing larger as it flew closer to him. Issei was slightly unnerved by it but chose not to flee. Fire was after all his companion and had never let him down. Soon the fire was on him, taking the shape of a firestorm as it touched him. Opening his eyes, he saw Didrag in his celestial form peering down on him with Benayam sitting on Didrag's snout. Didrag peered at Issei for a few moments before he spoke and said, "I remember firing one last attack at the creeps. What happened?" He asked curiously. "Being hit with multiple explosions and then taking an attack from the true Longinus injured you a lot, while the time you spent fighting drained your magical core. When you went unconscious, there was no magic in your core. It was because of that the conventional healing used by your group didn't work and Azazel took you to the hospital. We thought we lost you, Master, since we couldn't access you in this plane." Benayam explained solemnly. "I see. So I'm all right now?" he asked his two partners. "Yes, you are. Your core is charging pretty nicely by now and will be 1% larger than the last time. However, before you go, we need to talk," Didrag said. "What about?" Issei asked as he folded his arms against his chest. Didrag said, "She was asking me to speak with the Occult Research Club again. You know what they did to me, and you are taking her side." Issei exclaimed disbelievingly. "I am, because you are being completely immature about it. Yes, I get the fact that you don't want to be anywhere near the red-haired devil, and that is fine. Even her early peerage members are fine. But you simply ignoring the others due to their link with her is wrong. Your king only asked you to listen to what they had to say, not to forgive them. You are being immature over this and you know it." Didrag sternly replied, his voice leaving no room for any arguments. Issei stood silently for a few minutes as he regarded Didrag's argument. After several minutes of silence, he sighed dejectedly and said, "I am being an idiot right now, aren't I? You definitely are, Master. From what I'm seeing in your memories, you were content to leaving behind your childhood best friend and two others who had little to do with your reincarnation because of a grudge. Not to mention said grudge almost cost you your relationship." Benayam said in a clipped tone. She did not like when her normally ingenious master acted like a simpleton. "Yeah, I have my moments. Now how do I get out?" Issei asked in response. Didrag only opened his mouth and Issei found himself engulfed in flames. Back in the physical realm, Issei groaned as his conscience returned to his physical body. As he awoke, his mind registered the pain his body was in and he involuntarily flinched as he felt the painful throbbing spread throughout his body. Looking around, he found himself in what looked to be a traditional Japanese room, the only exception being a machine that monitored his health. As he struggled and sat up, he heard Azazel's voice from his right side. "How are you feeling, sport?" "Like I was put through a grinder and then had several lorries run over me," Issei said in a muffled voice. "Sounds about right. A fair-powered attack from the true Longinus can do that to you if you aren't at around my level or above," Azazel said mirthlessly. He blamed himself for Issei's condition. While the others could have their mistakes excused due to age, he couldn't. He was a war veteran and a leader of a whole race. He shouldn't have been caught off guard like that. Shouldn't blame yourself. Despite being as powerful and as ingenious as you are allowed to make mistakes every now and then. Don't beat yourself up. Everything turned out okay, didn't it?" Issei said as he caught the slightly forlorn look that Azazel wore. "That may be so, but it still is my fault. I will, however, make sure that such a mistake isn't repeated in the future," Azazel firmly replied. "That's the spirit. How are Haim-chan and the others?" Issei asked curiously. "Health-wise fine. Everyone's recovered. Even Narumi is much better now that the link with the ley lines has been given back to Yasaka. Yasaka was kind enough to let you get treatment here after you were to be moved from the Devil Hospital. Invigiled, however, is in a right mental state and has an aura of depression around her. No matter how much I try, I haven't been able to get her out of it. Azazel finished warily, and at once Issei sat attention, ignoring his pain as he asked, "Elaborate." "She blames herself for your injuries. And let me tell you that they were bad. She feels that if she were stronger, maybe she could have beaten Hercules and then you wouldn't have to get hit. Not to mention she was thinking of relinquishing your control back to Surzets because she do." "What are you doing?" Azazel said before he stopped and exclaimed as he saw Issei stand up and disconnect the machine from his person and then made way to put a kimono from the closet provided to him. Ignoring Azazel's calls, he left the room and set out to find Invigiled. It took him a couple of minutes, but he did find her. She was standing in front of a vendor machine and looked to be buying a drink. Silently he moved to stand behind her, making sure that she didn't sense his presence. Absent-mindedly turning around, she walked headfirst into his chest. Squeaking in surprise, she quickly righted herself before she froze when she saw Issei standing in front of her with his eyebrow quirked at her. She tried to turn and get away, but Issei, despite his injury, was faster than, as he grabbed her by the arm and then pulled her into his chest. The entirety of emotion that she had been holding up for days erupted, and she promptly started sobbing into his chest. Issei himself was now feeling quite guilty. He didn't know that she would be this affected. He vowed not to make a mistake like this with her ever again. Holding her close, he softly rocked her back and forth, not saying anything. After what seemed like a very long time, she stopped crying, and Issei gently removed her from his hug while taking her hand and leading her to sit on his lap as he took a seat on a bench. Once again wrapping his arms around her, he softly said, "I am sorry, Haim-chan. I was being a jerk and let an unwanted grudge dictate my actions. Will you forgive me? I should apologize. I should have known you still weren't ready, but I couldn't refuse a request. Not to mention I am completely useless in battle. I think it is better if I just leave the devil faction and go back to where I came from," she said miserably, making Issei tighten his hold over her. Softly lifting her head upwards, he leaned down and pressed his lips on hers, giving her a soft kiss. He then said, "I can't fault you for being you, Haim-chan. Everything about you endears you to me. As for losing, that guy was the worst matchup possible for you. We will keep on training and will cover up the spots that you lack in. There is no need to beat yourself up because of this." When she hesitantly nodded, he smiled before lowering his lips onto hers and gave her a kiss. The kiss, while similar to the last one, was much longer, with Issei moving his lips against hers. It took her a few moments, but she just started getting into the kiss and her lips joined his with their moments. When they broke apart, Issei placed his forehead against hers, a content smile on both of their faces. He however winced when his body throbbed again and hoped Invigiled didn't notice. She however noticed it right away and asked, "What's wrong?" "It will take me a bit of time to full heal, so I'm feeling a bit of pain," he answered honestly. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" she all but demanded. "Because you mean more to me than any other thing in the world. A little bit of pain won't stop me from coming to you," Issei said, and he knew he had said the right thing as Invigiled's face lit up in a shade of red that would have made D-Drag jealous. The next morning found Issei, Invigiled, Rossways, Serafall, and Azazel in a meeting with Yasaka herself. She had been spending the last few days regulating and getting her faction back to full functionality. The work wasn't as much as she had expected, the sole reason being that Narumi had performed exceptionally well and had managed to keep things together long enough for help to arrive and rescue her. "Before we go on to the official meeting, I would like to give you my thanks for the part that you and your group played in my rescue. It is my understanding that things would have been much more dire had you not intervened," Yasaka said with a smile as she placed her elbows on table while resting her head on the back of her palms. The combined effect of the two moves attenuated to her already big breasts. "That was nothing. Anyone would have done the same thing had they been in my place," Issei said as he tried to downplay his achievement and was desperate to get out of the room as soon as possible. While he had great control over his urges, it was getting hard to ignore Yasaka's boobs given how big them were and how her kimono left a little to imagination. Yasaka, however, was well aware of what she was doing and was inwardly laughing at not only the effect she still had on people but also at the subtle glares being sent her way by the young Leviathan and her own daughter. She could also see the amused expressions on both Serafall and Azazel's faces. It seemed that both of them wanted to enjoy this little banter before the kids left and the real meeting began in earnest. "You shouldn't downplay yourself like that, Red Dragon Emperor-kun. It might reflect badly on your dragon. A dragon's pride is after all one of its most prized possessions," she said with the slight chuckle that caused her breaths to bounce up and down slightly. The effect was enough for Issei to glance down for a moment, after which he rested his view back to her face and fought to keep it there. Deciding that she had teased the teens enough, Yasaka cleared her throat and said, "Well, that's what I wanted to say to you children. Naru-chan, why don't you take your friends and show them around? The meeting will take a bit of a while to complete, so you kids can go enjoy yourselves." "Gotcha, and don't call me that," Narumi said, her face red from embarrassment. In a flash she had both Issei and Invigiled wrists in her hands and she dragged them out of the room. The adults chuckled at the levity offered by the teenagers before all of them straightened and got ready for the meeting. After leaving the room, Issei begged off and went away to do something that he had been intending to do for quite some time, leaving both Invigiled and Narumi behind. "I can't believe that Ka-chan would do something like that. I am really sorry about that," Narumi whispered to Invigiled in an apologetic tone. "Don't mention it. Uncle Zell seemed to be enjoying himself a bit too much," Invigiled said with a sigh. "Fair enough. I do need to talk to you about something." Narumi said in a slightly serious tone. Oh, what about? And Vigald asked curiously. Would you be willing to share Issei with anyone? It is obvious to anyone with common sense that both of you will end up being married to one another, but the average life expectancy in the supernatural world is very high and multiple partners are encouraged. So I was wondering if you'd be open to me trying to get with Issei. Naturally, you will be the lead female, Narumi said seriously, and Vigald's face went through a myriad of emotions before it ended with a blush. She of course knew that everything Narumi had stated was true, and she distinctly remembered her conversation where Issei told her that while he still did want to have a harem, he would not actively search for members, he would leave the final approval for any potential members to her. The weight of his words and their meaning became apparent to her for the very first time since she had heard them. Issei's words declared her to be the alpha of his harem, which was one way of practically saying that he was sure that the two of them would one day end up married. Pushing back the blush that threatened to break out on her face, Vigald turned her attention back to the matter at hand. Narumi had become the best friend Vigald had ever had. It was scary to admit how well the two of them had clicked over the past week, and she knew that she really did not have a problem sharing Issei if the other person involved was someone like Narumi. However, she did know that Narumi did not know Issei, and hence decided to ask why her friend wanted a chance to pursue Issei. Why do you even want to enter into a relationship with Issei? Not that I'm questioning your choice, rather I'm curious since you haven't even interacted with him all that much. And Vigald asked curiously. A number of reasons really. Us yokai are attracted to power. Issei is the strongest I have ever met in my age group, and that attracts me to him. Not only that, but he is very intelligent and caring. The way he helped in the last few days was something no one else would do without asking for anything in return. I know both of us hardly know each other and the possible relationship may not even work, but I still want to at least give it a shot. I can however promise you that I will never hurt him, Narumi finished passionately, making Vigald smile. Okay, then I guess I can't begrudge you for wanting to be with him. I wanted to be with after our very first impromptu dance, Vigald said, making Narumi beam at her. And then with a squeal she launched herself at Vigald, pulling the perplet into a big hug. After bidding both Narumi and Vigald goodbye for a while, he decided to go and talk with Irina, Asia and Zenovia, and to hopefully clear everything up. Yet after talking with both Diedrag and Vigald realized that his anger was aimed mainly towards the early Grimoire peerage, and the latest additions didn't deserve his ire. Not to mention he had been ignoring his childhood best friend, and that was something that was unforgivable. After several minutes of searching, he found the church trio lounging around another lawn. Walking towards them, he casually said, "Yo, how's everyone doing?" His greeting had a number of different responses, with Zenovia merely nodding towards him. Asia gave a stuttered response while Irina gave him a small but hesitant smile. "So what did the three of you want to talk about?" And Vigald told me that the three of you requested her to make me talk with you, Issei said in a flat tone of voice. The trio shared a look between each other before nodding to themselves. After that, Asia spoke up and said, "I want to know why." "Why what?" Issei asked with a raised eyebrow. "Why did you leave us, the Occult Research Club? We were your friends. Why did you abandon us the first chance you got? Why did you abandon me? I thought we shared something sacred. How could you have broken that?" Asia said, ending her triad with a screech and a sob. "Ask your king about the entirety of the circumstances that led to my reincarnation. That will be enough of an explanation for my wanting to leave. As for breaking the bond with you, I am sorry to say, but we knew each other for a month at most, and even at that time you weren't a prospective relationship but rather a little sister. I broke off things early since I will forever be at odds against Ria's Grimoire's peerage, even if I won't cause them any harm. My advice to you will be to move on and find someone else who will love you as you are, regardless of the choices you make," Issei patiently said to the crying girl, who didn't like she was going to stop any time soon. She did, however, stand up and run out of the room. He then turned to look at Zenovia and prompted her to go next. "I only came to say thank you and to tell you that if you are ever in need of a sparring partner, then I'm available," Zenovia bluntly said. "I appreciate the offer, but why the thanks?" Issei asked slightly confusedly. "You gave me the ability to keep hold of my faith regardless of me being turned into a devil. I am thankful for that," she replied bluntly, making Issei nod. "I see. Well, it was of no consequence. Your faith was a big part of you, and it mainly was the thing that kept you together. Not to mention it was Michael-sama who gave you the permission to pray to heaven after your conversion to the devil kind," Issei said with a shrug. Zenovia firmly nodded at that before she stood up and shook Issei's hand before moving out. In the end, the only two left in the general area were Issei and Irina. Silence permeated between the two of them. Despite being childhood best friends and now being allies, Irina didn't know how to act around this new Issei. He was fierce, intense, and not the goofish pervert she had heard about him being. "Why did you want to talk with me, Irina?" Issei asked with a raised eyebrow. She sighed lightly before clearing her throat, and in a nervous tone that was quiet, unlike her normal bubbly personality, said, "I want to apologize." She finished quietly. "Apologize for what exactly?" Issei asked confusedly. "For everything. I never really saw or felt how important you were to me until quite recently," she whispered. "What do you mean?" he asked, curiosity lacing his tone. "Despite us being best friends, I left you. I didn't contact you even though I promised I would. When I returned and found that you had become a devil, I felt betrayed, and my first impulse was to smite you. I know if you were in my place you would have first tried to find out why I actually became a devil in the first place," she said as tears slowly started leaving her eyes and flowing down her cheeks. Issei silently stood in front of him as he contemplated the words that were said. He had been hurt at most of her reactions before, but now he did understand how and why she had reacted as she had. If he was trained all his life to look at a certain point of view, he would have avidly defended it as well. Not to mention the fact he did miss his best friend quite a bit. Sighing softly, he stepped towards her and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her into a hug. Patting her head with one hand as the other wrapped itself around her back, he said, "Hey, none of that. It's old news now. What is important is that we are now here and what we do from now on. I know you are a part of the Angel faction, but I would really like if you would agree to join the school band that we are about to make." "I'd like that," she replied as she broke the hug and wiped her eyes. After she was done, she too stood up and left the area, leaving Issei alone. Sighing to himself, he felt as if a weight he wasn't holding was finally off his shoulders, and he felt lighter. Shaking his head with a small smile, he left and made his way back to Invigilde and Narumi. One was already his girlfriend, while the mere sight of the blonde fox girl sent his blood running. "So now that the kids have left, let's get down to business, shall we?" Yasaka said as she straightened up. "Indeed we shall," Serafal said with a smile as Azazel nodded. "First of all, I would like to thank you and the other representatives of your alliance for the role that they played in helping us not only overcome our crises, but also in my rescue. Who knows what would have happened had you chosen not to interfere in our Pantheon's matters," Yasaka said as she finished with a dip of her head indicating her thanks. "We accept your thanks, Lady Yasaka, and hope it will lead to a more fruitful and peaceful relationship between our Pantheons," Azazel said with a nod, throwing in the first idea into the wind. "I'm sure we will discuss more of that as the meeting progresses. For now, I would like you to give the boy you captured over to me. His punishment will be made an example for them to see what will happen if they try again," Yasaka said in a slightly icy tone as she mentioned Leo. Azazel and Serafal both shared a look, after which Serafal decided to come clean on something that she had discovered after seeing and examining Leo for the first time. "We have some news about him, Lady Yasaka. It seems that the boy himself was under a mind control curse that took away his free will. In fact, I only just removed the curse from his mind a few days ago. He is currently going through mind therapies to help him get back on his feet," Serafal calmly said, inwardly sighing in a relief as she watched the iciness leave Yasaka's visage and watched her deflate a bit. "I see. Then I hope he recovers soon and can find a semblance of what he himself wants to do. Anyways, you originally called this meeting to tell me and my Pantheon about important news. What was it?" Yasaka asked. "You just met it firsthand. The ones that kidnapped were a faction of an organization called the Chaos Brigade," Azazel said. "I see, and am I right in assuming that this wasn't the only operation they have undertaken?" Yasaka said as she sighed and contemplated whether or not to ally herself and her faction with the upcoming alliance of the Christian and Norse Pantheons. "Yes, we have dealt with at least two of the factions, but both of them were weak ones. I fear that the real players will be coming along with their schemes next," Azazel said grimly, mulling over what she had been along with looking at the papers of all the information the alliance currently had on the Chaos Brigade. Yasaka sighed as she reached her decision. Straightening up, she firmed her resolve and said, "This is indeed disheartening. I agree to an alliance. The Shinto faction will side with the Norse and the Christian in facing the upcoming challenges in the form of the Chaos Brigade," Yasaka said, finishing in a powerful voice that could be heard all over Kyoto. It was a couple of days after the meeting, and Issei found himself lazily walking around Yasaka's mansion. As he walked, he came across a room where Leo, the 15-year-old Annihilation Maker wielder, was currently staying. Curiosity getting the better of him, he peeked inside to find Leo staring out the window with a blank expression. Knocking on the door, he stood and waited as Leo turned to look at him. A slight change in the color of his eyes was all that changed in his expression. After a few minutes of silence, Leo nodded towards Issei, giving him the permission to enter the room. "Sup?" Issei greeted as he sat down on the seat by the window, keeping enough distance from Leo to ensure that he wouldn't be taken by surprise by anything Leo could try. He, however, wasn't surprised to find that Leo did not talk to him. He merely stared at him with a blank expression on his face. There was absolutely no emotion in his eyes, not anger at being caught twice or even fear at being in the presence of someone who had disposed of him without much effort. Issei, on the other hand, was slightly put off with the blankness in the Leo's gaze. It sent him back to the conversation he had with Azazel regarding Leo after the two of them had met after the alliance meeting with Yasaka. "So, Sensei, how did the meeting go? Was it in favor, or do we need to move out by tonight?" Issei asked jokingly. Azazel cracked a smile at the attempted humor and said, "No, we get to stay and enjoy the hospitalities for a bit longer." "That's great then. I'd hate to leave Narumi-chan so soon after we became friends," Issei said with a smile. "Oh, is there anything we should know about Issei?" Azazel asked teasingly, causing a small blush to appear on Issei's cheeks. "Who knows, there may be something, there may not. I still want to have a harem one day, I just don't broadcast it around anymore. And besides, it is up to Invigilde to decide whether someone can enter or not," Issei answered with a shrug. "That's good. I'm happy that you are taking her opinion. Anyway, Issei, there is a favor I want to ask of you," Azazel quietly said. "What is it, Sensei?" Issei asked curiously. I want you to get Leo to warm up to you. The higher-ups want to persecute him, but me and the Maoists are pushing for him to be put in Invigold's peerage. He was under a very strong mind control spell for a few years, so he is having a hard time expressing himself. We probably will succeed in getting him into her peerage, but we need someone to who he can look up to be there close to him. Can you do that for us? Azazel asked seriously. Sure, I can try, but I doubt he will even look at me as a friend, much less as a role model. I did beat his ass down, even if he was under a mind control spell, Issei said with an uncertain shrug, only to receive an amused smirk from Azazel that did not help to quell the confusion that Issei was feeling from Azazel's request. So how are you doing? Is this place to your liking? Issei asked Leo with a raised eyebrow. As expected, Leo did not say anything for a few minutes, but Issei was relentless and kept on staring at Leo with an expectant expression. After a small period of time, Leo sighed and looked away as he replied in a whisper, I am as well as can be despite the last few years, and this place is comfortable, I guess, much more than the cell I used to live in. Oi, what's with the tired sigh? Issei asked with a raised eyebrow. You're way too pushy. I had the blank mask on perfectly, but you irritate me so much that I was forced to remove it just so I could make you leave early. Leo answered without shame. You are so very cold, Leo-kun, I am hurt, Issei said as he playfully placed a hand on his heart and pretended to show that he was in pain. And here I was hoping that you would die, Leo dryly replied to the sarcasm. Issei actually grinned at that. The brat in front of him had quite a dry sense of humor. I'm touched by your concern, brat, but it will take more than that to kill me. Now that the pleasantries are out of the way, answer me seriously, how do you feel? And don't bother feeding me the crap you have been telling the others. I for one will know if you lied. Leo stared back at Issei with a defiant expression, but for some reason he wasn't able to beat him in a battle of wills and soon sagged, after which he answered, I am really not okay. My life has been a lie. I remember my parents being murdered when I was 9 and then being taken in by the same people who murdered my parents. The spell was applied around that time. The next 6 years of my life I lived within my mind and watched my body wreak havoc. After you beat me, I felt relieved. And then suddenly the fog caused by the spell lifted and I was outside again. The kicker is, despite me being the old me again, I don't have anywhere to go back to. And even my future doesn't look all that bright when you look at the crimes that I have under my name. The way things are going, I will probably be killed out in the wild alone, Leo said, finishing in a solemn tone. Issei could tell that the boy was deeply hurt, scared, and lost. He could slightly imagine what he was going through. After all, Issei himself had been just as lost when he found out the truth of his reincarnation, but thankfully both Tannen and Diedrag had supported him and he was able to make it out without any major problem. You know, I found out that the gift of life I was given was based on a lie, and the purpose of my life that I had grasped for myself was just as false as the gift. What could have happened naturally and in good faith happened under the guise of disgusting manipulation. I was lost for a majority of 3 months and had on more than one occasion contemplated on running away, but my senseis kept me grounded. And soon, I had found my new purpose, and I can tell you it's a very satisfying experience. I can advise you from experience to keep walking. You will one day find the purpose you are looking for, Issei said, and was just as surprised as Leo at the wise words that drifted out of his mouth. You had your senseis with you. I literally have nothing with me. Not a sentient gear, nor a home. I can't even go back to the hero faction because all my memories, PF them, are either fake or made under a very bad light, Leo said pitifully. You could stay with us. A new start is what you need. Joining Invigold's peerage will give you quite the safety net. Not only from world politics but also from outside forces as well. And before you say anything about slavery, there are 2 things you need to consider. 1. Do you really think someone like me could be a slave to anyone? And 2. Invigold-chan was raised in the human world by her mage mother. She does not conform to most of the norms that you know about in the high-class devil society, Issei said firmly. Leo was quiet for a few moments as he contemplated what Issei had said to him. It was true that Invigold was quite unlike the other high-class devils and was quite modest while having a ton of raw power. The next thing was Issei himself, who Leo would never admit out loud, was beginning to look up to. He counseled them and even gave him a bit of his own past to show that they weren't all that different. There was also the fact that the Alliance had a lot of information on sacred gears. He would have access to that and would gain better control of his gear. Keeping all of these things in mind, he mentally nodded to himself before turning to look at Issei as he said, very well, I would like to join Invigold-sama's peerage if that is acceptable to her. She would love to have you. She's innocent and good like that. You will have the time of your life with us. We will probably have to add you to the first-year program at Kyoto High as well. Not to mention there is our club as well, Issei said cheerfully to a slightly stunned Leo. SSS School, CC Club, Leo stuttered out, slightly overwhelmed. Yup, I am pretty sure you didn't get to experience it during the early years, so this is your chance to live a little and be a kid your age. As for the club, every high-class devil at Kyoto has a club that consists of the Devil's Peerage and allies. Since you will be joining the Leviathan Peerage, you will be coming to our band, club, Issei said cheerfully. I see, Leo said, feeling his throat get slightly heavier. Anyways, you will probably be talking to Invigold tomorrow, so try and discuss the terms you want before entering, because if you do enter and then willingly betray her for any reason, we will meet, and I promise you words won't be exchanged, Issei said in the same cheerful tone. However, there was an underlying steel in his voice that told Leo that Issei wasn't joking. and he personally knew just how strong Issei was, and that alone frightened him a bit, but he nonetheless nodded in agreement. Leo, however, realized an important thing that day. Issei Hayato was the best possible ally you could have, but if you were an enemy, he'd make sure to be your worst nightmare that was seen on the worst day possible. The duo continued talking for another hour, with Issei regaling stories about his post-tan and training battles, loving how the boy he was beginning to look at as a younger brother was looking up at him with awe. When they were done, Issei bid Leo goodnight before leaving towards his room. That night Leo went to sleep with a peaceful expression, the first one in his life where he didn't have any bad nightmares. Elsewhere, in another part of the mansion, Narumi walked towards her mother's room, hoping to catch her before she went to bed and discuss what was on her mind with her mother. Knocking on door, she waited for a few moments before receiving a soft come-in, after which she entered the room. "Naru-chan, what are you doing here?" Isaka asked Narumi. She was currently dressed up in nightwear. It was clear that she had been preparing to go to bed before her daughter's impromptu visit. "I need to talk to you about something, Ka-chan," Narumi said in a slightly nervous voice. "What is it, Naru-chan?" Isaka asked as she pulled her daughter down to sit next to her. "Can I join in Vigil's peerage?" she asked hesitantly, knowing that her mother had a rather low image of the devil faction in her mind thanks to the Nikosho massacre. "And pray tell, why do you want to join a devil's peerage?" Isaka asked with a raised eyebrow, her voice suddenly having gone blank. "I don't know whether you know or not, but I don't really have any friends here, either because of my status as the Princess of Kyoto or the amount of power I wield amongst my generation. And Vigil is my first friend, who treats me like equal. Not to mention that she has the same status as me as the Princess of the Underworld. I don't want to lose that friendship so soon after gaining it due to something as trivial as long distance," Narumi said, hoping that her mother would agree and would not ask for the information that she had left out. "Oh, that does make sense, but for us supernaturals, distance is a very fickle thing. So tell me, Naru-chan, what is your real intention for wanting to join your new friend's peerage?" Isaka, being the mother, asked, immediately picking out a missing essence from her daughter's explanation. Narumi sighed disappointedly before saying, "I want to get closer to Issei. I haven't told anyone about this, but his actions over the past few weeks have caused a slight magical bond to form between us. This bond, it makes me feel warm and safe. I want to take a chance with him, Mom. Even if it fails, I can say that I gave it my all and it wasn't meant to be. Not to mention he is the strongest person I have met in my generation, and he isn't bad to look at either," Narumi meekly answered. Isaka stared at Narumi for a few moments, her face not giving away anything. She had her full cross-pantheon politician facade on. Isaka's expression made Narumi squirm as she realized she was still quite a bit of ways away from reaching her mother's level. Isaka, however, soon broke the stare with a tired sigh and said, "All right, I will talk to Azazel Dono and Serafal Dono about it tomorrow. I do have a couple of conditions that I need you to follow." Narumi's face broke into a beaming smile as she tightly hugged her mother and excitedly said, "Of course, anything you say. First things first, before you can join, I will be talking with Azazel Dono and will make the Alliance sign a contract that will give you the option of leaving Leviathan Chan's peerage at any moment that you want, or if I decide for you to leave it at any given time." Here Isaka raised a hand and stopped Narumi, who had opened her mouth to argue. After a moment she continued and said, "And the second thing is I will be sending someone along with you in their peerage, and this is non-negotiable. If I am sending you away, I at least will be able to rest properly knowing that there is someone who I can trust watching your back," Isaka firmly said, ending all of Narumi's potential arguments. "Fine, who will be going with me?" Narumi asked unhappily. "Why, Itachi-kun, obviously. Who better to guard the Princess of Kyoto than the white sheep of the forsaken Uchiha clan?" Isaka said with a twinkling smile. Narumi, on the other hand, groaned into her hands. Itachi was her older brother figure, and if he was going to be joining her, it would make her attempts at getting closer to Issei more than a little awkward. The next morning once again saw Isaka in the meeting room with Azazel and Serafal. Had requested the meeting so as to discuss Narumi's latest request. "Forgive me for calling another meeting so soon, Azazel Dono, Serafal Dono. It is no problem at all, Isaka Dono. We are allies after all. But if you could elaborate on why this meeting was called, it would be most appreciated," Azazel formally said as he and Serafal sat down. Yes, my daughter, as I am sure you can imagine, hasn't been able to make that many friends. That is due to her heritage as the Princess of Kyoto and her prodigious skill. Your student and his master have left quite an impact on her," Isaka said dryly. "I don't know what you mean, Isaka Dono. Could you perhaps please elaborate?" Serafal asked with a raised eyebrow. "Yes, my daughter has become enamored with the young Red Dragon Emperor and has formed a decent friendship with the young Leviathan heiress. As such, she doesn't want to leave her friends so soon after getting them. Due to this, she requested permission from me to go into the young Leviathan's peerage," Isaka explained, and after seeing the looks of understanding dawn on her compatriots, she continued. "I see, and am I correct in guessing that despite the recently signed alliance, you aren't comfortable in trusting your daughter's protection in the Devil Lands?" Serafal asked politely. Isaka gave her an apologetic stare and said, "Your assumption is correct, Leviathan Dono. I mean no disrespect, but you need to see it from my point of view. I lost an entire species to your people on a reaction to the actions of one. Even after that, my people weren't paid any recompense. So you will have to forgive me if I say that I am not going to trust you with something as precious as my daughter's life." Hisaka firmly said, asserting the fact that while there was an alliance in place, it wasn't one where the trust was blind, and it would take quite a bit of time for there to be any sort of warm feelings between the two races. Seraphol opened her mouth to argue but did not say a word, as Azazel had raised a hand signaling that he was going to take over for a while. And just like that, Seraphol fell into the back seat. She, however, did not have a problem with that. Azazel, herself, and Gabriel made up the main negotiation team for their pantheon, and they were a damned good one at that. It was one of the reasons that they had managed to get into an alliance with the Norse pantheon just a few months after reuniting the Christian pantheon. What you say makes perfect sense and is completely agreeable. Now then, you called the meeting. I take it you have an arrangement you have in mind, Azazel smoothly said, bringing the meeting back on track. Ah yes, Narumi hasn't really asked for anything in her life, and I want to let her go, but I need for a few things to be agreed upon before I let her take that step, Hisaka professionally stated. I mean, what did you have in mind? Azazel asked, stroking his goatee. One of the stipulations I have is that Narumi-chan will have an option to come back to Kyoto whenever she wishes. The second one will be that I will be sending someone to accompany her and look after her in my absence. Said someone will also be taking up place in Leviathan-chan's peerage, Hisaka firmly iterated. Those are fair conditions. Is there anything else? Azazel asked curiously. Yes, there is one more. I want Narumi-chan to have the ability of leaving Leviathan-chan's peerage at any moment should she wish to and revert back into a normal yakai, Hisaka sternly said. Azazel did not immediately reply to this statement and turned to look at Seraphol, since she was the one who could properly commit to that, being a devil king and all. Seraphol herself was silent for a few moments before she made her decision and looked towards a stoic Hisaka. While she knew what Hisaka was asking was very unusual and had the potential to spark a protest, it was worth it as well. The Shinto and Yakai faction officially joining the alliance would not only strengthen it but also open the door to negotiations with Hindu faction, keeping in view of the Indian Yakai. Seraphol then sighed and with a serious look not normally seen on her public persona said, I do hope that you know that such a thing has never been done, right? I am aware of that, Hisaka confirmed with a nod, but did not say anything else, her face holding a resolute look on her face. Seraphol held Hisaka's gaze for a few moments, after which she sighed and gave a smirk before saying, you know what, fuck it. I agree, I'll have Ajuka set things up. Narumi-san will have the choice of exiting the peerage whenever she wishes to. In change of that, I would like you to at least be a little more open to the idea of moving past our past grievances. I shall strive to do so, Hisaka said in a slightly relieved voice. Well then, I guess that is that. That is, unless you have anything to discuss, Hisaka Dono, Azazel asked, interjecting himself back into the discussion. No, I have nothing else on the agenda. However, may I offer you a glass of something? Hisaka asked as she stood up and made way towards one of the many cabinets in the meeting room. And do not mind if I do. Do you have any decent whiskey with you? Azazel asked as he and Seraphol stood up and walked after Hisaka. What exactly is your relationship with the Red Dragon Emperor Kun Azazel Dono? You seem to have a much more vested interest in him when compared with Seraphol Dono, Hisaka curiously asked after they had downed a glass each. You could say that in the time that I have known him, I have started looking at him as the son I never had. Vali never opened up to me much and is still way too guarded, but with Issei he tells me everything like a son would. Being honest, it is quite a privilege, Azazel replied after a few moments of silence. I see, then what kind of boy is he? Will he be someone my Naru-chan will be happy with? Hisaka asked as she looked at Azazel with a quirked eyebrow. Well, if they do get together, you won't really have to worry about Narumi's safety ever. Anyone having an intent to harm her will be 6 feet under before they even have a chance to do anything, Azazel casually replied. Oh, I see. Well, here is to a new alliance, Hisaka said as she raised her glass a bit. Her action was followed by both Azazel and Seraphol, after which the trio clinked their glasses and gulped their respective drinks down. Currently we find Narumi walking like a woman on a mission. She had finally covered all of her bases and was now going to go for home. She had Invigil's permission and her mother was aware of her choices. The only thing left now was for her to make the move. Walking through the courtyard and into the nearby forest, she soon came across a rather beautiful clearing. Said clearing not only had simple ground but also came with a large waterfall. Sitting under the waterfall was a shirtless Issei who seemed to be meditating. She was surprised to find him doing just that, as the exercise was one used in the later stages of Senjutsu training. She knew that he had no chakra and hence didn't really understand why he was doing said exercise. Oh, Narumi-chan, what are you doing here? A voice asked, bringing her out of her stupor. Turning around, she saw Invigil walking towards her with a basket lodged up her elbow. I was looking for Aiz-kun when I found him here. What about you, Invigil-chan? What brings you to these parts of the woods? Narumi asked back. Azazel-sensei told me Aiz was training here, so I bought him some water and snacks. By the way, what exactly is he doing? Invigil said in a rather perplexed tone. I believe I can answer that. A voice interrupted the duo. Looking towards the source, they found Su Wukong calmly resting on a tree branch eating a banana as he observed Issei. Wukong-sama, what are you doing here? Narumi exclaimed out in surprise. I just offered the young Red Dragon Emperor advice on the next step of his training and was stopping by to see how he was doing. Su Wukong casually answered. I mean no offense to you, Wukong-sama, but why are you taking such a keen interest in Aiz-kun? Invigiled asked with a frown marring her face. Is it wrong for me to show my to-be apprentice some attention? Su Wukong asked, breaking his gaze away from the training Issei. Apprentice? You want to take on Issei-kun as your apprentice? Narumi said in shock. Even Invigiled looked surprised. Yup, the Gaki has everything I would ever want in an apprentice, and while I can't teach him Senjutsu, this old man has more than enough other skills to pass on. Su Wukong replied with a smile. If you do not mind me asking, if he is your apprentice, why are you watching him from afar? Invigiled curiously asked. Mainly because that I have not gotten the word of final approval from the leaders of your pantheon. As soon as I get that, I can begin his training in the earnest. Su Wukong answered. You would not have to wait much longer. I just received word from Sirzech and Michael giving you the green light to take him on as your apprentice. Though you will have to come to Kyoto with us if you have a long-term training plan for him. Azazel said as he walked over to the group. That is perfectly fine. I will easily be able to transverse between Kyoto and Kyoto, so that is no problem for me. Su Wukong happily said. This is good and all, but what is he really doing? Why does he do the training exercise we Yaokai use to train in enhancing our bodies with our chakra? Narumi asked with a raised eyebrow. Oh my dear child, this exercise has many uses and the Senjutsu one is just one of them. What I am training him to do is gaining control over his senses. There are several stages to it, and even more stages to the art that I have in mind for him, Su Wukong said with a smirk. And how good will he be when he completely masters said ability? Azazel asked, intrigued. After he unlocks it, he will have to learn through 7 levels. Though once he does achieve and master level 7, he will quite easily be at the level your pantheon calls the Super Devil level, Su Wukong said as he rubbed his chin, making the other 3 of his companions to jaw drop at the power this ability held. I see, will you be telling us more about it? Azazel asked after Su Wukong did not continue his explanation. I will leave it for my apprentice to explain the steps to you as he learns them, Su Wukong replied. You are no fun, old monkey, Azazel said with a slight shake of his head. That is what makes it different and makes it fun for me, Su Wukong said with a grin. Sorry for interrupting your very important banter, but how long does Issei-kun need to train? I need to ask him for my date, damn it, Narumi said, growling at the 2 older men. Well, he won't be free until he completes this exercise, Su Wukong succinctly said. And how exactly will you know that he has completed said exercise? Narumi asked as she put her hands on her hips and glared at the older Yakai. Before Su Wukong could answer, he felt a slight change in the air around Issei. He smirked inwardly when he felt the completion of his apprentice's exercise. Deciding to test him over it, he called out and said, Oigaki Dana, how many life forms can you sense around you as of now? 15 birds, 13 squirrels, 17 fish, and the 4 of you talking. Issei swiftly replied back. He did attempt to sound non-Latin, but even was unable to keep the surprise out of his voice. Decent enough for now, Gaki Dana. You can come over now. We will be working on more cool stuff in the upcoming days, he instructed. Issei opened his eyes and nodded before he stepped out of the fall dressed in boxers only. Narumi and Invigiled blushed beet red as they saw his wet torso as he walked towards his things. After quickly wiping and getting dressed in his usual attire, he walked towards the group and nodded towards Azazel while hugging Invigiled and pecking her on the cheek. Well, Issei-kun, the old monkey over here is officially your trainer. Be sure to learn as much as you can from him. He may not look it, but he knows a lot, Azazel said. Ha ha ha, you really have fun, aren't you, old crow? On a serious note, we will begin your training in earnest in 2 days. Until then, I want you to relax and get your body back to peak physical condition, Su Wukong said to Issei after glaring at Azazel. All right, sensei, Issei said with a firm nod. With that, both Azazel and Su Wukong left, leaving behind the 3 teens. Clapping his hands together, Issei said, So what did you 2 need me for? I doubt you went along the entirety of the mansion just to simply greet me. Hearing his question, Narumi coughed into her fist before straightening up and saying, Take me out on a date, she said, almost screaming. Issei in response could only stare at Narumi wide-eyed while Invigiled giggled at the sight of her shocked boyfriend and now comically blushing best friend. This was too good to pass up. Maybe she should have bought a camera for herself. And don't you worry about Invigiled-chan, she already gave her permission, so come on, let's go, Narumi said as she grabbed Issei's hand and led him away. Issei could only dumbly stare as the sound of giggling reached his ears.